exposed to classified crash retrieval During this time, intelligence officers approached me in fear for their own careers, citing misconduct within these programs and similar retaliation that I was already involved. These issues include medical malpractice and adherence to first staff, enlisted in the United States Air Force, forged and manipulated employment documents, workplace harassment, including manipulation of my security clearance, and agencies blocking, delaying, and ultimately retaliation I face and retaliation against individuals I know who worked in these programs is what convinced me more I did everything I could to let our elected representatives know the truth about what was really happening. At the end of March 2023, I agreed to meet with Arrow following the suggestion believing it was what our nation required of me. I had reservations with Arrow due to assessments they were reporting publicly at the time. I'll be today. Sources and methods information in order to protect federal personnel who had first-hand exposure to technologies of unknown origin. I did not want any of the case further retaliation beyond what the law endured. They send me out getting in trouble because of that. I was then asked to go to the IG and did so in August 2023. It was very clear early on during my intake interview with a video recorder under oath that the objective was to investigation with new information I provided them. Since my ICIG I've been prevented from resuming prior employment and can confirm I'm still blacklisted from certain agencies within the intelligence community. In addition, multiple agencies attempted phishing attacks to assess what I had divulged to the Inspector General, including being asked details of my ICIG complaint during a CI polygraph for a position unrelated to UFO UAP matters as recently as November 2024. As I sit before you today, I and many other whistleblowers have no job prospects, no foreseeable professional future, and a nation every single one of us came forward to defend. Numerous individuals have come forward in various ways to reveal the truth of the UAP reality as patriots and defenders of our nation. Yet many feel discarded, isolated, hopeless, separated from the country they serve. Efforts to rectify this situation for all whistleblowers have been difficult and troubling. And to my fellow whistleblowers and officials who know this information, I offer you my apology, something that I have never gotten. And I'm giving it to you. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, a note that demands transparency for our public to function. Each day, these truths remain hidden from our citizens. Humanity drifts further from the principles our nation was founded to uphold. Each day, victims of crimes committed by agencies and companies maintaining this secrecy are denied justice as another day our Constitution is shredded. In 2023, Patriots provided this committee and the executive branch with undeniable proof of the UAP reality, and I commend your continued commitment. The future of humanity is one which we either travel to the stars or address the Stone Age with this technology. My career has been to deliver critical information to decision makers. Your role as elected by your representatives is to act on it. Time to act is now. Thank you.
I'm a senior policy counsel at the Project on Government Oversight, a nonpartisan independent watchdog organization that investigates and exposes waste, corruption, abuse of power, and when the government fails to serve the public or silences those who report wrongdoing. Whistleblowers are the first line of defense to root out waste, fraud, abuse of power, and corruption in our government. Congress relies on whistleblowers so that it can fully exercise its oversight and legislative authorities. It's understandable that former presidents of both parties have often taken a hostile approach toward whistleblowers. Their disclosures can embarrass the president and their political party or even lead to a national scandal. But whistleblowers continue to play a vital role during both Democratic and Republican administrations. They help Congress and the public identify and understand what government corruption looks like. Their disclosures fuel investigations and allow us to address wrongdoing and hold those responsible to account. That's why historically there's been a strong bipartisan consensus in Congress to support and protect whistleblowers. Doing so protects the country and ensures our government is more responsive and accountable to the people. National security whistleblowing in particular is a tradition of our country, and over time, and questions about how we wish to be governed and how our government can better serve its people. From the role the U.S. plays around the world, holding powerful actors accountable, executive branch authority, First Amendment, and the public's interest and right to know. Despite this invaluable public service, blowing the whistle comes at great personal risk. Whistleblowers risk losing their jobs, careers, livelihoods, and reputations. They can face retaliatory investigations, lawsuits, or even serious criminal charges. And they can endure deep emotional and psychological harm. All of that risk to speak the truth, to ensure that agencies fulfill their core missions, and to serve the best interests of the people.
Mary Edward
Those
Noah,
who retaliate against
David
whistleblowers
Ocean,
don't just violate their
Charles
legal rights,
Ida
they
Moore
inflict real
Ocean,
harm on our government and
Governor
betray
Airline
public
and
trust.
Vineyard area.
Targeting whistleblowers instead of the corruption they expose wastes agency resources and further allows that corruption to continue unaddressed. It instills chilling effect across the agency, fostering a climate of fear and distrust, quieting dissent and free speech, and deterring potential whistleblowers from coming forward in
Can you show me clear
principled public servants we have because of their willingness to put themselves on the line to do what's right. Congress has historically supported them, again, on a bipartisan basis, but unfortunately, whistleblowing has increasingly become more politicized, with support for whistleblowers often hinging on which party is in power and which party is politically inconvenienced by the misconduct being exposed. But to be clear, targeting whistleblowers individually risks undermining whistleblowing, period. POGO advises members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to focus on the evidence, not the individual. We will always need whistleblowers to achieve the government that best serves its people, because when people of conscience, integrity, and good character refuse to speak up out of fear, complacency, or self-preservation, and leave corruption to fester behind closed doors, that is probably the most dangerous risk of all. If we are serious about increasing government transparency and restoring the public's trust, we need public servants committed to the truth. Whistleblowers need safe and effective channels to make lawful disclosures. They need stronger protections against retaliation. And when they do face retaliation, they need a fair shot to be made whole. Congress has made strides to pass whistleblower legislation, and these laws need to be updated and expanded so that whistleblowers truly receive the protections they need, retaliators are held accountable, and we can achieve the type of government that people deserve. We strongly urge Congress to continue its historic tradition of championing the rights and protections of all whistleblowers. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify here this morning. POGO is committed to working with you and the Oversight Committee to address these critical issues. I look forward to your questions.
In testimony, you described witnessing large triangular craft while stationed at Langley Air Force Base in 2012. Can you explain what you observed in terms of size, behavior, and why you're confident it was not conventional technology?
Great question, ma'am. So on barracks, on the base, I lived in the barracks. There was a little smoke pit outside. I was there on the telephone and looking across to the flight line, and I see a white light pop up and stop about 100 feet in the air. I thought it was a weather balloon. I've seen tests from there before, weeknight, normal thing, not surprising. I actually finished my cigarette and I began walking up towards the flight line. There was a track, and because I was on 3 months of night work, I would walk the track at night when we were laying down. And as I began walking towards the light, towards the flight line on the track. The light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage, I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light, and then it was a triangle. It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze dead. I remember how thick it was. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner, and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. But what was really odd was the outside is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft. I'm under this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times per sound. Immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion. And I immediately feel static electricity all over my body, and then I smell like after a thunderstorm or lightning storm, that really strong summer thunderstorm smell. Gets up to flight level. I'm trying to get my phone reset, and I can only see the center light at this point. If I didn't actually see it take off, I would have thought it was a star. And then it hovers over, and it begins to slowly move due east out over the Atlantic Ocean. I finally got my phone reset. The entire thing was about, from the time I saw the light pop up near the hangar until it took off out over the ocean, was about 15 minutes.
And following up to that question, after you disclose this information to the intelligence community, Inspector General, you're subject to phishing attempts and job blacklisting. How widespread do you think this is across the intelligence community for those who raise concerns regarding UAP programs?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think prior to David Grush and people beginning this process of bringing people into awareness of the reality of these programs and certain things people have witnessed are probably extremely widespread. I think today there's still an issue, but because people are able to come before you and people are speaking out, I think it has been somewhat less. I would hope, though, that people would, because if this goes back into closed doors, this is going to get really bad.
What type of behavior have you witnessed from former Aero Director Sean Kilpatrick as well as his staff in relate to this information you provided to them? Did they ever try to classify this information as non-human technology?
Good question. The problem with it, what I experienced firsthand, I know other things. I think the staff at Aero that I met with in March of 2023, I think they were good people who did the job they were told to do. I did not meet with Kirkpatrick. He was not present or did not want to meet me that day. However, they did classify information about the reality of this subject, and it was very concerning because in my Aero MFR, they had actually referenced a former staff member that was the one who told me to go there, and they probably shouldn't have done that.
And real quick before my time is up, and we might go to second round of questioning just so you're all aware, how important, given everything that you've seen and experienced, is the UAP Disclosure Act of 2025 in restoring both public accountability and trust?
I think very important. I would hope, though, that the 7-year window could be shrunk, my opinion, but very important. The truth needs to be known.
Mr. Wiggins, I want to talk to you, your background and testimony compelling. When you first saw what you were looking at, what were your first thoughts?
My first thoughts were, I think everything that I was told and taught as a kid and a growing adult no longer, was applicable. If I'm able to see something that I thought defies gravity in such a way, then what else could be possible? That was my first thought.
So did you think what you were looking at was a weapons program that you were unaware of, or did you think what you were looking at was obviously some extraterrestrial
an elderly female
piece of
talking in the background?
technology?
Like, anyone who's unconscious, call
neither one of those crossed my mind. It was just,
2822
How
Robbie
about now?
Gray,
How do you think it is now?
of Corpus Christi.
I'm
We're
not
gonna have
the expert. I think I want to be as skeptical as everyone else and just hope to know the information.
Anyone in the U.S. government tell you what you were looking at to try to dissuade you from what you thought it was?
CDC document.
There was some anomaly with the technology. No one from the government did that?
No one.
How do you think you were treated when you reported this information or talked about, the TikTok video is well out there. It's well reported. How were you treated?
And I would much rather not get that tax revenue than to put a bar beside a church. And I guarantee you that church has been praying those bars out of there. And so I'm not going to be one that's going to vote to put one in. Thank you.
Militarily speaking, so I thought I was
And as
fair,
Officer
and I
Lewis was
appreciate the Navy
mentioning,
itself with,
we have
assisting me
fought
with
hard
coming here to
for
being
our
able to
church.
testify.
We have
That's
fought
good.
hard
So
to build
what do
the
you think the
building so
American
that we can
people
be
should
there.
take away from watching your
As a
video?
member
Right, 'cause when we watch
who
it,
cares for our
obviously,
community, who
right,
cares
we've
for our
never seen
city, who
anything like
cares
that.
for our
It
children
defies
and our
what we know
future, I
to
feel
be
like it is in
technologically
our best
possible. What are we
interest
supposed
to
to think?
protect
Someone's
small congregation,
lying
to
about
protect
something. Someone's hiding something.
people that are
Right?
trying to
That's
make
not
a better
normal
life
what
for
you looked at.
themselves. As Officer Lewis
I'm not sure
mentioned, he
if it's
donates
very
his
clear.
time.
People should think when seeing that video.
I think there's so much
along with
potential there.
others
When I
before
first
me,
moved
is that,
here,
there is something
I
out
lived in the
there,
Donna Park
and
neighborhood.
we should
And
know as the people
the
living
first
in
day
Right, and
that
so
I was
let's
here, my
eliminate
dad said,
possibilities. So they
hop in
didn't
the
come to
truck,
you and
I'll
say
take
there
you
was
and
a
show you your new
technological
city.
error with what you were looking at.
Took me down
Put
from
that aside, right? They didn't say it was
navigation
broken. So
to leopard.
we look at that and we
And
see
from
something.
leopard
So
down
it's
to
either a weapons program
the
being
seawall.
reverse engineered
And
by
so my
our
first
governments
view
or
and
other
vision of
governments, or
Corpus Christi was
nobody's government.
leopard.
It's not from here. Those
A lot
Those
of
are it.
the reason people move to these
You agree with that
areas is
assessment?
because
I agree.
of the
One or
condition
the
of the water.
What do
One
you
of
and
the
your
projects that
friends
we're working on
think about it today? You
involving
all have
the
talked about it.
White
I mean,
Cap
so what do you
development,
think
Lake
about your
Padre,
experience as a
we
collective
have
group? That would be my
discovered
last
that
question, Madam
unless
Chair.
you're looking at a completely comprehensive
talking
map
about this
of the
for
water
20 years.
systems,
We
you
don't
really
know
don't
what we
know
saw.
because they are so
What we saw
connected.
changed
Each
our lives
piece that we
and the way we think
change
about everything.
impacts them all.
It was
And I think we,
incredibly profound.
And I think the Texas Water Development Board,
The object I saw.
I think their
don't
challenge
even know
is
if it
that
was
they
an
feel that
arc.
we've been
It was
indecisive.
a light.
So I think you brought uncertainty to us so that way we can provide for
And that's
them,
what
and I
we're
think we
talking
need to do it
about.
today, provide for them
We
that we
noticed
have
the
certainty
object, and this was a
that
pattern
we're
across
open-minded,
the
that's going to
board.
provide
Pay attention to the light.
water certainty
That- and
and
then
the
the object
wherewithal to invest in our long-term
And then they come
water
down
infrastructure.
and
I think that was the challenge with the rate.
It's almost like they're
And when you
curious.
do that,
So that's the thing we primarily talk about.
it allows a more regional approach and a
why did it
regional
come?
look, and
We noticed-
also allows
noticed
for
it.
funding
Maybe it noticed us
ability,
after we noticed it.
and also it allows
I only
the
have 1
city
minute left, so Mr.
to
Knapp, you're
appoint
definitely going
the
to
board
watch every
members that would
documentary.
run that
You guys have
coastal
done
bend
you
water
and Jeremy have
agency,
done a terrific job. It's,
and
I usually
as
have more
well as the
questions
other
than I have
partners that would
answers.
be
I think we
a
all
part
do.
of
You
that
guys are doing a
agency.
terrific job
So
to bring information
there
to
is
the
a
public.
strategic
Do you
look
think that
ahead,
any of this is a
if
psyop by the U.S.
the
government?
Entirely possible.
Dumping it in the bay is just
our government and other
terrible
governments
for a
have
city that
admitted that
thrives
they
and
try to
hustles on
use
tourism.
UFOs to cover secret projects.
What's real important
But
to
I
know
think they
is
also do some
that,
reverse engineering of those
businesses,
claims. So years after
outdoorsmen
people
like
start
myself,
seeing
we're not against
UFOs
desal,
over
we're against
Area
dumping it
51,
in
for
the
example,
bays.
they come up
We
with the story.
cannot
Oh yeah,
afford
that was
to have our whole
we planted
water
that story.
environment, ecotourism, and everything destroyed.
Just a couple
Someone
of
else
weeks ago,
up here said
they
today
planted this story,
that
and Air Force
industry
Colonel
is
went
not
out
the only
into
place.
the
So
desert,
if we can't
get the
went to a
first step
bar
right,
at Rachel,
the journey
and
of
gave them
1,000
some
miles
fake
begins
UFO
with one
photos,
step.
and that's how the whole story about Area 51
If you want to take your first
started,
step in
which
the
is
wrong
preposterous.
direction,
And I didn't even get to the crash retrieval
And their
program
families
stuff
depend
yet,
on them
Ms.
and their
Chairwoman.
job. The
There's just
coastal
so
Bend
much.
region needs a reliable water supply
Okay, thank you so much for your
both
time today. I
residential
wish we had
and
more time.
industrial
Thank you, Madam
use.
Chair.
This has become
I
even
now
more
recognize
critical during
Mr.
these prolonged drought conditions.
Thank
We
you.
all benefit from the inner desalination project. So thank you for your leadership and putting a plan forward that will help secure the long-term water source that this community needs.
Remember
Thank
that.
you for your time and consideration.
But it's a pleasure being
Thank
here. I
you.
want to remind people, too.
And I'm sitting here
this thing is
listening to
an
a lot of the
ongoing
comments
deal.
already,
We're not
and
going to get this overnight.
Says he
We've been
likes water
fighting
in his
this
yard,
battle,
washing his
some of
truck.
y'all,
Well, I
for
like all those
30
things
years,
too, but not at the cost of the
maybe
environment.
longer. I hope we
And this maybe
keep
we may need
focused
water
on
right now.
what we're
And I
trying to
agree,
get
and
to
no
is
one has
total
said this better,
disclosure.
though.
We get a
And I'm going to
little
quote a
wrapped
friend
up
of
in a
mine
lot
who
of
couldn't
things,
be here
but
today. And if
the
Mel
government
read
has
Michael
something
Miller's
and
post,
they
he
need to
put,
turn it over to
it
us.
is
We
not
pay their
scalable
dadgum
and does
salary,
not
we
meet the
pay our
needs of our
salary.
future
You ought
growth.
to get more out of us
Seawater
than you do.
desal has never been
And that's
attempted.
what disgusts me about this whole
One of the
thing.
things
I
that was
think
very
they're just trying
clear
to run the
to
clock
me
out
was
on us.
that this is
Really.
this is a very
They'll
environmental
poke us a
project.
little, and
It's
they'll
not
make
going to do
jokes to
harm
us
to
and
the
try to
to the
pull us
bays and
off
estuaries,
off the
and
target,
it's
but
something I
think
know
we
that there's a
where
lot
we're
of
at.
concern about that.
That's why they're
But
firing
that
at us,
just
'cause
doesn't
we are
seem
over the
the
target.
facts don't show that. And the fact
first
is that
question
it
is
was
Mr.
approved by the
Knapp.
TCEQ and other agencies.
I recently
and I think what
introduced
you're
the
going to
UAP
find with the
Whistleblower
Farfield study
Protection
as
Act
well,
to help provide
that
whistleblower
the facts will
protection
support
that's
a good
closing the
project.
use of
how
federal
this
taxpayer
is
funds to
run.
investigate
The city is
UFOs.
broken.
I still don't want to say UAP.
It's broken, guys.
How can
I
Congress
don't
further
understand how
enhance
something
federal
can go
protection?
away and then come back because somebody else, not us,
I think you
not
got to
people.
unleash the dogs and
We're not
go
gonna get
track
any
down the
water
money
from
and where
this
it
stuff.
goes, because a lot
Has
of
anybody
this stuff
been
has been
informed
moved out of government.
that the water
As
is
you
shit
know,
water?
It's something that y'all and them
private
really have to
contractors
expand on what y'all
stashed
think
it
about
away.
as
They've had
the
it for so
economy of
long
Corpus
that
Christi.
There's nobody left inside
You know,
government,
this
or very
industry,
few
the industry is
who
not
know
going to last
where
forever.
it is.
And they do that to
Corpus
keep us
Christi
from
could
FOIA,
last.
correct?
Yeah, it's to
Man,
keep it
quite
from
a bit
FOIA,
longer
and
than
I think that the
y'all
contractors
realize.
fed the
But
stuff
the
for very
city
very
needs to
long
really
time,
build
set
upon
their
its
own
other
standards about
strengths.
who is allowed to know what.
Besides the idea that
it's
we
very
are a port
small
city,
group that ever
the longer
cracks
you
that. I
keep
think,
using and
Representative
using and
Luna has
using
been
without
looking
any
at,
restriction.
the use of classifications to hide
Out
things.
of line.
I'm not sure that even this committee getting security clearances that should allow you to see this
mayors
stuff
and
will
council
allow you
members
to
alike
follow where it really goes.
are getting
I worry
caught
about
with
the
their hands in
people
a
that
cookie
are looking
jar.
at it, don't even know it's
And council
gone through
members
so many.
giving contracts to their own
Roswell,
businesses.
for instance.
They don't
I mean,
recruit
you
yourself
think
ever.
There's nobody even allowed that was around any
So
of
the
that
obligation
stuff.
to secure
I don't
the
think they've
sustainable
made
water
much
future.
progress from the people
I
that I've
urge you to
talked
move
to.
past
I don't think
deliberation
they've
and
made
towards
much
decisive
progress in
action.
learning that
Thank you
technology.
for your
Might have made
service.
some,
I
but you
truly
wonder,
appreciate
you know,
what y'all
the
did for us
implication is
and
tic-tac.
for
Oh, yeah,
considering
that's
these
ours.
recommendations.
What flew
Thank
over
you. Thank you,
Washington,
Mr. Cruz.
D.C. in 52,
Brody,
is that
we
ours
didn't
too?
get
When are you going to break that out? You guys authorize tens
And
of
for all the
billions,
information
hundreds
that
of
is
billions
being
of
brought
dollars
to you
on weapon
for those
systems
of you that
can't
continue
do
to sell
half
out
of
our
what we've
cities.
seen UFOs do.
So on that note,
when do they break this out?
hypothetically, I want to ask this council for $1.5 billion to build a new building to possibly hire 500 new workers that could work there. Only if there's the right weather, no high wind,
obtain a classified
then I would like
Russian
another
UAP
$1.2 billion
documents
in reduced
back in the
taxes as
United
well.
States.
Well, I met this Russian physicist who was in the United States.
And
I want to clarify
that's a
that. I
copy
can't
of an
even take
email
up
that I sent out
a thing of
earlier.
honey home
And,
on my airplane when I fly back to
I
Tennessee.
wish
So
y'all,
I did something pretty dumb.
and I'm bitter about it, but go ahead.
Okay,
I did something kind of dumb. I met with these officials who, you know, during that time period, Glasnost, Perestroika,
online,
the Russians were
we
trying to open up
have
to the world.
Larry
I saw it
Cashin.
as a window of opportunity, and it was. And we were able to talk these folks into providing us information that otherwise we would never have seen. Some of that
and all
was
this, we
classified.
don't need that. We need a
Found out
thriving
that
city.
they only
Thank you,
stamped the
Ms.
top
Future
pages of these
city.
documents that
Thank
were
you.
classified.
Your time is
So I
up.
just removed them.
And I understand
Removed
Mr.
those
Munster is
pages,
back
and
online.
I carried
Mr.
them.
Munster, are you
And
online?
If they caught me, I'd be in a
Okay.
gulag still.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go
What
ahead.
happened to George Knapp?
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
cool. Mark Minster, Corpus Christi.
What happened
So
to
with
the
the Ann Arbor
Russians
decision,
that came
y'all
forward
are
to you in
going back. There was so much rhetoric
1993, and were
at the
there
last
any
vote in September
repercussions
to
for
just
them?
make a decision.
Well, there
You've been
were. The
elected
first
to
thing
make
that
a
happened when I
decision.
talked about
And
this
y'all
after
are
getting back
reversing what the
and
council
going through the
decided.
files and things and sifting through it, the Russian physicist who had helped us introduced all these people went back and said there was a huge eruption, that there was the real right, far autocratic forces that wanted a return of the USSR had really go after these guys. They described them as traitors. Nikolai Kopernik, a physicist friend of mine, said, look, if this had happened 5 years earlier, we would be in prison. If it had happened 10 years earlier, we would have been shot. Luckily, at that point, Putin was not in power, but none of those people that we talked to on that trip in 1993 would ever talk to me again. I went back in 1996, and it was like I had the plague. I spoke to different people, but they were scared. And eventually, the story was spun where the Ministry of Defense officials who gave us this information were described as ufologists, who said there was nothing really significant to these files. They didn't really find anything a big deal. And I can tell you, you'll see those files that I shared with you. They did find stuff. There was an incident in October of 1982 over an ICBM base where UFOs popped up, was observed over this base, where the missiles are pointed at us. United States. These UFOs perform incredible maneuvers. They split apart, they fuse back together, they appear and disappear, and right at the end of this 4-hour period, the launch control codes for the ICBMs, something entered the correct codes, the missiles were fired up and ready to launch, and they could not shut it down. The Russian officers were panicking. The UFOs they disappeared. The launch control system goes back to normal. Colonel Sokolov and his team came in, took the thing apart, could not figure out what it was. It wasn't a power surge or EMPs or some of the baloney excuses that our country has given for similar events involving our nuclear missiles. They thought it was a message from wherever the UFOs were from. And that's a chilling thing. I mean, we were a couple of seconds away from World War III starting, and the UFOs were responsible for it. Right.
Chief Wiggins, based on your training and operational experience, the behavior that you witnessed, a trans-medium object vanishing without a sound, be explained by any known technology that we possess or other governments possess? Has any government regarding EOR and what was that encounter like when you brought that up? If you could briefly summarize that, when you brought that to their attention and then you were not provided any follow-up, who was told and how did you feel when there was no contact?
As far as the actual incident happening at the reporting level?
Yes, Chief.
It was within the event happening. My duties are to report to the tactical action officer on watch while
It's a bait giving
tactical action officer
business.
was there.
It's time for them to carry their fair share. And
I've not had any
20 years ago, I sold my Exxon stock.
There's been no communication to me, requests from me.
Extra resources over here. Have at 15 advised that they're going to need additional manpower.
Speaking of that actual incident itself, once the report was made to the tactical action officer, that's when I made the decision to ask the individual watchstander that was controlling Sapphire to be able to slew into the location, and that's what you see in the video itself, is when the watchstander is slewing in and kind of showing us what we're looking at. But outside of that, that's as far as the reporting went that I know of.
Thank you, Chief. Just for the sake of time, Mr. Nusatelli, has RO, the Air Force, or the FBI ever followed up with you personally about the Red Square event?
I did have follow-up by Aero, nothing with the Aero office updated me at least 2 times. They let me know that they were unable to locate any records, that the records had been destroyed by the Air Force, destroying other police records over 3
that these documents were destroyed.
I have a Freedom of Information Act from the Air Force that states clearly that they destroy all police records, all the 3 years.
They were sitting on documentation, destroyed it, refused to question any of the lead investigators, anything leading into this investigation?
No document, arrival time, 13.
Yeah, basically they destroyed all the police records. So you couldn't ask them if there was a vehicle accident time frame. So that's a big problem.
And I would much rather not get that text.
And the first day that I was here, my dad said, hop in the truck, I'll take you and show you your new city. He took me down from navigation to leopard, and from leopard down to the seawall. And so my first view and vision of Corpus Christi was
government that is blocking.
A lot of the reason people move to these areas is because of the condition of the water. One of the projects that we're working on
fit in the germaneness of that bill to have UAP disclosure. And conveniently, it was named non-germane, mostly deemed by staff, not even an elected official. This is the kind of stuff that we repeatedly see. Last year, we were blocked by someone in House administration from being able to receive a full briefing from Aero. So not an elected official, but someone in staff blocked us. And I have enough is enough. I want to cue up a video that I've been given. And before it starts, I'm going to describe. This was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb over the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. You cannot see that drone. And so, and I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does.
Doubling or more than doubling everybody's utility bill.
Please share a customer requesting meter to me.
Port, the Inner Harbor Desalination Plant. I don't get that. I don't receive that because they know.
This is really zoomed out. You can still see it traveling.
This tries to be transporting the subject to the hospital.
So, Mr. Knapp,
do I not have clearance to
do you have any
heard about
due to a motor vehicle collision?
And what
he was wearing a helmet. Vehicle was going at approximately 20 miles an hour.
Events like this. I have heard about this event. Jeremy Corbell and I talked about it in one of our episodes a while back. We did not have the video, though. There are servers where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public hasn't been allowed to see. Occasionally, some of that stuff gets out in the wild and it comes our way. It should be going to you. The public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah. What the hell is that?
So, again, I'm not speculating what it is, but the question is, why are we being blocked from this information consistently? And you had, you reported James Lakatsky came to you with government possession of NHI craft and how they ultimately gained entry. Can you testify to the veracity of that claim?
For approval.
Dr. Lakatsky is a man who served most of his career with the DIA, a very trusted, high-level rocket scientist and analyst who inspired the OSAP program, as I said earlier. And in full disclosure, I've co-written 2 books with him. He dropped this on myself and another co-author out of the blue. And it took 14 months for us to get DOPSR approval, for him to release 2 sentences on that. He said this craft, we had managed to get inside of it. It had no wings, no motor, no tail. It had no fuel, no fuel tanks. They didn't know how it flew or how it was operated. It clearly looked like it was aerodynamic, but he would not go further. He's a by-the-book guy, and until he gets clearance to say more about that, I don't think we're going to hear much more. But it's not ours. It wasn't ours. We didn't make it. We didn't know who made it and how it was built and how it operated. We've got at least one, and I don't know. I think that's enough confirmation that we do have recovered discs and material.
I've watched many of your videos in Oregon and other places. One of the big questions, I think, for many of us is why the federal government refuses to be transparent.
There's probably multiple reasons. When these things first started invading our skies in large numbers, we were scared. It was right after World War II, and they knew what they were, and they didn't want to panic the public, and that was probably a good call. Over time, I think the lying sort of became institutionalized, Flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on radar, jets are chased after these objects, and then we get an explanation. It was a temperature inversion. And those kind of lies have been told for a long time. What was told to me by an investigator from Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato, who was sent after this story by Robert Byrd and Harry Reid. He came out to Nevada, tried to get into Area 51, did get in there, looked around, talked to people, trying to get to the bottom of it. He believed that this program, reverse engineering, etc., was inside, had been moved inside these corporations. And he said, when this comes out, people are going to go to prison. and basically misusing legitimate national security funds, tens of billions of dollars, in order to keep this cover-up going. I also believe there's a legitimate reason for the cover-up, in that there is undeniable connection of national security involved in this technology. If we are racing for it to master that technology against the Russians and the Chinese, which is what I have been told by Senator Reid and many others, then it is a race that's critical to our survival. There could be a form of disclosure, I think. Yes, it's real, it's somewhere else, without revealing all the details that would allow someone else to have an advantage in the race for this technology.
Thank you.
My first question is to Mr. Knapp. Mr. Knapp, how do you know that the files that you obtained from the former Soviet government are not BS and just given to you as a disinformation campaign against the U.S. government?
That's a good question. So I shared some of them with the Senate Intelligence Committee when I first got back, because that was requested by the Russians, who shared some of that information with me. Secondly, I gave all of that material to the DIA through BASS, the OSAP program, sorry for the acronyms.
Can you name names real quick? Sorry.
At BASS or OSAP?
Who did you give them to?
And between the residents and the workers that live here in the coastal bend.
And they hired a whole team
simply
to go
has just not been any
translate
way for us to appeal to on any level on any issue.
In the USSR and Russia put together.
I think that you're no longer fit to continuing governing us. You now have to make
as a city employee.
When you engage with Arrow
but he was saying that we have to have
did not match
people from the board here in the House.
You and others have witnessed. And your assessment of what
I would put it to you this way. The statement Arrow has made is scientific evidence of extraterrestrials. Scientific evidence requires scientific control of extraterrestrials and the only way to scientifically prove extraterrestrial is we have to go to that planet, acquire technology, bring it back, and compare it to what we have here.
So you're saying they won't let anything out because, or they won't come forward unless they confirm that unless they go to the planet and confirm where it's originated.
That would be scientific evidence, yes. And by that statement, Arrow found no scientific evidence of extraterrestrials is basically, I don't want to call it a psyop, but a misrepresentation, because we do have things, but making that statement is not technically a lie.
Mr. Knapp first.
And we aim to achieve them while respecting our city council, which has been in place for 30 years.
Question is, how do you verify their claims before deciding
Public comment serves as one avenue for communication, but it's certainly not the sole method. You can also reach out to members of this council by phone, email, or even by scheduling an in-person appointment. I also want to take a moment to read.
Used to work with them. If they're credible people, that's one way. I think about Arrow, the organization that this body created to deal with witnesses and whistleblowers. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time here, but they invited people to come forward, service members who knew, saw things and had experiences. And I can tell you that the people that I have talked to who went through that are deeply disappointed. There was a guy named Bob Jacobs who was a lieutenant attached to Vandenberg in 1964. His unit would record missile tests. They recorded all of them. On one of this particular tests, a UFO comes out of nowhere, zaps what looks like a laser beam at what would have been a nuclear dummy, a nuclear weapon, and disabled him. And he is called into the commander's office. Two guys in suits clipped that film footage out that shows the UFO, and he's ordered to never talk about it. He comes forward to Arrow. He heeds the call, thinking he's doing his duty as an American to tell that story, and they completely dismissed him. They made up a story that they had tracked down the original footage. There was nothing like that in it. Well, there was no original footage. It had been taken away the day the footage was recorded. He's deeply disappointed. People like Bob Salas, who had worked at a nuclear ICBM base, who saw UFOs fly over the base, and these missile silos were taken down. He went to Arrow too and was completely disregarded. It almost looks like Arrow operated as a counterintelligence operation to get people to come in, tell their stories, and then discredit all of them. I can't imagine that any whistleblower or witness will ever go to Arrow again because of
And also, Ignition Point Corpus Christi, talking about resource management and industrial expansion broadly. I wanted to talk about some new water resources we have going on, Evangeline, we have 24 MGD, Harbor Island is 2.7 MGD.
Another question for you, Mr. Knapp. What is, in your view, having investigated this issue for so many years, what is the long game with respect to disclosure of this information to the public? Because with the advent of essentially a video camera and a high-megapixel phone in everybody's pocket at some point, this information is going to be impossible to withhold from the public. What do you think is the long game?
Well, the secret's out. I mean, how many videos have there been already? You know, videos that are leaked from within the military and intelligence agencies and contractors and sensor platforms.
Provided by CCW in July and August 2025. Corpus Christi residents are only using 12.5% of treated water. Commercial institutions like hotels and hospitals only use 13, while industry uses close to 75% of the treated water in our city. They are pushing this desalination plant and saying it's the solution when the permit for the project says that this water is not.
They can.
Real quick, I'd like to ask the committee to replay that video that Millicent had played earlier. I want to ask every witness here, specifically ones that have sensor training or have been able to recognize some of this movement. Please roll that real quick.
Wow. I'm here to Raleigh Park, RV Park, for camping violation.
Contractor that does a lot of construction across the world.
The best strategy for this particular tranche of funding. And so he's engaged. He gave feedback to the most recent letter that was sent in terms of the terminology that was used in the letter sent to Brian McMahon. And so he's ready and willing to help and be involved as a consultant on the team. So he's not a lobbyist. So he wouldn't be lobbying.
No, it would be a consultant, which is what we talked about.
A lot of people are bringing.
And once we do that, then we can come back and give you our best estimate on it.
So,
okay. Does this video scare you guys? Nat?
I had a different reaction. I was really happy that it got out. Thanks for providing.
Curiosity kills the cat. All right, Mr. Moreland.
Go ahead and submit that for approval. Give me a call back at 512.
All right, that is.
Chief, I was on a shift for a little
bit. Medic 1, Engine 3, Medic 1 for call, 125 Green Trail, 125 Green Trail, area 9007. Work off EMS 1 at 1000 airport.
You saw it on the screen. You were the CIC, is that correct? That's correct, on an LCS ship.
Only marked as a violent due to disposition, not necessarily clinical.
Did a bunch of the other folks in the CIC come and check out what you're looking at?
Yes,
we all did. Tactical officer.
And on that one, they also like contact
two others that were on watch. We were all in the same space, so we were all looking at the Sapphire screen all at the same time. Because in the other couple instances with the witnesses, you guys just saw it by yourself. Is that correct? Mr. Borland, you saw it by yourself?
For me, yes, sir.
Mr. Nisitella, you saw this by yourself?
No, there were multiple witnesses in every case of them.
How long did that encounter take place, Chief? So, the encounter itself, from the time I recognized on my radar to the time after the video ends, was probably about 5 to 7 minutes. What speed was the object moving at? When I first witnessed off the port bridge wing the object moving out of the water, what I thought was originally just a light in the water or something on the horizon, and surfacing and going into the air.
Vehicle's not running. The call taker is calling level off now.
I started thinking and going through kind of like my checklist in my mind. Could it be a hero, but it's not blinking lights? So I then realized this is something I've never seen before. So the speed itself, just going from the horizon to about maybe 3,000-4,000 feet in the air was very slow, slowly rising, and then sped up about an inch. Knowing specific speeds of aircraft just by visual eye, but I would say probably 1-2 Mach instantly into the rest of the formation. I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other three objects until I went back to my radar and also utilized Sapphire to see
And
that,
as
in fact,
Officer
there were
Lewis
four
was
total.
mentioning,
And then again,
we have fought hard
when they all
for our
left after
church.
a
We have
certain
fought
amount of
hard to
time,
build the building so that we can be there. As a member who cares for our community, who cares for our city, who cares for our children and our future, I feel like it is in our best interest to protect a small congregation, to protect people that are trying to make a better life for themselves. As Officer Lewis mentioned, he donates his time.
And for all the information that is being brought to you, for those of you that continue to sell out. So on that note, hypothetically, I want to ask this council for $1.5 billion to build a new building to possibly hire 500 new workers that could work there only if there's the right weather, no high winds, and nor too much pollen. Then I would like another $1.2 billion in reduced taxes as well.
So it's very hard to tell the difference between something on the horizon and something surfacing from the water. My personal thoughts after seeing what I saw is that exactly that it did in fact come through. I had to.
The beauty of the bay at night when all you hear is the waves, the little pink flowers that pop up in every patch of grass. They're called pinky pink primroses.
Just statement of fact. And I think we've got to start doing statement of fact more, Mayor, because the stuff that comes up here that you hear, I was guilty.
Because of the price, and the price is higher now, and yet here they are, and they want to go ahead and start pursuing the Inner Harbor desal plant. I mean, I don't know what else I can say to convince you, just like many people in there. We've talked about the environmental issues. We've talked about, the public, the historical racism against the Hillgirls community.
Because we have investigated the JFK files as well, that there was a document that was sent between Russia, there was an agreement between Russia and the United States that if they were to see some unidentified objects over sensitive sites, that they would report it to each other. Are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I'm also familiar with the rhetoric.
And that's all I really have to say, but I mean, for what I know about it,
wouldn't it be something
we lived on an aircraft carrier during the first Gulf War. And where did I sign up?
I know for sure that
I signed up
had
here.
conversations about it. And
why did I go? To serve? Because of here. I'd like to keep it.
Barney Davis is the best site. They have 500 and the power's ready to go. Also, it is the shortest distance of the Gulf East.
Anything else we can move over to the next council meeting?
No, there's nothing.
But a pulse still beating in our languages, our songs, our stories, and our survival.
Absolutely.
I'm thankful for my wife, for her love, her friendship, her patience, for knowing how to reel me in and hold the line when I'm flying too high like an out-of-control kite, because it happens from time to time. She keeps me grounded, centered, and whole. I'm thankful for my son Atticus for being fearless in his tries and bold in his reach.
Maintenance security mechanisms or using
At this point,
piece of property is on 4601 Maria Street. This is our old clock property. This is about 7.79 acres. So this is another one that we don't feel that there would be a future need for this site.
Or is it otherworldly?
The next one
may not be
is...
When you look back
No, that's the covered playground.
and the evidence that's been presented, if you're going to point the American people to one piece of
and
evidence
sustaining life on
their
Earth.
journey on this.
So if you kill nature, I don't know what life we have. I've said this before. Even if the desal plan is proved to be safe for the environment,
Specific,
and I feel like we need to do our best part to use that water so that we have water also. I like washing my truck. I like watering my grass.
devices and make.
Video we're seeing today.
With the kinetic.
Sir, I'd have to say that if just the average person here looked at.
Oh, I'm not done. I've still got 48 seconds.
Sir, I need you to leave the council chambers.
Okay,
you can't
sure?
tell yourself
Thank you.
that 100%
All right.
of what's being recorded is fake or false.
Thank you, sir.
You have to at some point
Great.
understand that
Looking
there's
forward to it.
something out there.
Well, I mean, you bring an issue to point, the law enforcement community, conducting investigation, you're always looking for totality of circumstances, looking at all the evidence and how
And then
to
to the sentence
so that would be my, advice to the American people, that this is a journey that is just beginning. From a congressional perspective, but you have decades of data, some of it not real, and now presenting this to the American people. And I think this latest video from Mr. Burleson is something that should get everyone pause.
Also surprised that there's a vehicle fire of Southern Minerals
is that in a defensive posture? Or is that
in the field surrounded by
what capabilities do those guys have that we, quite frankly, may not have? Mr. Knapp?
What hooked me on the story was the paper trail, these documents that should exist. We've been told for decades,
And make up the fabric that we.
There's nothing to it. It's not a threat. You can go about your business. And then when FOIA becomes the law of the land, thousands of pages to the contrary leak out. There's a memo by General Nathan Twining in 1947 when the country was being overflown by dozens of UFOs, hundreds of
Sir, I need you to
UFOs,
leave the
in
council
which he said, look,
chambers.
this is
Okay.
not
These
things are crap. They're not ours. They outperform anything we've done. I mean, if you follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that they really exist and changed their tune and not put things in writing, it spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did in the Sokolov, that military defense program, said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs. And they were ordered to fire them. And for the most part, the UFOs were zipped away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out and crashed. 2 of the pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't. The Russians didn't either.
I've got to be almost out of time, but Mr. Berlin, then you, sir.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think Bob Lazar, and not for the reasons that most would talk about, mainly because Bob Lazar was immediately discredited. They said he never went where he worked. They said he never did what he did. But yet Bob Lazar showed up with a bunch of friends and a video camera and was filming these test flights in the middle of the desert. So clearly he knew something.
Dylan, knowing you testified to Arrow, are they obfuscating when they claim to have discovered no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology, and are they lying to the American public?
As I said before, it's a manipulation of the public perception. The statement, scientific evidence of extraterrestrials, is a true statement. It is not the truth about what is happening and what we have.
Would y'all like to comment on that further?
Well,
edgy.
It's splitting hairs. No proof that they're extraterrestrials. What would that proof look like? A piece of kryptonite? What would it be? I mean, we could be talking about different forms of non-human intelligence. I think the dominant paradigm is that they come from outer space, somewhere else, and they have some way that they can cross those vast distances that we can't even imagine doing. But not necessarily the answer. So asking for proof of extraterrestrials might not be the answer at all. It's splitting hairs. We don't know where they're from. I don't know anyone who knows the answer for sure. They call them aliens just as a placekeeper kind of a word, but no one in all these programs who've studied this stuff for years, people with much bigger brains than mine, for sure.
I've talked to Navy folks, some of the deep sea areas. I think there might be something there that they're here. I don't know when they got here. Another point that needs to be made is every time we say we're going to back engineer or whatever you want to call it, these craft. I always say, like, it'd be like if you took I ride motorcycles, but if you took like an Indian or a Harley to the people that came over here on the Mayflower, they'd see a bright, shiny object. They might polish it. They might They might get it started. I doubt they could. They couldn't work on it. They couldn't put fuel. They wouldn't be able to have the capability of putting fuel in it. I just think that's we're scratching at something that we don't have any knowledge of, and that's why it's just taken so damn long. But they do know, first one that cracks that code, it's over. I mean, it's energy, it's power, it's everything. And I worry, too, that in the wrong hands, if they do that, they keep it from the rest of us because they're so invested in whatever energy sources we have here that their billionaire buddies are going to profit, and they can't retool because they know once it's out on the internet, it's over. And so I think there's a lot of things going after, and I think that's why the move to discredit folks is so rapid. I think, they're just, they point to them and they put the dogs on them.
There's a price to be paid for that, too. Russians and Chinese are trying to figure this out as well, but they don't have the same kind of stigma. They tell their best scientists and engineers, get in there and work on it for a very long time. Might have a head start on us. Here, we don't have our best scientists and engineers working on it because they've been told it's nonsense. The stigma is very real for people like that.
Mr. Nueces, when you heard the testimony of Mr. Knapp talking about these missiles were shut down and turned on in Russia.
Friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Tyler Robinson has been taken into custody and charged, but also on that day, Desmond Holt, white male, shot and injured two students at a high school in Colorado before killing himself. And according to the Anti-Defamation League, he had a fascination with mass shootings and white supremacy. So do you admit to, deny these facts?
Low altitude, 200 feet over base security police.
Okay. Your predecessor,
presidents, and you scrapped the tools that they developed to fight domestic terrorism, including the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database.
Foreign governments to just performs all of these bots all of the time to weaponize Americans. You see what's going on here? This is a byproduct of all of that. What's going on in the streets is a byproduct of all of that.
When you first
What's happening is you see people celebrate Luigi Mangione is a byproduct of all of that. And so if we want to do something, then we should talk about Section 230.
Believe it would be true.
We should talk about how we're going to make sure that we don't let foreign governments.
With regard to prejudice against Catholics, what happened in the example, have you ever, has anybody ever apologized to the Catholic Church or apologized to
all
that
seeing it at
temple?
the same time?
I don't know, sir. These encounters were.
Is that something you think would be perhaps a good idea to do in the future?
I think leadership should address it.
Thank you.
And other fentanyl and excuse me, all the other illegal narcotics through the island chains in the Caribbean Ocean and ultimately for America. So there has to be more work done in the region to stop those navigable waterways from being traversed with drugs bound for America.
And finally, Mr. Director, what is the one thing that Congress could most do in terms of passing a law to best support the FBI in making America safer and more secure?
Real quickly, can you just re-describe size and whether or not you heard how big it is?
Let me ask you an adjacent question, Director. I noticed in your written testimony, I don't think we've talked about it yet, you brought to our attention an expiring authority. It's in 6 U.S.C. 124N with respect to counter-UAS drones. You point out that authority expires in statute at the end of this month, and you impressed upon us your interest in seeing it extended in some manner. Can you talk a little bit about the FBI's role in counter-UAS work?
And I very much agree. I think we can all agree that political violence is wrong, it's evil, regardless of which side it comes from, and that we can all adamantly and vehemently reject it, or we certainly should. But one of the things that we've noticed recently is that affinity and tolerance for political violence is not equally distributed on both sides of the aisle. In fact, right now, social media is filled with leftists who are cheering, and we can agree that 3% is far too many. But there's an astounding difference between 25% on the left accepting and tolerating political violence and 3% on the right. I would hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would also recognize that there is a systemic problem on their side of the aisle with tolerance for violence against people with whom they politically disagree, that there's a cultural, in this country who are losing their jobs for far less than this. And that, by the way, is a just response to acceptance and tolerance of political violence. It's amazing to me that the political left today, who were the originators and the cheerleaders of cancel culture, now have the backbone to attack conservatives for defending their assassinated friends. But there's a key difference here.
I think Charlie lived that scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7, finish the course, keep the faith.
2003. Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over two missile defense sites.
But for this guy,
after several minutes,
but for this guy, we would never have known this information.
Over the hills.
The good people of this great country would not have known what took place 8 years ago when they were trying to undermine the guy elected by we the people.
Official Air Force records of
Attorney General Bondi.
are in
She set up a
possession
special strike
by
force, a
Aero
special
and the
team
FBI.
to look into this and see if there's any
Later
criminal
that night,
liability that
while I
exists
was
in
on
what took
duty,
place.
Security
Now,
guards at a critical launch
in addition to getting the truth to the people, Director Patel,
over the ocean.
and he's given us
I
information
responded to
that
the
Chris
incident.
Ray didn't.
And his wife, who
Chaos
miraculously
ensued over the
survived
radio as the
the
object
combined
approached
17
rapidly.
guns.
I heard
saw an
my friend
arsonist set
screaming, "It's coming
Pennsylvania
right at
Governor
us,
Josh Shapiro's
it's coming
residence
right
on
for
fire.
us, and now
of
it's
course,
right
last
here."
week, we saw the horrific,
Moments
cold-blooded
later, I heard them say that it
assassination of
had shot
Charlie
off
Kirk
and was gone.
in Utah that has shaken the nation.
When I arrived on scene,
1 minute after
I
Charlie
talked to
Kirk was
5
shot in the
shaken
neck,
witnesses who described
a 16-year-old shooter in
triangular
Evergreen,
craft
Colorado,
larger than a football
radicalized by
field
white
that hovered silently
supremacist
for about
ideology
45
online,
seconds
opened fire
over their
and
entry
critically
control point
wounded 2 other
before shooting
student
away at
explosions of
impossible
gun
speed.
violence. The important position at the
About a week
FBI
later,
requires a
another
leader
patrol
who
reported a
puts
light over
public
the ocean,
safety
behaving
and
erratically.
national security
Believing
and
it
the
might
rule
be
of
an
law
unannounced
first.
aircraft, they
I'm
declared an
afraid, Director
emergency.
Patel, you've
And
given us
law
reason to
response
believe
force
you've used the
responded.
powers of the FBI to
Before
serve Donald Trump
the forces could
and his
arrive, the
agenda
object
of
descended
partisan
and either
retribution.
landed
You've broken
or
your
hovered
promise
on
not
our
to do
flight
that.
line.
You've betrayed
And they
Jeffrey
took off
Epstein's
again
victims
at
and
impossible
survivors.
speed.
You've turned your back on the career law enforcement
Witnesses
officers.
to this event
At
were threatened
approximately 5 p.m.
and
local time,
intimidated
I arrived on the
afterward.
ground and walked
They
the
were
crime
told to
scene
keep
myself.
quiet
And we
and think
flew
about what
multiple
they were
FBI
reporting.
assets in and out to
After
process
that,
DNA
things did get
simultaneously
quiet
while bringing in evidence
until
response
about
technicians,
2005,
hostage rescue teams,
when
and
another
other experts
patrol
to assist
reported
state
a
and local law
massive
enforcement with their
triangular
investigation.
craft
At 8 p.m.
larger
local
than
on
a
September 11th, the
C-130
FBI collected and
silently
populated and
floating
promulgated
over the
at a press
installation.
conference a video
Watched it for a
of
few
the
minutes,
suspect on the
traveled
ground.
west,
We
and
also
disappeared
released
into the
enhanced
night.
images in China.
And then I had
And
my
I want
own
the American
encounter.
people to know,
Again
in this
in
setting, there's a lot of
2005.
work that the
I
brave
was
men
off
and women of the
duty,
FBI are
sitting
doing we
in my
just can't get
backyard
into,
with 2 other
but they don't
police
stop.
officers.
Our cyber
We
threats,
noticed what first
ransomware
appeared to be a
attacks, those
satellite
harming our
in
children
orbit.
online.
But it
We have
wasn't
nearly a
acting like a
20%
satellite.
increase in
The light was
indictments and
strange, it
arrests
was
for those
dropped in
that
elevation.
harm our malware,
At times it would
infrastructure
vanish
systems,
from view
telecom
and
systems, and
reappear
energy
in a
structure.
different location
Combating
in the
salt
sky.
and vault
And
typhoons are just a
eventually,
little bit of
it
the examples we're
reappeared
doing.
200 feet
Maybe most
over my
importantly, under the
house.
counterterrorism and
It was a
domestic
30-foot
terrorism to the
diameter
girl. He's now in
sphere of
custody.
light.
Transparency
My
remains
friends
one of
and
my
I watched
main
it for a
priorities
moment,
at the
and then
FBI.
it gently
And this is what I've
accelerated
done in my 7 months.
and
We've produced more than
disappeared into the stars.
33,000 pages of documents to Congress
These events
to a variety
profoundly
of
changed
committees,
my life,
including,
the lives of my friends.
I believe,
We stand at a
7,500
pivotal
to this
moment
committee
in
alone,
history.
if memory
The
serves me
question
correct.
is no longer
To put
whether
the
these events
33,000
are
in
real,
perspective,
but whether we have the
my
courage
predecessor
to face them.
in 7 years produced
True leadership
13,000 pages
requires
in
vision,
total to the
a
United
willingness
States
to
Congress.
confront
His
the
predecessor in
unknown
4
with transparency and resolve. So I asked the Congress
And
to help we the
I do want to
people
highlight one thing about
enact this
DC,
vision.
and
There are
we are
3
working to
goals.
bring them justice.
Fund
And, Mr.
independent
Chairman,
research.
in my
and treat
16 years,
UAP
now my
study
17
with
years
the
of
same
government service,
seriousness
if anyone has any
as we would
questions about
any
my
other
service,
scientific field.
bring it on.
2,
Thank you,
end
Director. We will now
secrecy
proceed under
and
the 5-minute rule. The chair
overclassification.
recognizes the gentleman from California. Mr.
Transparency is the foundation of truth.
Director,
Without
delighted
it,
to have you here.
witnesses like us
You are a
are
breath of fresh
dismissed.
air.
3, protect
As you
the
outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor.
And Mr. Chairman,
Protect
in my
them,
16 years, now my
and you will
17 years of government
embolden
service,
others
if
to
anyone has any
join
questions
this
about my
cause.
service, bring it on.
These phenomenon challenge our
Thank you,
deepest
Director. We will now
assumptions
proceed
about
to the 5-minute rule.
reality,
The chair recognizes the
consciousness,
gentleman
and our
from
place in the
California, Mr. Rice.
universe. Exploring
Director,
can
delighted to
unlock
have you here.
transformative breakthroughs
You
in
are a breath of
technology,
fresh air.
biology, and human understanding.
As you outlined,
Let
and I
this
won't
be the
repeat
moment
it,
when
the
America
accomplishments,
chooses
you did
courage
so
over
with the
fear,
same resources as
transparency
your
over
predecessor,
secrecy,
roughly. Is that
and
correct?
progress
I believe
over
so, yes.
stagnation.
Traffickers,
Let's show the
counterintelligence
world that
people,
our nation
counterintelligence
leads not
threats,
only through
cyber threats.
strength,
That's what they were
but through
trained to
fearless
do.
pursuit
And that's
of
what
the
we're
truth.
letting them do.
Thank you.
One major question
My
I
name is
have,
Alexandra Wiggins. I'm
after
an active
decades of
duty
doing this,
U.S. Navy
each
operations
on our
specialist,
side of
Chief
it,
Petty Officer.
both the chairman, myself,
Father
and
of three,
others,
and
both at
dedicated
oversight
American
and
testifying
here,
today in
have
my
seen
personal
that
capacity.
the FBI and the Department of
Views I
Justice
share are my
hide
own, and I do
behind
not represent the
non-statutory
official positions of the Department of
practices.
the
Now,
Navy
you've
or
changed
any
the
subordinate
interpretation of many of those practices.
And the
On the
FBI's
evening
public corruption
of
squad has
February
been disbanded.
15th, 2023,
I would like to
at
submit to the
approximately
record a New York
19:15
Times
PST,
article entitled
in the Whiskey
FBI dismantles
291
elite public
warning area off
corruption
the coast
squad.
of
Yes,
Southern
Your Honor,
California.
sir.
I was
Thank
serving
you.
on board
These
USS
actions are an
Jackson.
invitation
During
to
that
corrupt
period,
politicians to break the
I
law,
moved between
since
the
they know
Interior
that the government is
Communications
asleep
Center,
at the switch.
ICC-1,
Last month, Senator
and the
Warren
bridge
and I,
wing,
along with
correlating
dozens of
with
other
central
members of
picture
Congress,
with
wrote
visual
to you and Attorney
observations
General Bundy
as
expressing
part of my
town in my
routine
district that
responsibilities
just
for
fell
surface and air
victim
picture
to a
management.
cyber attack on September
What I
12th
observed
that interrupted
and what our
emergency
crew
services.
recorded was not
Waxhaw's
consistent
working with
with
state
the
partners and the FBI has been notified of this attack,
as
and I
they
certainly
appear
pray they're
on our
able to
system.
help out with the ongoing investigation.
A self-luminous
Could you just speak to what the
tic-tac-shaped
FBI is
object
doing to
emerged from the
bolster
ocean
our
before
community's
linking up with
cybersecurity
three
to
other
defend against
similar
any future cyber attacks?
The four then disappeared simultaneously with a high synchronized, near
354
instantaneous
attacks on
acceleration.
Catholic churches. In the first year
I
following
observed
the
no
leak,
sonic
there
boom
were more than
and no
100
conventional
attacks
propulsion
against
signatures.
pro-life pregnancy care centers.
No exhaust
and the
plume,
shadowy
no
pro-abortion
control surface
group,
articulation
Jane's Revenge,
on
claimed
the Sapphire
responsibility
image
for
system.
24 of
Shortly
these attacks.
after the synchronized
Meanwhile, the
departure,
Biden
radar
FBI
tracks
focused
dropped.
resources on attacking
These
Catholics
observations
and
were
peaceful
multi-sensor
pro-life
and recorded
protesters
inside
like
of
Mark Houck
ICC-1
and Paul and transgender
with time
activists.
location overlay
There have been essentially no incidents
visible in our
of violence by
source frames
Catholics,
that
pro-lifers,
have
or
been
parents
made
at school
public
board
by
meetings,
journalists.
but there have unfortunately been multiple shootings
From my experience operating in this
motivated
region
by
over many
leftist and
years,
transgender ideology,
and
including recent
consistent
attacks in
with our
Nashville,
public
Colorado Springs, Denver, and
characterized
Aberdeen.
encounters,
Worse,
unidentified
the
objects
targeted violence
reoccur
reached a
in
boiling
United
point
States
this past
operation
month.
areas off Southern
A few weeks
California.
ago, an anti-Christian
That fact alone
transgender
does not tell
terrorist
us what they
murdered
are.
2 children and injured 17.
It does argue
And
the
he
systematic
testified that in his online chat room
stigma-free
of
reporting
more than 20
and for the preservation
ideologues
of
that you were
sensor
aware,
data
I believe you said
so
many
analysts
more.
can evaluate safe
Many
and
were
intelligence
aware of and possibly
implications with
complicit in the assassination.
rigor.
Director Patel, in
I
light
want
of the
to
increased
underscore
violence
3
emanating
points
from the far
for the
left,
task force and the committee.
is your FBI
Aviation and
investigating
maritime
this
safety.
violent trend of
When
anti-religious,
crews and watchstanders
Antifa,
observe
and
objects
transgender
that
driven
maneuver
violence?
or accelerate
All
in
of it
ways
across
that
the
does
board
not
is
match
being
known
Reason
profiles,
liked
and do
Washington,
not-
D.C.
and
better
do
when
so
it was more
near
dangerous
our
and more
ships and
violent, when
aircraft.
there were more
That is,
robberies
first and foremost, a safe
carjackings and murders and rapes.
standardized checklist and training
what has,
should ensure
what
we
has the
capture
crime
the best possible sensor data in real
picture
time,
in Washington,
including
D.C.
IR
looked like
settings,
since the so-called
slant
federal
range,
takeover?
2,100
estimates
arrests,
and bearing and range
37%
altitude
decrease in violent
and immediate
crime,
change
same
of-
time
chain
last
of
year,
custody for any
60%
recordings.
decrease in gun crime, 74%
Reporting without
decrease in
stigma,
carjacking.
protection
Also,
without
Venezuela
retribution.
is being utilized heavily
Sailors
by the
need to
narco-traffickers
know that
send
reporting
up,
UAP
cocaine,
encounters
meth,
will not
and
harm
other
their
fentanyl,
can help
illegal narcotics,
by
through
reinforcing
the island
witness
chains in the
protection
Caribbean
and
Ocean
by
and
directing the
ultimately for
relevant
America.
office
So
to maintain
there has to
confidential,
be more work done in the
destigmatized
region
channels for
to
service
stop
members who step
those
forward with
navigable
data.
waterways from being traversed with drugs bound for
Declassification and
America.
transparency.
And finally, Mr.
where
Director,
possible. The task
what
force
is the one thing that
declassification
Congress
mission
could most
to going
is
to
directly
get onto
relevant
social media companies, gaming platforms,
where
have
operational
legal access,
security
and also have
permits
private
releasing metadata
partnerships
preserved
with the
sensor
FBI of
excerpts
those companies and
or at
allow them
least
to report
technical
into us on a
summaries
daily basis. There is no
would
human
improve
being or AI
public
system on
trust
earth
and
that
accelerate
can go out
outside
there and cover down on the
scientific
threat
scrutiny.
in those
That
theaters.
includes Prince
And we need
IR
more
frames
authorities,
and
and we need the
radar
private sector
parameters
to
needed
double
for
down.
independent analysis.
Well, thank you very much for all you're doing, all the men and women
I am not
of
here
the FBI are
to
doing
make
to keep
claims
us safe,
beyond
and I
my
yield
lane.
back.
Get onto social media.
I'm here to provide a
companies,
first-hand
gaming
account of
platforms
what
have
I
legal
saw,
access and also have private
what our
partnerships
systems recorded,
with the FBI of those
and why
companies and allow them to report
it
into
matters
us on a
for
daily
safety,
basis.
for
There
intelligence,
is no human
and public
being or AI
confidence.
system on earth that can go
My
out
request
there
to you is
and
practical.
cover down
Help
on the
us
threat
capture,
in those
protect,
theaters.
fairly
And so
evaluate
we need
the evidence,
assistance and we need more
and provide a
authorities,
safe
and we need the
pathway
private sector
for
to double
those
down.
in uniform.
Well, thank you very much for all you're doing, all the men and women of the FBI
I
are
want
doing
to
to
thank
keep
the
us safe.
committee and
and
the
I yield
task
back.
force for holding this hearing.
And more
for
than
the
10,000 since
and
January.
for placing this discussion in a
Objection.
forum where evidence
Gentleman
can be examined
from
carefully
Kansas.
and openly.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman,
appreciate
and
your
Director, thank you for
attention
being
and
here. I
stand
have
ready to
listened
answer
carefully to all the discussion in
I'm
this
George
hearing.
Knapp,
I've reached
Chief
two
Investigative
top-line
Reporter
conclusions.
at KLAS-TV in Las
First, I am
Vegas.
glad I don't have
began
your
my
job.
pursuit of this weird mystery
And second, I am
way back
glad
in
you do.
1987.
Thank you for
And
being willing to
38
step up and
years,
serve in this
I've
role.
always approached this
I'd like to
as
plow a little
news
bit of
story.
ground that we've
It's
not
a matter of
not
faith
spent a
or
lot of
belief.
time on
To
so
me,
far, and
it's a story,
explore
and it's an important one.
many respects where both you and a lot of local and state agencies cooperate in terms of evidence analysis. From the state side, programs such as the HIDA programs, very, very important in counter drug, such as Coverdell grants, very, very important in maintaining state laboratory capacities. Would I be correct in concluding that if we are able to maintain robust funding for those types of programs, including both Coverdell and HIDA, that would contribute to the safety of the United States, and you and a lot of local and state agencies cooperate in terms of evidence analysis. From the state side, programs such as the HIDA programs, very, very important in counter drug, such as Coverdell grants, very, very important in maintaining state laboratory capacities. Would I be correct in concluding that if we are able to maintain robust funding for those types of programs, including both Coverdell and HIDA, that would contribute to the safety of the United States and to your mission?
Absolutely. And touch on more important salient points. I submitted a detailed written statement for the record, and we'll go into a lot of that here. But, the public.
Let me ask you an adjacent question, Director. I noticed in your written testimony, I don't think we talked about it yet. You brought to our attention an expiring authority. It's in 6 U.S.C. 124N with respect to counter UAS drones. You point out that that authority expires in statute at the end of this month. And you impressed upon us your interest in seeing it extended in some manner. Can you talk a little bit about
The FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI. And as a result, you've left all of us of the FBI. And as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book directors ever written or anyone else has written. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, deputy director of national intelligence with the National Security Council.
Senator Harry Reid, Senator Howard Cannon, also of Nevada, a guy named Al O'Donnell, who was the first general manager of EG&G in Nevada, which managed the Nevada test site, which blew up hundreds of nuclear weapons. There's a guy named Dr. James
8 p.m. local on September 11th,
who was a career scientist with the Defense Intelligence Agency, who was the guy who initiated a program called OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, which is, as far as we know, the largest acknowledged UFO program ever funded by the U.S. government, which put together an amazing pile of information that members of this committee
every single state across this country is getting a plus up.
The DIA still has at least 95%
that the FBI is short, or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of you. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. And prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the President led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this, and I've spoken to his family,
and a trusted colleague from
we are working to bring them
met with
justice.
and negotiated
Mr. Chairman,
with senior executives
my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service,
and hammered out a deal wherein Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of
I want to
fresh
move on now
air.
to the Russia files, because that was going to be sort of the central impetus of what I was going to talk to you about today.
My 16
Back in the
years,
early
now my 17
90s,
years of
I
government
got into
service.
Russia,
If anyone has
met
any
with a number of their
questions
defense
about my
officials,
service, bring it on.
Ministry of Defense,
In
and
the
for me
5-minute
that
rule, the chair
Russia
recognizes
had
the
been
gentleman
doing
from
the same
California,
thing
Ms.
they
Rice.
did, the United States had been
Director,
doing. That is,
delighted to have you
secretly
here.
studying
You are a
UFOs
breath of fresh
while
air.
publicly
And
saying
harsh
something
words
completely
for
different.
Republicans in
The
Congress
documents and
for
interviews
not
that I
getting the
obtained and
Epstein
have now
files
shared
out to
with
the
this
public.
task force show that the USSR launched
this
what is
clip.
almost certainly the largest
and let us know who the
UFO UAP
pedophiles are.
investigation in the world.
Put on your big
The
boy
first phase of
pants
that
and
was
let
a
us know
order
who
was
the
sent out to
pedophiles
the
are. You
entire
said you
USSR
emphasized that the
military
president and
empire,
FBI
that
director
every unit,
each had
you
complete
see anything
authority to
strange in the
release
sky,
Epstein's
a
client
craft, an
list.
orb,
You
something
said Epstein's
unusual.
black book is
You had
under
to
the quote
gather all the evidence,
direct control of the
collect
director of
testimony
FBI.
from the
Look at this clip.
witnesses, look for
And
physical
manhunting them is
evidence,
step
and all
two,
of
and
that
that's what we're
information
committing
went
our
into one
resources to.
program at the Ministry
my
of
next
Defense.
question is what
Thousands and
progress has
thousands of
administration
these
made in
reports came
apprehending
in.
and removing
A lot of them were
terrorists that
first
came in
routed to
during
the
the Biden
KGB.
I think you're
but
talking
then
about
back
if you're
to
not,
another
known or
program
suspected
that
terrorists,
came
and
after
we've
this collection
encountered
effort called
almost
Thread 3.
zero
And
at the
Thread 3
southern
was an
border since the
analysis
southern border's been
program.
sealed.
We
But the
provided
problem
to
that we
the
are running
committee
into
the
is our northern
documents
border. It's
of
largely
what they were
expansive.
trying to
The
do,
enemy
and
has
essentially
adapted,
they were trying
and
to
we
build
need
their own
more
UFOs.
focus on
They
the
were using the
northern border to
information
stop
from their
known or suspected
observations and
terrorists from
studies
coming in from
to try to
places like
figure out the
China.
technology.
Brennan
The
lied
guy
to
who was
us.
in charge of that program,
Mr.
Colonel
Chairman, I
Boris
won't
Sokolov,
stylize the evidence.
told me that
What I
their
will
goal
say is
was
that
to
the intelligence
basically
community
develop
assessment, those that
technology that would
created
be
it, and any
superior to
individual
anything
involved
we
with
had,
it is an
based
ongoing
on
investigation.
what they learned from UFOs.
There's an investigation
Mr. Knapp,
into what
just,
took
in the
place
name
in
of time,
December
to my
and
understanding,
January
did you
of
have
December
anything you
2016,
wanted to
January
submit for
2017,
Congress to
when
see?
this whole thing
I have
started, this
submitted those
grand
documents.
conspiracy.
There's-
That is being
Play
investigated, is
anything.
that right?
That has been publicly
Do you have a
announced by the
video that you would
department.
like to play?
That's been announced by the
For
department.
me to play.
Did Chris Ray
And, we've seen spy balloons traverse the United States. We've seen police stations and communities around America. And sitting in the chair you're in just 2 years ago, there was a sheriff from Cochise County, Arizona, Mark Daniels, that was here, who said that the exponential increase in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America is directly related to the open borders policies of the previous administration. Do you agree with me, who worked in Governor Hochul's office, Christine Fang in California? What are you doing to find these people who are Chinese spies that are trying to burrow themselves into the politics of America? Because we know it's happening, right?
That took off earlier.
Yes, it is. And what our counterintelligence unit is doing is aggressively
get rid of the
seeking
audio real quick.
intelligence into where these individuals are working that we
Mr.
are
Wiggins and Mr.
utilizing.
Knapp, we'll get back to
And
what
just
that
because
video
we've
was
caught
in
a
moment, but we
few
just want to make
doesn't
sure
mean
that
we've
it
caught
was
everybody.
entered
We've got a
into
lot more.
the record,
I
as
get
well as
one
all
more
the
quick question in.
documents. Those will be
The
publicly
FBI
found for
arrested a
everyone
judge in
to view.
Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan,
If
for
we could,
interfering
Mr.
with a
Knapp,
federal
we'll
law
continue on the line, but I'm gonna
enforcement
move on to Mr. Boland's opening
Could you tell us a
statement.
little bit about that? And is a judge above the law here in the United States of America?
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing, but as you stated in these allegations that there was an interference in a federal lawfully executed federal law enforcement priority that was
Systems and Intrepid Solutions. So that could be a problem. Who will direct the National Guard in Memphis? Will it be, will they have control over your agents?
No, sir, they won't.
Who will have control over your agents? You?
Well, the SAC and then ultimately the chain of command up to Washington, D.C. will control the FBI, but there's a task force that was put together that is going to be led by an interagency. The heads of U.S. Marshals, DEA, and FBI will be working together with DHS collectively.
Have you visited Memphis before?
And during that time, have you held any stock in any companies founded in China? And during that time, have you held any stock in any companies founded in China?
And two, do you agree that Congress should take all action necessary to expose this web of dollars that are flowing to undermine our way of life? We got another minute in my time, then I'd like to hear from you on this topic broadly.
I'll keep it short. Investigatively speaking, we are doing the following. We are following the money. We are following the money in every organization and every person that is violating the federal code. And it doesn't matter what your background or ideology is. We are following the money. We are an informant of the FBI.
So, Director, you played this cute shell game where you say you can't release everything because the court has said that it legally is not allowed to be released. But the court calls bullshit. Judge Richard Berman said that when you went to the court, quote, information contained in the Epstein grand jury transcript
transcripts pales
pales in comparison to Epstein investigation information and materials in the hands of the Department of Justice.
Since the witness decided to interrupt him continuously.
And the witness will be able to respond if he wants.
Thank you. My question is, will you, Director, recuse yourself, yes or no, from investigating or making decisions about the 60 individuals, including myself, that you identified as government gangsters? Yes or no?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may respond if he would like.
And the answer was no, as I heard.
Correct.
Okay. The gentleman from Wisconsin, the gentleman yields back, the gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 5 minutes.
And basically drives home. So, do we have any idea what the towel was about? Was it used later to identify a place where the firearm was left?
What we can tell you is the towel, there was a screwdriver found on the rooftop which DNA was collected off of, and the towel was found wrapped around the firearm in question in a wooded area next to the campus. All have been processed for DNA.
And then, according to the suspect's roommate, there were...
I think there was 2 locations, sir.
2019, and in that residence, the FBI found a safe.
I don't have the catalog of evidence.
In that residence, the FBI found a safe, correct?
I'll accept your representation.
And in that safe, the FBI found topless, lewd photographs of girls, correct?
Answer, I'll accept presentation, I don't know.
It was all over the media at the time, the New York Times article.
And we've also eliminated anyone that has ever touched that database that is in any way made a mistake, whether intentional or not. And we have also identified a system which shows going forward misuse the 702 system. They don't get 2 strikes, they get 1 and done.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned you're continuing to audit because, as you know, in May, the New York Times reported closed the FBI's Office of Internal Auditing. Can you explain why you decided to close this office?
Yeah, because under moving them out across the country.
Under previous FBI leadership, FBI agents were found to have lied to the FISC. There have been hundreds of thousands of violations of querying standards. In light of past violations, what action is the FBI taking to ensure that similar abuses do not occur in the future?
Exactly what I've outlined. You cannot have access to the 702 query system if you are moving them out across the country.
Under previous FBI leadership, FBI agents were found to have lied to the FISC. There have been hundreds of thousands of violations of querying standards. In light of past violations, what action is the FBI taking to ensure that similar abuses do not occur in the future?
Exactly what I've outlined. You cannot have access to the 702 query system if you...
What is the
telling you, I'm the only FBI director that has welcomed new information in this case. This administration is the only one that has welcomed any new information in this case.
Is there a yes or no?
Present new credible information. Present new information.
Are the victims credible or not?
I'll tell you what happened in the last Trump administration.
Are they credible or not? You can't even say.
Victims credibly came forward, and you know what happened? President Trump authorized the indictments of Jeffrey Epstein. Not Biden, not Obama.
You know what? That's an insult to the victims. And that's an insult to America. Continue to uncover what needs to be uncovered. One real quick thing before I say anything to 9/11. We know that was mishandled by the past director and by the past FBIs. There are family members here. There are family members who are concerned. God Almighty, we want to get to the truth of that. I ask you, please, to meet with them, to talk to them, and some difficult period of time. The FBI trust was broken with the people. Catholics were, this is the stuff we've been talking about, were labeled radical threats for praying in their churches with their rosaries. Parents at school boards were called terrorists for standing up for their children. Hindu holy men in New Jersey. We have the largest Hindu temple in the world. They were attacked. They were put up against the wall with guns to their heads. So it isn't just a Catholic or Christian thing. American Jews were targeted in colleges and
oversight and legislative authorities, administrations.
Maybe it's for fundraising. Maybe they're struggling in their district. They need a little
government
bump.
corruption looks like.
Comey, and I think you can continue that investigation. Among the declassified documents are the Durham Report Annex, the Crossfire Binder, and the Nellie Orr Criminal Referral. Could you summarize for those watching that what we know about the Russia collusion hoax so far?
From a foreign intelligence asset, only to have that information, which was demonstrably false, turned over to the FBI, who walked into a federal FISA secret court and asked for a secret surveillance court order and lied to the federal court, and we know that because someone was convicted of it, and only to surveil the political opponent. So that is a massive scandal. We helped expose it. And in terms of the pages of productions, I provided 1,400 pages of production related to Crossfire Hurricane, and my predecessors have provided zero. I appreciate and even ultimate finished products of those classified documents have to be recorded and or discarded. And if they are discarded, the only way we do that, the hard copies, is we literally put them in burn bags that are identified specifically for that purpose, and there is a very exact courier system in which those burn bags are obtained and the material inside is destroyed.
So it's to get rid of the material, right?
Yes, sir.
And even serious criminal charges.
It looks like the annex that Mr. Durham and his
structural reform is simple. If you're going to go after a political individual or someone seeking political office, there has to be a grounded basis in law and fact to open up a criminal investigation, and if there's not, the investigation isn't even opened. And I've also gone back and reviewed other cases that were opened in prior administrations related to public officials, and we've closed a number of them because we felt that some of these actions were weaponized on either side of the aisle. I felt it wholly inappropriate and the other IC elements to come in with the NSA, CIA, FBI, and ODNI and put together a collection of information on how the information sort of surrounding Russiagate came together. So he represented the FBI.
Whistleblowers are often
former director of CIA, John Brennan, he's denied that the Steele dossier was used in creating the dossier. Is that true?
And a simple written promise to appear in court. Mr. Patel, let me just ask, should judges apply the most lenient bail standards to people with extensive criminal history?
Christians and conservatives. Since the leak of the Dobbs decision, there have been 354 attacks on Catholic churches. In the first year following the leak, there were more than 100 attacks against pro-life pregnancy care centers. And the shadowy pro-abortion group, Jane's Revenge, claimed responsibility for 24 of these attacks. Meanwhile, the Biden FBI focused resources on attacking Catholics and peaceful pro-life protesters like Mark Hawk in making these mentally ill individuals violent.
We're looking at the entire spider web for any of these attacks, be it Denver or where have you, and that's why our investigations are ongoing. We don't have a final product yet.
And restoring the public
one of my Democrat colleagues, as an aside, mentioned, quote, the federal takeover of our cities. And I don't know whether my Democrat colleague
ever an FBI agent goes out and interviews someone.
And are you familiar with the 302 where the FBI agent interviewed the whistleblower, come forward and talked about the former chair of the Intel Committee here in the House, pushing staff members to find information? Well, I'll just read from them. Staffers were instructed to use, this is from the 302, interview this person. Staffers were instructed to use any sources that had developed within the United States intelligence community to gather information, and at the actual time this was taking place. That's all in the 302, right?
Yes, sir. Critical issues. I look forward to any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Borland, in your
Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit for the record an article from The Hill, Massive Crime Drop in D.C., City Sees Zero Murder Week, dated August 25th, 2025. And I'd also like to submit for the record an article from the New York Times, dated April 18th, 2025. Man who set fire on incited treatment of Palestinians, police say.
Yeah. Thank you. Without objection.
And I see a white light pop up.
Gentlelady from Texas and then Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much. First you see is the FBIAA letter to Congress on summary terminations, where it states denying fundamental due process and summarily dismissing special agents will only make it harder to protect our nation. These actions distract agents from their work, foster fear that their assignments could cost them their careers. Either
and there's been increasing concern about the Maduro regime of Venezuela, both their potential support of terrorist activity, criminal drug networks, and potential espionage entities here within the U.S. What can you tell us about your activities regarding the Maduro regime of Venezuela?
Generally speaking, one of the largest transshipment points and shipment points for narcotics out of South America, Colombia, obviously, and also Venezuela, is being utilized heavily by the narco elite to collect evidence and provide it to our agency partners. Once the foreign terrorist organization designation was labeled over to the Mexican drug cartels, we can now do that here, and in Mexico, and in Colombia, and in Venezuela, and anywhere else they are. And so that's the best analogy I have. What we're able to do is take our counterterrorism platform, traditionally used for global terrorist manhunting, and bring it into this hemisphere against a very real threat, which is the drug traffickers, and they are foreign terrorist organizations.
And there are limits on what our state and local authorities have the capacity to do, or what our military has the capacity to do once the threat is domestic.
So it's critically important. Both the FBI and DHS have those capabilities. I'll speak to the FBI, of course, only. And you raised the World Cup, and that's exactly what we need it for. The Club World Cup, which just happened, was 32 games in at least a dozen different cities across the country, the largest sporting events consecutively in American history.
Charlie was a good man, a happy warrior who fought for principles and values I think are make our country special, and certainly was a strong opponent of defending the First Amendment, something this committee cares deeply about. I said this over the weekend. I think Charlie lived that scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. Charlie certainly lived that, and he did it with a smile on his face. And I know many people in the diaspora as well. So I know we're all praying for Charlie's family.
And following up to that question, after you disclose this information to the
Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information? We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information. It sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee,
did they ever try to classify this information?
Supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified
information? Indian American and a proud Hindu. So I congratulate you on being a breakthrough in this sense and being a beneficiary of the civil rights movement that opened up to lots of people who never would have been hired in its first decades.
I did not.
Last, you share J. Edgar Hoover's dangerous obsession with blind loyalty over professionalism and effective public policy. For Hoover, it was blind loyalty to him and keeping his secrets. For you, it's blind loyalty to Donald Trump and keeping his. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI. The Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer, so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence. Before you got in this job, you called for full release of the Epstein files, telling podcasts.
This is answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You know, you've been through this. You've been through this yesterday. Did a fine job. Please note that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize. Director, compelling. You may begin.
When you first saw...
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigation. So a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk, and we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspects on the grounds. We also released enhanced images.
Piece of technology.
Due to that release that I directed and ordered record of suspects involved was apprehended and in custody.
How about now?
And this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct.
Dissuade you from
To put the 33,000 in perspective,
so no one was like,
my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total in the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in.
We never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over.
I'm wedded to aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an enduring process is by showing the American people
what do you think the American
results
people should
of what
take
we are
away
doing,
from
the
watching
important
your
work of
video?
this committee?
Right, because when we watch it, obviously,
and I would
we've never
hope
seen
that
anything like that.
that be
It
the
defies
follow-up
what
to
we
this,
know
obviously along with the Attorney
technologically possible. What are we
General.
supposed to think?
And I yield back my 4
Someone's
seconds.
lying about something.
Gentleman yields back.
Someone's hiding
Gentleman from
something.
New York is recognized.
Right?
Thank
That's
you,
not
Mr.
normal
Chairman.
what you looked at.
Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. And I announced my decision not to seek re-election. Many people on both sides of the offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took the Truth Social to call me a, quote, psychopathic nutjob, among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimicked some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day.
You all have talked about it.
We have seen.
I mean, so what do you think about your experience as a collective group?
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
The object I saw this way, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's black book? Black book. FBI. But who?
And what progress
we noticed
have you been making in combating
this was a pattern across
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think, I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations of criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress.
Why did it come?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats.
I only have 1 minute left, so Mr. Knapp, we are definitely going to watch every documentary.
And that is frightening.
You guys have
that's what the CIA is supposed to do in foreign countries. It's not supposed to happen to Americans,
I think we
but
all
it
do.
did,
You guys are
didn't
doing
it,
a terrific
Director?
job to bring information to the
Not
public.
just any Americans,
Do you
it
think
happened
that
with
any of this is a
the President of the United States. Is that accurate?
Entirely possible.
Yeah, and you were the key guy in helping expose that. I think our country will be forever grateful for what you did to let the country know that was going on involving
those claims.
And just because we've caught a few doesn't mean we've caught everybody. We've got a lot more to do.
I get one more quick question. The FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan, for interfering with a federal law enforcement operation. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And is a judge above the law here in the United States of America?
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing, but
that's how the whole story about Area 51 started, which is preposterous.
Executed federal law
I didn't even get to the
enforcement
crash retrieval
priority.
program stuff yet, Ms.
Securely and economically.
There's just so
isn't that
much.
correct?
Okay, thank you so much for your time today. Wish we had more today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You've been FBI director.
I now
for the
recognize
last,
Mr. Burchett
what,
from Tennessee
8
for
months?
5 minutes.
7 months, yes.
7
Thank you,
months,
Chair Lady, and thank you,
and during
Ranking
that
Member
time,
Crockett.
have you held any stock in
I see
any
a lot of
companies
friends out
founded
there.
in China?
I see a couple enemies, so I'll remember that.
Do you still hold the
Chinese? Remind people too. This thing is an ongoing deal. We're not going to get to the
Department of
subject.
Justice reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process. I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made the decision.
Still hold the stocks.
What we're trying to get to is total disclosure.
We get a little
wrapped up in a lot of
these
things, but
Chinese stocks.
The government has
stocks in
something
this Chinese
and
company.
they need to turn it
Disagree
over
that
to
it's
us.
a
We pay
request,
their goddamn salary, you pay our salary.
Enter
You
into
ought
the
to get
record
more out of us than you do.
NPR
That's
report
what disgusts me about this
from
whole
July
thing.
of
I think they're just trying to run the
July of
clock out on us.
2024,
Really.
GOP vows to
They'll-
make America safe
They'll poke
again.
us a little and they'll make
Statistics
jokes to us
contradict their
and try to
growing
pull us
crime
off
claims.
off the target, but I think we
Also,
know
a
where we're at.
report
And that's why they're firing at us,
out
'cause
of
we are
the
over
American
target.
Presidency Project
My
dated
first question
January
is, Mr.
17,
Knapp,
2025.
I
Record
recently
low
introduced
crime
the
during
UAP
Hiding
whistleblower
child
protection act to help
pedophiles
provide
is
whistleblower
disgusting.
protection to
Anyone
federal
that says
personnel
that
for
needs to look at the
disclosing
stats
the
alone.
use of
And go back to the
federal
state of
taxpayer
California, who's
funds to
receiving the
investigate
biggest surge in FBI
UFOs.
resources
That's
through my
directed to
redeployment because the cities of Los
how can
Angeles, San
Congress
Diego, and San
further
Francisco
increase
Reclaiming my time,
need it.
Director. Remembering your oath to tell the truth, did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the
think you
files?
gotta
Hiding child pedophiles is disgusting. Anyone that says that needs to look at the stats alone. And go back to the state of California, who's receiving the biggest surge in FBI resources through my redeployment because the cities of Los Angeles, San Diego, and San
Reclaiming
Francisco
my time,
need it.
Director. Remembering your oath to tell the truth, did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the files?
Files and the reviews conducted by our
Did
team.
you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the FC files?
And we have released where President Trump's name is in the
It's a simple
FBI
question.
files.
Did you tell the Attorney General that the President's name is in the
allowed
FC
to know
files?
what. And,
During many
it's a very
conversations
small group
that the
ever
Attorney General
cracks
and I
that.
have
think,
had on the matter of
Representative
Epstein,
Luna
we
has
have
been looking
reviewed.
at
The question is
painstakingly
simple. Did you tell
I'm not sure that
the
even this
Attorney
committee
General
getting,
that Donald Trump's
security
name is in the FC
clearances
files? Yes or no?
that
Why don't you
should
try
allow you to
spelling
see
it
this
out?
Yes
You're
or
gonna
should allow
no?
you to
Where's
follow
the
what
alphabet?
really
Yes or no?
I worry about
reviews
the people
conducted
that
by
are
our
looking
team.
at
Did you
it.
tell
don't
the
even
Attorney
know what
General
they're
that Donald
looking
Trump's
at.
name is
I
in
mean,
the
it's
FC
gone
files?
through
And we
so
have
many
released where President Trump's name is in the
It's a simple
Attorney
question.
General's
Did you tell the Attorney General that the President's name is
There's
in the
nobody
FC
even
files?
alive that was around any
During
of
many
that stuff.
conversations
I
that
don't
the
think
Attorney
they've made
General and
much
I have
progress
had
from the
on the
people that I've
matter of
talked to.
Epstein,
I don't
we have
think they've made
reviewed.
much progress.
The question
They're
is
looking at
simple.
technology,
Who
might some,
Did
but
you
wonder,
tell
the
the
implication is tic-tac.
Attorney
Oh, yeah,
General
that's
that Donald
ours.
Trump's name is in the
flew
FC
over
files? Yes or no?
Washington,
Why don't you try
DC,
spelling it out?
Yes
in a
or
mock?
no?
We're going to break that
Where's
out.
the alphabet?
You guys
Yes or
authorized
no?
No,
tens of
A, B,
billions,
C.
hundreds of
About
billions
these
of dollars.
Anyone that has been
Systems
terminated at the
that
FBI has
can't
been
do
done
half
so.
No, the
because
question
they
again.
failed to meet the muster of
Director,
their constitutional
I will work
obligation.
on the
No, no.
audio-visual capabilities.
I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit on your entire career in Congress.
reclaiming my
It has
time,
been a
Director.
disgrace to the American
Director, I'm
people.
reclaiming my
You
time.
can reclaim your
Will you
time all you
recuse
want.
yourself?
Mr. Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way? Mr. Chairman, would you
recuse yourself?
Gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, would you admonish the witness not to insult members?
Gentleman has no time.
Mr.
Anyone that has been terminated at the FBI has been done so.
No, the question
They
again.
failed to meet the muster and the
Director,
constitutional
I will work
obligation.
on the audio-visual capabilities.
I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit
my
on your
time.
entire career in Congress.
reclaiming my
It
time,
has been a
Director.
disgrace to the American
Director, I'm
people.
reclaiming my
You
time.
can reclaim your
Will you
time all you
recuse
want.
yourself?
Mr. Chairman, you're going to allow a witness to speak this way? Mr. Chairman, would you
recuse yourself?
Gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, would you admonish the witness not to insult members?
Gentleman has no time.
Mr. Chairman, just
Committee will remember.
It basically drives home.
Found out that they
So,
only stamped the top
Do we have any
pages of
idea
these
what the
documents that
towel
were
was
classified.
about? Was it
So I
used
just
later
removed them.
to
I
identify a
removed those
place where the
pages and
firearm
I
was
carried
left?
them.
Or
And if they'd caught
What
me, I'd be in a gulag.
what we can tell you is the towel, there was a
say, what
screwdriver
happened to
found on the
George
rooftop,
Knapp?
which
Oh, yeah.
DNA was collected off of.
What
and
happened to the
towel was
Russians
found
that
wrapped
came forward to you
around
in
the
1993
firearm in question in a
and were
wooded
there any
area next to the
repercussions for them?
campus.
Well,
All
there
of them
were. The
processed
first
for
thing that
DNA.
happened when I talked about this,
And
after
then,
getting
according
back
to the
and going
suspect's
through the
roommate,
files and things and sifting
were
through it,
And he said, wait a
the
minute.
Russian
I gotta show you
physicist who had
something.
helped us
And then he went into his
introduced all these
safe,
people, wrote
and he
back
came
said there
out
was a
with
huge eruption, that there was,
with
the
photographs. They were
right,
Polaroids,
far,
I think, and he kind of they were he kind of
wanted a return of the
spread them out
USSR
like playing
and really
cards, and
go after these
it was
guys. They
Trump.
described them as
I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with
look, if this had happened 5
girls
years earlier,
of an
we would be in
uncertain
prison.
age
If it
at
happened years earlier,
Epstein's
we would have been
And he
shot.
said, wait a minute.
Luckily, at that
I gotta
point,
show you
Putin was
something.
not in power.
And
but
then he
none
went
of those
into
people
his
that we talked
safe,
to on that
and he
trip
came
in
out with
1993 would ever talk to me again. I went back in
photographs. They were
1996, and
they were
it was like I had the
Polaroids,
plague.
I
spoke
think,
to
and
different people. But they
and
were
he kind
scared.
of they were
Eventually,
he kind of
the story was
spread them
spun
out
where
like playing
the
cards,
Ministry of
and
Defense
it
officials
was
who gave
Trump.
us this information,
I mean, I think there were a dozen
were
of them, and
described as
it was
ufologists
Trump
who said there was
with
nothing really
girls
significant
of
to
an
these files. They
uncertain
didn't really find
age
anything,
at
a big deal.
Epstein's.
And I can
And
tell
in
you,
the Epstein
you'll see
file,
those
was there
files
that
that I
creepy
shared with
birthday
you.
message
They
that
did
Donald
find
Trump
stuff.
had written to
There was an
Epstein?
incident
That's
in
what I was trying to tell you.
October
You raise a
of
great point. The
1982
estate of
over
Jeffrey
at
Epstein
ICBM base
has
where
a voluminous
UFOs
amount of
popped up, was
information that they have
observed
not
over this
released
base
before.
where the missiles
Okay,
were
so that's
pointed
great.
at
So
us.
Would it be great if FBI
These UFOs
subpoenaed
perform
the
incredible
state that Jeffrey
maneuvers, they
Epstein for all
split
that
apart,
information?
they
The
fuse
estate
back
is under
together,
no
they'd
obligation to
appear and
provide that
disappear,
material
and
in
right at the
pursuant
end
to
of
a
this
subpoena.
4-hour
That's a
period,
great point.
Yeah, that's just
the launch control
false.
codes for the
It's just false. You're the
ICBMs
frickin'
lit up.
FBI. You can
Something
subpoena
entered the
information from
correct
the state,
codes.
and you.
So let me tell you that the Wall Street Journal reported that in May, Bondi told Trump that he was in the Epstein files, and at the same meeting said that the DOJ did not plan to release the files. Yesterday, you testified to Senator Kennedy that there was, quote, no credible information that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone else, and that you have, quote, continuously and publicly asked the public to come forward with more information, and we'll look into it. And raped and groomed at the ages of 14 and 16 years old. Are you going to cover up? Are you going to continue to cover up with rich and powerful men, including those that might be on this committee?
I can yell too, Mr. Chairman, but I don't want to yell above this.
The time belongs to the gentleman from New Jersey. I appreciate the gentlelady yielding back.
Will you allow them to testify to you,
Mr. Patel? Listen, with the people, Catholics were, this is the stuff we've been talking about, were labeled radical threats for praying in their churches with their rosaries. Parents at school boards were called terrorists for standing up for their children. Hindu holy men in New Jersey. We have the largest Hindu temple in the world. They were attacked. They were put up against the wall with guns to their heads. So it isn't just a Catholic or Christian thing. American Jews were targeted in colleges and universities, and a lot of folks in the FBI and the past FBI.
Concerned by your repeated claims that you're not able to disclose anything further about the Epstein investigation files, and that there's no evidence of a broader conspiracy or other people who should be charged.
I made my report.
Because the American people
I've not had
any
that
you've been transparent,
discussion
that
outside of
further
that
to be
day.
seen. In your exchange with my colleague, Mr. Roy, you reiterated something that I heard you say yesterday in your Senate testimony, and that is, under your direction, the FBI will always
cuts itself. Federal cuts to local grants that help them do the job.
That's when I made the decision.
And of course, let's not forget about other threats there are coming before us, like high-tech fraud. Local senior recently was talking to me about a text she had gotten, a demand by the IRS to send a payment immediately, or the IRS agents were on their way to arrest this individual.
But outside of that,
pretty gutsy stuff. Federal cuts to local grants that help them do the job.
Just for the sake of time, Mr. Nusatelli, has RO, the Air Force,
and of course,
or the
let's not
FBI
forget
ever
about
followed up
other
with you
threats there
personally
are
about the Red
coming
Square
before us, like
event?
high-tech fraud.
I did have follow-up.
Local senior recently was talking to me about a text she had gotten, a demand by the IRS to send a payment immediately, or the IRS agents were on their way to arrest this individual. Pretty gutsy stuff.
And we're also receiving pots of money from our interagency, so this sort of 500 million cut isn't entirely accurate.
You're still
getting cut 200
I have the
million
Freedom
plus.
of Information
You're
Act
still
from
moving
the
your
Air Force
agents to
states
do
clearly
ICE
that they
work.
destroy
So
all
you are
police
leaving a
records
lot
on
of
a 3-year
bases
schedule.
uncovered.
So
And I'm not
they were
going to
sitting
be
on
argumentative with you,
destroyed it,
Director Patel.
refused,
I'm just saying.
to question any of the lead
Proactively going out
investigators,
onto these social media platforms,
into
which are
this
so
investigation?
large, is our biggest impediment. And we need to, there's actual legislation, I can't remember the name of it, that's up for renewal,
Called the Air Force
which
and
will,
asked them
and I
if
think
there
at the
was a
end of the
vehicle
month,
accident,
which
in
gives
that
service
time.
providers
So
the ability to
that's a
report that
big
information
problem.
in from their end
We're losing
without
data in real
liability.
time.
We need that to
So we'll
continue,
never be able to
because
go
while the
back and
FBI
I think our
has so
federal
many people
government has
and
a
the police
history
are great
of
at doing
destroying
it,
records.
there's just too many platforms
Thank
to
you.
cover
Thank you
down
very much,
Brennan
Mr.
actually
Nusatelli.
denied
I'm
repeatedly
not
that he
jumped to the
pushed for the
conclusion that I believe
dossier
that
to
there
be
are
included in the ICA. Is that
aliens
true?
coming from another
and
planet.
said that Congress had not
but I'm open to
appropriated
that.
sufficient
And
resources
I think that it's our
for them to be
responsibility,
able to
especially when we're
protect our
seeing
tribal
that we have a
communities.
government that is
Mr.
blocking,
Patel, what is the
actively
Trump
blocking
FBI
information from us.
doing
Just
to counter
last
the
night,
drug cartel
I tried to get
infiltration
an
and
amendment
other
onto the National
violent
Defense
crime
Authorization Act
targeting our
that
Native
fit
American
in the
communities?
germaneness of that bill
and both
to have
Democratic
UAP disclosure.
And you
And
scrapped the
conveniently,
tools that
it
they
was
developed
named
to fight
non-germane,
domestic terrorism,
mostly
including the
deemed by
National Domestic
staff, not even an
Terrorism
elected
Incident
official.
Database.
This is the kind of stuff that we repeatedly see. Last
which
year,
compares
we
over
were
25
blocked
million
by
DNA
someone
profiles
in
and
House
aids more than
administration
125
from being able to
investigations
receive a
each day.
briefing from
Director
Arrow.
Patel, why is this
So,
important to law enforcement
not an
nationwide?
elected official, but
All of
someone
law
inside
enforcement
staff
relies on our CJIS operation out of West Virginia. And what that does is allow 19,000 agencies to come in and say, hey, does this guy have a criminal history? Hey, is this an illegal firearm?
This was taken
Do we have a
October
DNA
30th,
hit
2024.
like we did?
This
in
video
these
is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an
Are you making a
orb or
commitment
this object
right now
off the coast of Yemen.
to follow where the
You'll
evidence
see
goes in
that another
investigating whether it's
MQ-9,
violence on the left or the
launched
right?
a
Because
Hellfire missile
over the last
that
10
you cannot
years,
see that
when you
drone.
look at the ideology, I want to follow up
And
on
so,
what my colleague from California said.
I'm not going to
when you
explain
look
it
at
to
the
you,
data,
you'll see exactly
when you
what
look
it
at the
does.
Anti-Defamation League data, 96% of ideological motivated killings were committed by the right wing. When you look at the Institute of Justice,
and what government should look like, whether or not we should have strong sovereign borders, whether or not we should have safe communities, whether or not we should have places to worship our God and not worry about being shot, whether or not we live in communities and cities that are not overwhelmed by drugs and crime, whether or not we have two genders, and whether or not we have common sense in our policies and our values. And people that believe these things are not existential threats.
And so this is the problem. There are extremes on the left. And there are extremes on the right.
Mr. Knapp,
and we collectively
do you have any, have
should
you heard
tackle
about
that. But to come here and
events
just
like this
look at
occurring?
us
and what
say we
information
all
might you
support what's going
I have
on
heard about
in the extremes
events like this. I
is why
have
we
heard
can't
about
solve
this event. Jeremy
anything
Corbell and I talked
in this
about it in
building.
one of our episodes a while back.
Director, let
We
me
did
say
not
first,
have the
thank you
video, though.
for being
there
here.
Are
and
servers
my condolences
where
on the loss
there's a whole
of your
bank
friend.
of these kind of videos that Congress has not been
and I'm
allowed
happy
to
to
see.
hear-
the
I'm here in
public
Washington,
hasn't been
D.C.
allowed to
since
see.
the FBI and the
Occasionally
National
some of that
Guard
stuff
got
gets out
involved.
in the wild and it comes
I'm kind of
our
asking
way.
you to state the obvious
It
here,
should be going to you.
but
You know,
what
the
is the
public should be
mechanism
seeing
there?
this stuff.
Why
And
have we
why you're
seen
not
a
allowed
reduction
to, I
of
don't
crime
know,
when
but
D.C. has had
that's
such a huge
Hellfire
crime
missile
problem for years, and then
smacking
almost
into that
overnight we see such a
UFO
big
and just
difference?
bounced right
Because
off.
of the dedication and
And
resources
it kept
from
going.
President Trump's
It kept going, and
administration
it looks
to
like the
utilize
debris
all
was
federal,
taken
state,
with
and
it.
local
Yeah.
assets
What
in
the
a
hell is
heavily
that? What-
crime-ridden area.
So, again,
I mean,
again,
if
I'm
we
not-
live in
but
an
the
area,
question is,
then homicides,
what-
carjackings,
why are we being
and
blocked from
gun
this
and
information
unclassified manner,
consistently?
and we release
and you
the
had,
classified
you
version,
reported
finally
James
declassifying it to the
Lakatsky
American
came
public
to
in this
you.
committee.
Correct, and you released that in July of this
With
year.
government possession of NHI craft.
Isn't it true that
and
in
how
the
they ultimately
in the,
gained entry?
the
Can you testify
classified
to the
Durham
veracity
annex,
of
as
that
it's
claim?
referred to, that in
Dr.
2016,
Lakatsky is an
the
honorable
Obama
man who
administration
served most of
obtained
his career
intelligence
with the
information
DIA,
from
a
a
very
source
trusted,
contained in
high-level
two separate
rocket
memoranda,
scientist and
one in
intelligence
January of
analyst who
2016 and one in
inspired
March.
the OSAP
The two
program, as I
memoranda
said earlier.
described confidential
And in,
conversation.
you know,
Your
in full
take,
disclosure,
the fight
I've
is not
co-written
over.
2 books with
Isn't
him.
that
He
correct?
dropped
We look
this
at what
on
happened in the
myself
previous
and our other
administration,
co-author
the number
out of the
of
blue.
illegal
And it
alien
took
criminals that
14
made
months
their way
for
into
us
this
to get
country
DOPSR approval
of every
for him
type.
to release
They're embedded.
2 sentences
They're
on that.
here,
He
and it's
said
going
this
to take a
craft,
sustained effort
we had
to win this battle.
managed
That's
to get
the critical
inside of it.
component.
It had no wings,
Sustained
no
effort.
rotor, no
And that's the
tail.
critical
It had
component
no
when you
fuel,
look at
no
what
fuel
happened in
tanks. They
Washington,
didn't know how
D.C.
it
We're not
flew
here for
or how
4
it was
seconds in
operated.
terms of
It clearly
safeguarding Washington,
looked like it was
D.C.
aerodynamic.
It's a sustained initiative. We're
But
taking
he
it
would
to
not go
Memphis.
further.
Can you just explain how
He's a
tactically
by-the-book
that is
guy to say
in the
more
law
about that.
enforcement community
I
around the
don't think we're going to hear much
It's pretty
more, but
simple.
it's
You don't even
not
have to be in law
ours.
enforcement.
It wasn't
to know
ours.
that. If
We
you
didn't
put
make it.
cops
We didn't
with
know
other
who
cops,
made it and
they're gonna
how
do
it was
cop
built
work.
and how it operated.
And what was
We've got at
needed
least
in the
one,
communities
and I
out
don't know,
there
I
was
think
more
that's enough
cops.
confirmation
What was
that
not needed in
we
the
do
bloated
have
bureaucracy of
a
Washington,
Congress.
D.C. was a third of the
Mr. Knapp,
FBI's
I've watched many
workforce.
of
It was
your
a third of the
videos
crime does not
with Joe Rogan
happen
and other
in the
places.
Washington, D.C. NCR area.
One of the big
So the results
questions,
speak for
I
themselves.
think,
Our
many of
state
us is
local
why
And
the
the
federal government
2,500
refuses to be transparent
personnel,
about
FBI personnel
this
that
issue.
have been reported to now be
I think it's
working
probably a
on
start
Couldn't
when
have
these
signed
things
off on it
first
'cause it's not
started
happening.
invading our skies in large numbers. We were scared. It was right
You
after
can
World
call
War
it
II, and we
whatever
didn't know what they
you
were,
want,
and they didn't want to
but the
panic the public,
reality
and that was
is that
probably
over
a good call.
2,000 personnel
Over time, I think
individuals are now
the lying
working
sort
at
of
ICE
became
instead of
institutionalized,
their
you know.
jobs.
Flights
I want to
over
follow up on
Washington,
something
D.C. in
that Senator
1952,
Durbin asked you
they're
about
seen, they're captured on
yesterday.
radar, jets are chased after these these
there in New
objects, and
Jersey.
then we get an
Have you
explanation
ever-
it was a
have you ever
temperature inversion.
apologized
And those
to,
kind of
the
lies have been
Catholic
told for a
Church,
long time.
apologized
What was told to me
that
by
temple?
an investigator
I don't
from
know, sir.
Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato,
Is that
who
something
was
you think
sent
would be perhaps a
after
good
this
idea in the
story
future?
by
think
Robert
leadership
Byrd
should
and Harry
address it.
Reid. He came out to Nevada,
Uninterrupted emergency services. Waxhaw's working with state partners, and the FBI has been notified on this attack, and I certainly pray they're able to help out with the ongoing investigation. Could you just speak to what the FBI is doing to bolster our community's cybersecurity to defend against any future cyber attacks?
National security funds tens of billions
of dollars in order to keep this
cover-up going.
354
there's a
attacks
legitimate
on
reason
Catholic
for the
churches.
cover-up in that
In the first year following the leak, there were more than 100 attacks against pro-life pregnancy care centers. And the shadowy pro-abortion
against the Russians
James
and the Chinese,
Revenge claimed responsibility for 24
and many
of
others.
these attacks.
Meanwhile,
the Biden FBI focused resources on attacking Catholics and peaceful pro-life protesters like Mark Houck, Paul Vaughn, and violent transgender activists. There have been essentially no incidents of violence by Catholics, pro-lifers, or
my first question is to Mr. Knapp. Mr. Knapp, how do we know that the files that you obtained from the former Soviet government are not
transgender
BS
ideology,
and
including recent attacks in Nashville, Colorado Springs, Denver,
That's
and
a good question. So I shared some of them with the Senate Intelligence Committee when I first got back because that was requested by the Russians who shared some of that information. Secondly, I gave all of that material to the DIA through BASS, the OSAP program, sorry for the acronyms.
Can you name names real quick? Sorry.
We're looking at the entire.
At BASS or
who did you give them to directly?
I gave them to Robert Bigelow and to Jim Lukatsky.
Or where
and they hired a whole team to go through them and retranslate, analyze it, and they created a structure of how the UFO programs in the USSR and Russia were
We're looking
put
at the
together.
entire
They said they were real. The other person who said they were real is David Grush.
Or Charlie, or where have you.
And then finally, Mr. Borland,
that's why our
when you engaged with Arrow in
ongoing.
2023, you noted that their public statements did not match reality
with the
that you and
FBI
others
of those
had
companies
witnessed.
and allow them to
In your
report into
assessment,
us on a
what were
daily
the key
basis.
limitations
There is no human
of
being or
Arrow?
AI system on Earth that can go out there and cover down on the threat
Arrow
in
has
those
made is scientific
theaters.
evidence of
And so we need the
extraterrestrials.
assistance, and
Scientific
we need more
evidence requires
authorities,
a
and we need the
scientific
private
control.
sector to double down.
Extraterrestrials and
Well, thank you very much for all you're doing, all the men and women of the FBI are doing to keep us safe, and I yield back.
Extraterrestrial is we have to
Gentleman
go to
yields
that
back.
planet,
You see a
acquire
request from the gentleman from
technology,
Arizona.
bring it back,
Thank you, Mr.
and
Chairman. We
compare it
haven't
to what
talked
we
about
have
yet
here.
to
So
the
you're
president
saying
in
they
one of
won't
his
let
first
anything
actions
out
upon taking office back in
because-
January
or they won't
designated a
come
number
forward
of the
unless they confirm
cartels
it-
as foreign
unless they
terrorist
go to the planet and
organizations.
confirm where its origin
That's
is.
not just a paper
would be
transaction. I
scientific
believe the
evidence,
list has been
yes.
expanded
And by
since those
that
first
statement,
actions.
Arrow found
In
that
terms of
scientific
America's
evidence
military
is
engagement with
basically
the cartels abroad, in terms of our intelligence engagement with them abroad, that designation has had real meaning and has affected some of the thinking and approaches of our military and our intelligence community.
And thankfully, because of the success of the FBI test, we had no
You've interviewed
significant
numerous
security
UAP whistleblowers over the years.
Flipping to the World Cup, which
The question is, how do you verify their claims
obviously
before
the
deciding
largest
they're
we've ever had,
credible
and
enough to
running into
report?
the LA Olympics in 28.
Combination of
Our counter
factors.
UAS
First, you check their
capabilities are going
credentials.
to
Did
be
they
the
really
ones
serve
that
where they
enable
said
us
they
to
did?
have
And did they work
literal
where they said
bird's
they
eye
did?
view
Are there any other
of the threat
witnesses? Is
dynamic
there
around
visual
so many of these
proof,
cities, which are
film
going to
footage?
see
You ask the
tens and
people
hundreds
around
of
them that
thousands
know
of
them,
people flock
that
to
used to
them.
work with
We
them.
have to have it.
If
And
they're
making sure the
credible
bad
people,
guys
that's
don't
one
have
way.
the.
You know, I think about
because of the
Arrow,
success
the
of the
organization that this
FBIHS, we
body
had no
created
significant security
to
incidents.
deal with
And flipping
witnesses
to the
and
World Cup was to
whistleblowers.
be 3 times as
I hope
large,
I'm not
and
taking
obviously
too
the
much of your
largest we've
time
ever
here,
had,
but they
running into the
invited
LA
people to come
Olympics in
forward,
28.
service members
Counter
who
UAS
knew,
capabilities are
saw
going to
things
be
and
the ones
had
that
experiences,
enable
and I
us
can
to
tell you that
have
the people that I have
literal
talked to
bird's-eye
who went
view
through that
of the
are
threat
deeply
dynamic
disappointed. There was a
around
guy
so
named
many
Bob
of these cities,
Jacobs,
which
who
are
was a
going to see
lieutenant
literally
attached to
tens and
Vandenberg in
hundreds of thousands of
1964.
people
His
flock to
unit
them.
would record
And making sure the
missile
bad
tests.
guys
They
don't
recorded
have the
all of
same.
them.
Exactly.
And
On
it's
one
not
of
just
this particular
random people on
test,
Twitter
a
doing
UFO
this.
comes
Now,
out
there's
of
a
nowhere,
YouGov poll
zaps what looks like
released
a laser
just a
beam
few days
at
ago,
what would have been a
which stated that
nuclear dummy, a nuclear
25% of
weapon,
those who
and
identify
disabled.
as
And
very
he is
liberal
called into the
believe that
commander's
political
office.
violence can
2 guys in
sometimes be
suits
justified.
clipped
That's
that
far too many, is it
film
not?
footage out that shows the
It is.
UFO,
That number-
and he's ordered to never talk about
One
it.
is far too many.
He
That's
comes
right. Only
forward to Arrow.
3% of
He
very
heeds the call,
conservatives
thinking
said the
he's
same
doing his
thing. We can
duty
agree
as
that
an American to tell that
3%
story,
is
and they
far too many.
completely
But there's an
dismissed him. They
astounding,
made up a
astounding
story
the
that
weekend.
they had
I think
tracked
Charlie
down
lived
the
that
original footage,
scripture
and there was
verse
nothing like that in it.
Timothy
Well, there was
4:7,
no
fight the good
original
fight,
footage. It
finish
was
the
taken
course, keep
away
the
the
faith.
day the footage was recorded. He's
Charlie
deeply
certainly lived that.
disappointed.
He did
People
it
like Bob
with a
Salas,
smile
who
on
worked
his
at a
face
nuclear ICBM base,
tragic,
who saw
and he's given us
UFOs flying over
information
the
that
base,
Chris
and
Wray
these
didn't.
missile silos were taken down.
He said better, he's given us information that Chris Wray wouldn't. Didn't tell us that there were 17 of those confidential human sources who entered restricted space, 4 went in the Capitol, none of them were arrested. They weren't authorized to do that, they broke the law, none of them were were arrested.
Ever go to Arrow
Lots of
again
American citizens
because of
were
what
arrested.
happened
But
under
the guys
first
whose
director,
salary,
who's now gone,
excuse me, whose
but
American
still
tax dollars
seems
was used to
as
pay
the
these guys who
spokesperson
broke
for
the
that
law. None of them were, one was recommended for charging and was not charged.
And had no interest in actually developing the qualifications for the job. I hope that they were wrong. Alas, they were not. While most other new FBI directors drew on their experience as FBI agents,
Mr. Knapp.
you didn't have that.
What is,
But you did
in your
write
view,
a picture
having
book
investigated this
trilogy
issue for so many
for
years,
children
what is the long
ages
game
5 and up
with respect
based
to
on
disclosure
your
of this information to the
experience
public?
clashing
Because
with President Trump's
the advent
political
of,
enemies. In your book,
essentially
you
a video
describe
camera
your
and a
literary ulcer
high-megapixel
and the
phone in
explosively
everybody's pocket
volatile
at some
temper that
point.
was on display
This
yesterday
information is
in
going
the
to
Senate.
be
But the
impossible
intractable
to
problem
withhold from the
is that you
public.
are running the
What do you
FBI
think
not as a
is
law
the long
enforcement
game here?
agency charged with
secret's
keeping
out.
the American people
how many
safe,
videos
but as a
have there
political
been already?
enforcement
videos that are
agency
leaked from
working
all the
directly for the
military and
president's
intelligence
vengeance
agencies and
campaign.
contractors
7
and
months
censor
in,
platforms,
it's
out there.
impossible to
But they
overstate
have the
the
high ground, the
destruction,
people that
chaos,
don't
and
want us to take it
demoralization
seriously,
you've brought to
dismiss
the
it,
FBI
discredit the
and its
witnesses,
workforce, and the
come up with a
resulting
cover
danger
story. I mean,
your
it's-
actions have
it's been out there
caused
a long
to our
time. The
mass
public
shootings in
senses that
schools,
it's real,
like the domestic
and
terror
people
incident
in
at a
the
Catholic
authority
school
dismiss
in
them.
Minneapolis
It's,
last month, which
it's a
killed
game
2
that's
children and
been
wounded
going on a
18
long
others.
time,
And
I
in
don't think
August, a
they're
man
ever gonna
fired
release
more than
it.
500 bullets
I think
at the
there are
Centers for
national
Disease
laws
Control and
that
Prevention,
have been
killing a
involved in
police
this for a long
officer
time that the
who was a
public doesn't
Marine
deserve
veteran
to
and a
know,
father.
and that the public
People
probably
like
can't
Melissa
handle,
Portman
but they
and
can.
Charlie Kirk should be
Real
able to
quick, I'd like to
participate in
ask the committee to
politics
replay
as
that
elected
video that
officials or
Burleson
active
had
citizens
played earlier. I wanna
without
ask
being
every
shot
witness
down
here,
in
specifically
cold
who
blood
has,
in the United States of America.
censor
For us to do
training
our
recognize
oversight
some of this
properly,
movement real quick. So if you guys can please
and
roll that
I would
video.
hope that be the follow-up to this, obviously along with the Attorney General, and I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, "Violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful."
Is this time last year, the work feast.
Okay, while this is still rolling, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank
Musatelli,
you.
real
Appreciate
quick,
your
yes or
good
no
work,
answers. Are you aware of
Director
anything
Patel.
in
Yield
the
back.
governmental that can split
Thank
a
you
health
kindly,
harm
Mr. Chairman.
like this?
Director Patel, before you joined the
whatever blog
FBI,
thing
you
you did,
railed
keep
against
going.
it for
Nothing?
covering up
All right, how about
Jeffrey
you, Chief
Epstein's
Wiggins?
human trafficking ring. Let me refresh
Nothing
your
to my knowledge,
memory
ma'am.
with this
Okay,
clip.
and how about you, Mr.
Has
Boland?
Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator.
Does this
That seems like an
video
evil
scare
thing
you
to
guys?
do.
And what progress have you been
Yes or
making
no?
in combating their presence?
Yes.
I think the DHS
Yes.
is best to speak to that,
Matt?
but I think, I can't remember the numbers
I had a
of
different
tens of
reaction.
thousands
I
or hundreds of
was
thousands of
really happy
individuals
that
they
it got
found
out.
that
Thanks
came in
for
illegally.
providing
and
that.
tens of
Curiosity kills
thousands
the
of
cat. All right, Mr.
associations of
Moreland?
criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is
Yes,
being opposed
for-
every step of the way by
All right, that
Democratic
is
leaders
the
in our
end of my
cities,
questioning.
some of our states.
Chief, I was on a
and
ship
right
for
here
a
in
little
the
bit.
Congress. Isn't that
I was a
true?
gunner's mate.
But we're just
on the USS
working
Gettysburg
where we
for a
can in
couple
every
of
single
years.
city we can, and I welcome the
My
opportunity
question
to
to you
partner
is
with
when
Republican
you
I have 3
saw-
questions for you, Mr.
had your
Patel,
encounter and you
about
saw it
this.
on the screen.
First,
You
how
were
many
in the
times
CIC,
did
is that
President
correct?
Trump's name
That's
appear
correct, on an
in the
LCS
Epstein
ship,
files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their
Did a
duties
bunch of
to
the
guard
other
the president's
folks in the
name in
CIC
Epstein
come and
files
check out what it
working on
related?
criminal cases or
Yes,
national
we all
security
did.
cases or child
tax
sex
collection
trafficking
officer,
cases? And are the
myself,
number of
the
agents that have been
RCO,
reported diverted
and
for these
two
purposes?
others that was
With that, I would yield back.
Without objection. Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Because in the other
couple of
couple
amendments.
instances with the witnesses, you guys just saw it
One
by yourself. Is
is
that correct?
a letter
Mr. Borland, you saw it by yourself.
Senator Tom Cotton
Mr.
dated
Kelly, you saw
last
it
year
by
urging the
yourself.
U.S. to, quote,
No, there were
ensure
about
that
witnesses
data
in
from
every
U.S.
person.
companies is not harvested
How long did
by the
that
Chinese
encounter
Communist
take
Party
place, Chief?
through the purchase of
So,
Xi'an
the encounter
software and
itself,
technology.
From the
They
time
came
I
out
recognized
with
on my
with
radar to
with
the
photographs.
time
They were
after the
they were
video
Polaroids, I
was
think,
probably
and
about
and he kind
5 to 7
of they he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of. took place, and then a third in which he has a stain on the front of his pants, and the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing.
Incredible lead.
And in the Epstein files, was there that creepy birthday message that Donald Trump had written to Epstein?
That's what I was trying to tell you. You raise a great point. The estate of Jeffrey Epstein has a voluminous amount of information that they have not released before.
Okay, so that's great. So would it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
It's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information.
And we've also eliminated anyone that has ever touched that database that has in any way made a mistake, whether intentional or not. And we have also identified a system in which those going forward who misuse the 702 system, they don't get 2 strikes. They get 1 and you're done.
So I'm glad you mentioned you're continuing to audit because, as you know, in May, the new FBI's Office of Internal Auditing. Can you explain why you decided to close this office?
Is that correct?
Yeah, because under the new...
And we'll look into it.
What range was
Today,
that, Chief, when
in
you were
response to
able see
Mr.
it
Massey's question, you appeared to say that the survivors were not credible. These are survivors.
That's not at all what I said.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you this in a second, but let me tell you about the survivors, and let's bring them up here into the room. These are women who came to the Hill and testified that they were groomed and raped at the age of 14 and 16.
Catholics were, this is the stuff we've been talking about, were labeled radical threats for praying in their churches with their rosaries. Parents at school boards were called terrorists for standing up for their children. Hindu holy men in New Jersey. We have the largest Hindu temple in the world. They were attacked. They were put up against the wall with guns to their heads. So it isn't just a Catholic or Christian thing. American Jews were targeted in colleges and universities, and a lot of folks in the FBI and the past FBI. Not
go through
my
process of elimination and try to figure out, was this a ship on the horizon?
And they killed him for it.
And number 3, Trump administration says 70% of ICE detainees do not have criminal.
Without objection.
Where did this come from? If
Gentleman
it's flying,
from Texas is
it's not a drone or anything
Thank you. Director, earlier this year, the committee learned of new documents tied to the Crossfire hurricane investigation and the Russia collusion hoax against President Trump. Your efforts in declassifying key documents tied to this investigation allowed the committee to acquire thousands of pages that it did not have previously.
At that time, which is
Enforcement
startling to hear.
And the DOJ
It's also
and
good
the
to
FBI,
know
so
that
the American people don't fear
as
the
we
very
have
government
investigated the
that
JFK
it's supposed to protect
files
them.
as well.
So thank you for
that
doing
we're
that.
learning
On August
that,
11th,
that
you
there was a
released
document that
through
was
the committee documents concerning leak investigations that began in 2017. You believe these leaks were accidental or were they intentional in order to influence public opinion against President Trump?
When I can publicly make a final decision on that, either through a recommendation of charging that the DOJ makes,
yes, I'm also familiar with the rhetoric, public rhetoric between President Reagan and time too, that they traded statements about wouldn't it be something if we were threatened by something from way outside, how we might work together. I know for sure that they had conversations about it, and I know we did reach an agreement to try to lessen the possibility that us detecting a UFO or group of UFOs would not be mistaken for a bunch of Russian missiles. There were exchanges of that sort that went back and forth.
And I can imagine this
and aids more than 125 investigations each day. Director Patel, why is this important to law enforcement nationwide?
All of law enforcement relies on our CGIS operation out of West Virginia. And what that does is allow 19,000 agencies to come in and say, hey, does this guy have a criminal history?
We had many similar incidents at our nuclear weapons facilities here that have all been sort of swept under the rug.
Like we did
it's pretty scary when you take down 10 missile silos.
That's what the FBI brings to bear because
you don't have a better explanation for it than it was
painted with one brush the whole left.
Security mechanisms or using EMPs, which is
and there are extremes on the right. And we collectively
I think it's clear
from
the hearing.
But to come here and just
advanced
look at us
that are
and say we all support what's going on in the extremes.
The question is, and I posed
why
it
we
in one of
can't
the previous
solve
hearings, is it
anything
ours, is it
in this
theirs,
building.
or is it otherworldly?
Director, let me say first,
there
thank
may
you
not be a silver
for being
bullet
here
at the
and
moment.
My condolences on the
look
yesterday.
back through
In
the
an
hearing,
answer to Senator
the
Kennedy, you
evidence that's
said
been
the
presented,
FBI is not in
you're gonna
possession of
point the
any
American
criminal
people
evidence that Epstein
to one piece
trafficked
of
girls to
evidence
anyone but
to start
himself.
their journey
So
on
according
this topic.
your testimony
What would
yesterday
you
and in this
suggest, sir?
committee,
According to the evidence the FBI has, numbers on the list are zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2008.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony, and so that federal funding has now been cut off, but a lot of us in California still have questions as to where all the money went. We're 17 years into this project, and absolutely nothing has been built. Not a single bit of track has been laid. There are no stations, there are no passengers, and the plan initially was to have the whole thing, LA to San Francisco, done by 2020 at a cost of $33 billion. Yet here we are in 2025, and nothing has been built. And according to the New York Times,
and when you allow the police, the MPD, to work with federal authorities and allow the National Guard to set up your perimeter, this is what you can do in a few short weeks. And we at the FBI, under Operation Summer Heat, have set those Phase 01 operations in motion 4 months ago, quietly at the direction of President Trump. So we are scattered across cities across this country doing just that. But we're going to need more help to complete the job.
In too many places in this country, crime has just been treated as sort of a norm, that this is the way it's...
And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way.
As I mentioned at the beginning of my
private
remarks,
email
what hooked me
server
on the
and the
story was the
handling of
paper
highly
trail.
classified
These
information
documents that
during
shouldn't
her
exist.
time
We've
as
been
Secretary of
told
State.
for
Isn't that
decades,
found
over
in
and
the
over.
report?
There's nothing
believe
to
so.
it. It's not a threat. You can
Isn't
go
it
about
also
your
found in the
business.
report
And
that
then
in
when
March
FOIA
of
becomes the
2016,
law,
the memorandum
1,000
also included
pages
references
to
to
the
the same
contrary,
Obama
leak out
effort
that
to
there's
shut down the
a memo
Clinton
by General
investigation,
Nathan Twining
but
in
additionally outlined a
1947 when
plan
the country was
to
being
falsely
overflown by
connect Trump to Russia.
dozens of
Isn't that
UFOs,
in the
hundreds of
Durham
UFOs,
I
in which he
think
said,
it's
look,
in
this
more
is
than the
not
Durham report, but yes.
visionary or
Director
fictitious. It's
Patel, I'm
real.
glad
These
that
things
I'm
are
a little out of
not
order
ours.
here
They
because
outperform
I'm
anything
gonna
we've got. I mean, if
pursue
you
some of the
follow
things that you were
paper
just
trail of
talking to
documents
Mr.
that they
Fry
wrote
about
before
and remind
the
you
military
about
got
your
wise
confirmation
and realized that FOIA really exists.
At your
They're gonna change their
confirmation
tune and not
hearing
put
in
things in writing.
January,
It spells it out
you
pretty
said
clearly.
under oath, and I
I'll
quote,
go refer
there will
back
be
to
no
Russia. One incident I
politicization
did
at
not
the
mention that
FBI.
Representative
There will be
Burleson
no
Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where
and
Russian
adherence to
warplanes
the
were
law.
sent to intercept UFOs.
We don't ask
And they were
FBI
ordered to
people,
fire them.
applicants,
And for
where
the
their
most part,
political
the
parties
UFOs
are.
would zip away. 3 of the
There are
pilots,
people
though,
across
did
this
fire
country
these
who are
things.
losing
Those
their
3
jobs
planes
for
stalled out,
far
crashed.
less than
2 of those
this.
pilots died. And after
And that, by the way, is
the
a
Russians
just
changed the standing order.
response
If you see a UFO,
to
leave them alone.
acceptance
No
and
country in the
tolerance
world
of
wants to
political
say
violence.
and admit
It's
that
amazing
these
to me
objects are flying around
that
in
the
our airspace
political
and
left
there's nothing
today,
we can
who
do
were
about
the
it. I mean, who wants to
originators
say
and
that?
the
The US certainly
cheerleaders
doesn't,
of
and the
cancel
Russians didn't
culture,
either.
And I've got to be
now have
almost
the
out of time,
backbone to
but,
attack
Mr. Berlin, you, sir.
conservatives for defending their
Yeah, to be honest with you, I
assassinated
think Bob
friend.
Lazar, and not
But there's
for
a
the
key
reasons
difference.
that
I know many
most
people in the
would
diaspora as well.
talk about, mainly because
I know
Bob
we're all
Lazar was
praying
immediately
for Connie's
discredited.
family, and
They said he
I
never
would
worked where he
extend a
worked.
moment
They
to
said
the
he never
ranking
did
member
what he
of the
did.
United
But
States.
yet Bob
And is
Lazar
instead
showed up with a
putting bad guys behind bars. 21,000 violent criminals have been taken off the streets, which is a 125% increase from the comparable period of the previous administration.
Now we're seeing one very
Knowing
clear
you testified
reason
to Arrow,
why you want to build a
were they
political
obfuscating
FBI.
when
The
they
Epstein
claimed to have
files.
discovered no
You want an
evidence of
FBI blindly
extraterrestrial
loyal to
beings,
Trump and
activity,
to
or
you as his
technology, and are they
enforcer
lying to
so
the
you can
American
continue your cover-up
As I
of
said
a
before,
massive
it's a
international sex
manipulation of the public
trafficking
perception.
ring
The
with more than
statement,
1,000 victims
scientific evidence
betraying
that extraterrestrials
all of the
is a
survivors
statement
of
that
the
is
sexual
not the
violence.
truth about
Before you
what is
got in this
happening and
job,
what we
you
have.
called for full release of Epstein
Did you
files,
like to comment
telling
on that further?
podcasts and then in the attack on a
Matt,
gathering of
you're-
Jewish people
edgy.
in support
It's
of
splitting
hostages
hairs.
held in
No
Gaza
proof that they're
in Boulder
extraterrestrials.
in
What would
June.
that proof
We've
look
seen
like?
continued mass
A
shootings
piece of
at schools,
kryptonite?
like the
What would it
domestic
be?
terror
I mean,
incident at a
we could be
Catholic
talking
school
about
in
different
Minneapolis
forms of
last month,
non-human
which
intelligence.
killed
I
2
think
children
the
and wounded
dominant
18
paradigm
others.
is that
And
they
in
come from
August, a man
outer space
fired more than
somewhere else, and they
500
have
bullets
some way
at
that
the
they can
Centers for
cross those
Disease
vast
Control and
distances.
Prevention,
Not
who was a
necessarily-
Marine
that's not
veteran and a
necessarily
father.
the answer. So
people like
asking
Melissa
for proof
Wortman
of
and Charlie
extraterrestrials
Kirk
might
should
not
be able
the
to
answer at all.
participate in politics.
And they denied us 3 times.
We don't know where they're from.
Congress is
I don't
welcome to
know
do the
anyone who
same and
knows
join
the
the
answer
fight.
for sure.
And I've spoken to
They
his
call them
family,
aliens just as a placekeeper
we are
kind of a
working to
word,
bring
but
them justice.
no one in all these
And, Mr.
programs who
Chairman,
study this stuff for
my
years,
16 years,
people
now my
with much
17
bigger
years of
brains
government
than mine,
service, if anyone has
knows
any
the
questions
answer
about
for
my
sure.
service,
I've talked to
bring it
Navy
on.
folks that
some of the
Thank you,
deep
Director.
sea
We're
areas.
now proceeding to the
I think
5-minute
there
rule.
might
The
be
chair
something
recognizes
there
the
that they're
gentleman from
here.
California, Mr. Rice.
And I don't know when they got here.
Director,
Another point that
delighted
needs
to
be
have you
made is
here.
every
So how much of
back
that
engineer or whatever you want
has
call
to do
it,
with taking
these
people out of the
craft,
backside
I always
of the
say, like, it'd be
FBI
like if
and
you took
moving
a-
them
I ride
into the
motorcycles,
field,
but if you took,
into
like, an
doing the
Indian or a
job for
Harley,
which we
and the
primarily
people that
pay
came
the
over here on the
FBI?
Mayflower,
It's exactly what we need it done.
you know,
One
they'd
third
see
of the
a bright,
FBI's
shiny
workforce
object.
resided in the national capital
They
region
might
before I
get it
got there. One
started.
third
I
of the
doubt they
crimes do not
could.
happen in
They
Washington,
couldn't-
D.C.
Not anymore.
Not
work
anymore.
on it. They couldn't
So
put fuel. They
1,000
wouldn't
personnel of the
have the
FBI were
capability of
deployed
putting
across
fuel
this
in it.
country on a
I just
permanent
think that
basis, and every
that's,
single
you know,
state
we're
in this
just, we're
union is
scratching
getting a
at
plus
something
up.
that we
Go.
don't have any
I
knowledge
announce
of.
my decision not to seek re-election. Many people on both sides of the aisle, including the
First one
chairman,
that
offered
cracks
me
that
well
code.
wishes and thanked me for my service.
It's
Donald
over.
Trump, on the
I
other
mean,
hand, took the Truth
it's
Social to
energy,
call me a,
it's
quote,
power, it's
psychopathic
everything.
nutjob,
And I worry, too, that in the
among
wrong
other
hands
things.
that they do
Yesterday,
that.
I received a threatening
They keep
note
it
filled
from the
with
rest of us
anti-Semitic
because
comments
they're
and
so
hateful attacks
invested in
that mimic some of the
whatever
same
energy
language
sources we
used by the
have here,
president.
that their
I'm
billionaire
sure many of
buddies
us
are going to
in
profit.
this committee
and
face
they
similar
can't-
threats
and
every
they
day.
can't retool
Editorial
because they know
decisions.
once it's out
And
on the
yes,
internet,
unanimous
it's
consent
over.
to enter this
And
letter
so I
into the
think there's a
record.
lot of things going after, and I think that's why
Thank you.
the
I don't
the
have time
move to
today to
discredit
walk through
folks
all
is
your
so
questions,
rapid,
all of our
too.
questions and
I think,
concerns.
you know, they're just,
But will you
they
commit
point to 'em and
to
they
answering
put the
this
dogs
letter
on
in
'em,
short order
and it
so that
disgusts
we can
me.
understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials
They don't have the same
accountable?
kind of stigma. They
I will
tell
review
their
your,
best
I
scientists
will
and
review your
engineers,
letter with
get
my
in
team
there and
and
work on
respond
it.
as soon as
You
I
And
will
they've been doing
respond.
it for a
Thank you.
very
I
long
yield back,
time. Might have a head
the
start on
balance
us.
of my time.
Here,
And
we
that
don't have our
effort is
best
being
scientists and
imposed
engineers
every step of the
working
way
on it
by,
because they've been told it's
Democratic
nonsense.
leaders
The
in our
stigma is very
cities,
real
some of
for
our
people like
states,
that.
and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just
Mr.
working where we can in
Tell,
every single opportunity.
when you
partner
heard
with
the
Republicans and
testimony
Democrats
of Mr.
in
Knapp
fighting violent crime, like
talking about
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic
these
frost.
missiles
What
were
else can you
shut
tell
down or
us
turned
about that
on
and what
in
we
Russia.
need to do to assure that it never
does that,
happens again?
Does that remind
Continue
you
the
that
congressional
when you
oversight
hear
work that
these
you're doing
stories,
on
it's
Arctic
got to
frost? Let
remind
me
you of the
provide you
event
with more
that happened
documentation.
And that the FBI
on your
spent
base.
thousands of hours of
Absolutely,
reviewing
there are
the
many,
photographs, all
accounts
of
of
the and the photographs
incursions of this
that
type
you have.
taking
You're
place, I
saying
believe,
that
in
the,
the
you're not
60s,
releasing
we had a
those because
similar
there's a
incursion in
court
New England.
order requiring them to be
Same
sealed?
thing
Is that your
happened. There were
testimony?
these
Never said that about the
objects coming
videos.
over the
On the
base at low
totality of the
altitude, 200
videos
feet over the
of the
base
thousands of
released,
images that
and they
were seized
scrambling
pursuant to
fighters,
the search warrants
and then the
executed at the
objects would just fly
time,
off, and that went on for
the
weeks.
overwhelming
So the
majority
historical
of that
record has
video
laid out that
is
there's a
and
pattern.
illicit biological
Our
materials,
installations are visited by these craft.
stuff that
they
can
come
harm
in
our
and do whatever
agricultural
they're
industry.
doing,
What actions
and
are
then they
you
leave.
taking
And we don't know
as
how
we
to
see
respond.
repeated
We don't know how to
stories of
protect
Chinese
the installation.
nationals doing this in the United States?
That's why we're
So
here.
just
When
that,
you first
sir,
heard, and we're having to report on
this calendar
these
year
incidents
alone,
that
as I was
were
in operations,
did you,
cases brought
did
against
you
the
find,
Chinese are
did
up
you
by, I
believe
think,
them?
something like
Did
40%.
you yourself
And specifically,
think
the
it would be
cases
true
in
until you
Michigan
saw it?
show two
These
threat
are
streams,
people
not
I've
just
worked
against
with
our.
for years.
The FBI
before,
arrested a judge in Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan, for interfering with a federal law enforcement operation. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And is a judge above the law here in the United States of America?
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing, but
Really?
as you stated, and
All
these
seeing it at the
allegations
same
that
time.
there was an
Yes,
interference with federal law,
these encounters were
fully
playing out
executed federal
while
law
we were
enforcement
on
priority that was interfered with.
I yield back, Mr.
Gentleman yields back.
We were
The gentleman from
responding and
Tennessee is
investigating in real
Thank you,
time
Mr. Chair.
as they occur.
And as you said,
Patel,
the
I
importance
believe
of,
you, the,
your operation
ATF will
is
help.
highly
I don't
important
think the
because
National Guard's going to help.
they said
What
it's
I've
the most
seen, they're not
important in
trained
25 years.
They're not trained in law enforcement, are they?
No, sir.
The research
So
that
that
you're
could be a
conducting.
problem.
For that particular launch,
who will
we had
direct the National
500
Guard in Memphis?
Air
Will it
Force
be,
police officers
will they have
guarding
control
the
over your agents?
No, sir, they won't.
500 people. It was
Who will-
that
who will have
critical.
control over your agents?
But had this thing showed up.
Well,
we
the
would have been
SAC
able
and
to
then
prevent
ultimately the chain of command up to Washington DC will control the FBI, but there's a task force that was put together and it's going to be led by an interagency. The heads of
Memphis is a
The
great
two
city,
square objects were
great
at
history,
least
Civil
as
Rights
large as a
Museum
football field.
might say something about slavery,
The
but
second encounter district was much larger than a football
Blues,
field. We're talking about
Elvis,
flying
Neal Street,
drones.
right, barbecue.
The object I
People
saw
should
was
come. It's not a troubled city, crime, but
And
it's
to
not a
confirm, you were
troubled
not the
city.
only
We're not
person that saw
troubled.
this.
We
I
love
think I
our
was
city.
also
We hope
told
that the
that
National
there was
Guard
also
doesn't come in and
reports of this in
cause
a
people to
police
have
blotter in the
questions
area.
about Memphis
Can you
because
confirm
it's
that?
the
Yes,
city
that's
they
the documentation.
Let me ask you this
that I
about,
maintained
you said that the homicide rate.
And with that, I would yield back.
Turned into Arrow.
Without objection. Gentleman yields
Okay.
back. The
Mr. Chairman, I have
My name is Jeffrey
couple of
Nusatelli.
unanimous
I'm a
gentleman's
former
request.
military police officer with
One
16
is
years of active duty service in the U.S. Air
letter
Force.
from
I'm
Senator
here
Tom
today because the
Cotton,
American people have
dated
both
last
the
year,
right
urging
and the
the U.S. to,
responsibility
quote,
to know the
ensure
truth
that
about
data
unidentified
from U.S.
aerial
companies is
phenomena.
not harvested
That truth
by the
remains
Chinese
hidden,
Communist Party
classified
through the
and
purchase
silenced
of
by fear,
Xi'an
retaliation,
software and technology.
stigma, and confusion.
Objection.
Today,
And he
we
came
are here
out
to break that silence.
with photographs. They
Between
were
2003 and
Polaroids,
2005,
I think,
5
and
UAP
he kind of
incidents
they were he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of. And then a third in which he has a stain on the front of his pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over.
But we got no guidance down on how
Director Patel, I'm going to ask you a very broad and general question. As you know, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. There are, of course, photos showing Donald Trump together with
have provided me with the information that I will share with you
Whether or not
today.
you've investigated Epstein's lawyers, the
The
lawyers who
incursions began on
facilitated those
October
payments.
14th,
Have you
2003, when Boeing
subpoenaed
contractors
or
reported a
questioned
massive
any of those
glowing red
lawyers?
square
So in
silently
2018
hovering
and
over two
19,
missile
what I
defense
recollect
sites.
is many, if not
After
every one
several
of those
minutes, it
lawyers was
drifted
part of the
further east
investigation.
onto the base and
But
vanished
you
over
weren't
the
there at
hills.
that time,
wasn't
right?
there.
Okay.
This event,
So
now
can you
known as
get
the
us the
Vandenberg Red
names
Square,
and the numbers
was
of who
referenced
was
by
investigated
Representative
then
Luna
with
at
respect
the
to
first
those
hearing
lawyers?
As long as I'm
on this
allowed to
topic.
release it, absolutely.
Okay,
Official Air
And they
Force
killed him
records
for it.
of
And
this
Andy
event
wanted
are in
me,
possession
Andy Kane wanted me
by
to tell
Aero
you.
and the FBI.
He said, quote, tell him
Later
we
that
love
night,
him.
While I was
Tell
on
him we
duty,
love him and
security
all the
guards at a
brave
critical
warriors
launch site
exposing the
reported a
deep
bright,
state.
And of course,
fast-moving
let's not forget
object over
about
the
other
ocean.
threats there
I
are
responded to the
coming
incident.
before us, like high-tech
Chaos
fraud.
ensued over the radio
Local
as the
senior
object
recently was
approached
talking to me about a
I heard my
text
friend
she had
screaming,
gotten.
"It's coming right at us.
Demand by the
It's coming right
IRS
for
to
us, and
send
now
a
it's
payment
right here."
immediately, or the IRS agents
Moments
were on
later,
their
I
way
heard them
to
say
arrest
that it
this
had shot
individual.
off and was gone.
Pretty
When I
gutsy
arrived
stuff.
on scene, I talked to
By
5
folks probably
shaken
from
witnesses who
Europe,
described a
North
massive
Korea, Russia,
triangular
China.
craft
People,
larger than a football field that
killings
hovered
and
silently
pledging
for
to
about
hold the
45
killer accountable.
seconds
And I
over
thank
their
the
entry
Bureau for
control
that. It
point
was clear,
before shooting
concise,
at
and to the
impossible
point.
speed.
But when you compare that
About a
statement
week later,
to the over
another
50
patrol
mentions
reported a
of
light
the
over
Charlie
the
Kirk
ocean,
killing
behaving
and just
erratically.
4
Believing
for
it
the
might be an
Hortmans
unannounced
on
aircraft
accounts
declared an
affiliated with
emergency,
the FBI and
and
your
an armed
personal
response
account,
force
it
responded.
appears to many
Before
Americans
the forces
that
could
you're
arrive, the
valuing
object
some
descended
lives
and
more
either
than
landed
others, and that's
or hovered
painful.
on our
And this
flight
is what
line
I'm hearing from my
and then
constituents.
took
I
off
just
again
and
at
when
impossible speed.
there are multiple instances when it's overwhelmingly
witnesses
coming from the right, this
to
is a
this
disservice
event
because
were
And unfortunately for Charlie, that reaction
afterward.
also came when they couldn't win a debate on a college campus. You cannot be intellectually honest and say that this problem is on both sides. It's not just what happened to President Trump, it's also what just happened to Charlie. We've gotten to a point in America where violence is encouraged. We have a former president of the United States that opens up his campaign in 2019, that's Joe Biden, saying that his opponent is a quote,
We must tackle it. It is not a 1950s
sitting in my
America
backyard with
anymore.
2 other police
2025,
officers.
the cyberspace
We noticed
needs to
what
be
first
tackled.
appeared to be a satellite in orbit.
Switching gears,
wasn't
when
acting
your,
like a
when your
satellite.
predecessor sat right
Like
there in that
strange,
seat a couple of years ago, last year in a committee hearing, I asked him a very detailed question about Matthew Huss Crooks, the shooter responsible for the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. I did get an answer from Chris Wray that day, and I submitted written questions to the FBI and into the record of this committee.
Sit here and get painted with one brush, the whole left.
And then it gently
No, there
accelerated,
are extremes on the left,
traveled up, and
there are
disappeared into the
extremes on the
stars.
right. And we collectively
These events profoundly
should tackle
changed
them.
my life.
But to
the
come
lives of
here
my
and
friends.
just look at us
We stand at a
and say
pivotal
we
moment
all
in history.
support
The question
what's
is no
going
longer
on
whether these
in the
events are real,
extremes
but
is
whether
why we
we have
can't
the
solve this
true
building.
leadership requires vision.
Director, let me say
a
first,
willingness
thank you
to
for
confront the
being
unknown
here
with
and,
transparency
my
and
Frankly,
resolve.
I don't know
So I
if
ask
this
Congress to
FBI
help we
were
the
under
people
your
enact
leadership,
this vision.
if those people would have
There are
been
3
caught.
goals.
I don't have any
Fund
confidence in you.
independent
And
research
if we
and
start
treat
talking
UAP
about the
study with the
reasons
same
that I lack
seriousness
confidence,
as we would
we could
any
start
other
with you not
scientific
just
field.
wanting to acknowledge some simple
End
facts.
secrecy
Simple
and
facts like the vast
overclassification.
majority of the threats are
Transparency
coming
is the
from
foundation of truth.
right-wing
Without it,
extremism. And I
witnesses
know my
like
colleagues
us
have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one,
and for being transparent. And again, the administration has complied with our request, and I think we're getting those documents, and as we speak, they should be being uploaded to a website right now.
Exploring them can unlock transformative breakthroughs in technology, biology, and human understanding.
The Massey legislation
Let this be the moment when America chooses
only for
courage over
information
fear,
from
transparency
the
over
administration.
secrecy,
Is that correct?
progress over stagnation.
And if that's too
Let's show the
complicated for
world
some
that our
Republicans to
nation
get their
leads
arms
not only
around,
through strength,
that's okay, because
but
they're in
through
luck.
fearless pursuit
Someone
of
has
the
already
truth.
done the work for them, because there is a bipartisan bill
My name is
offered by Mr.
Alexander
Massey and
Wiggins.
Mr.
I'm an
Khanna
active duty
that would force the
US Navy
administration to
operations
release the
specialist,
Epstein
senior
files
chief petty
while
officer.
protecting the victims.
Father of three,
And Mr. Comer,
dedicated American
just for the record, I
testifying
think
today in my personal
I think
capacity.
you're not in support of the Massey
The views I
Khanna
share
bill, but let
are
me
my
ask you
own, and I do
formally,
not
do you
represent the
support
official
the Massey
positions
Khanna
of the
bill to
Department of
release
the
the
Navy
Epstein files?
or
We're
any
doing that as
Most of the documents
On
that
the
were sent
evening
to our committee,
of February
those initial
15th,
documents were given to
2023,
right-wing
approximately
influencers back in
19:15
February.
PST.
The files
Whiskey
and the full report,
291
according to the Attorney General, were sitting on her desk, ready to be released. We know that the Attorney General herself has shared with the President directly that he is also in the files. The reason, and we don't understand why this cover-up by the President continues to not, it's clear that, well, maybe there are some Republicans in Congress, and hopefully all, that want to see disclosure. That is not the case with the Republicans in the White House and the Department of Justice.
So 7 months to get released, 97% of which already been released. But again, Mr. Comer, I mean, do you support the Massey Khanna resolution? Yes or no?
We're already doing it. And the discharge petition does not have the force of law. We've already subpoenaed.
You can be outraged and shameful that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a facility where she is now more comfortable and has more access to folks both on the outside and her ability to move freely when she has victimized over hundreds and hundreds of women. And I'll add one more thing to that. We've written to the DOJ, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, demanding answers, yet no response from the Attorney General. We have no idea why she was moved and who actually, at whose direction.
Visible
in the spirit of demanding that they do what they said they were going to do. I think we need to do more.
From my experience operating in this region over many years.
I was just told by counsel the documents pertaining to the move would fall under subpoena. So I think that's a fair question that I'm confident if we don't ask it, Mr. Garcia will.
That fact alone does not tell us
whenever we're.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this whole episode has been outrageous and it's disgusting.
Stigma-free reporting
and really,
and for the preservation of
work on the bipartisan oversight committee, making sure that these things are dealt with. I think it's a disservice to all of the victims.
I want to underscore
not work
3
and to
points
pretend that this is
for the
somehow
task force
bad.
and the committee.
But focus
Aviation
on
and
it
maritime safety.
and make sure, I'm asking the Democrats, make sure that it's bipartisan. Make sure that you're doing what needs to be done, that disclosure's done and the investigation is done. Because this isn't something that should be.
And I want that investigation to move forward. But for the life of me, I do not understand why the administration, after promising to release all the files,
we capture the best possible
has chosen not to.
in real time.
So that's what I'm confused about. I thank the gentlelady for
slant
yielding.
range
Thank
estimates
you.
and bearing and range altitude snapshots.
Mr. Comer, I think
immediate
in your
change of
introduction, just
chain
for
of
folks who are trying to play
custody for any
catch-tails and a lot of names
reporting
being
without stigma,
thrown around, you
without
said that
risk.
one of the issues here
Sailors
is that...
need to know that reporting
And I don't even know what the
UAP
hell happened to your
encounters will not
resolution
harm their
that you
careers.
brought up before
Congress
we kind of
can help
abruptly, early for our
witness
August recess.
protection
But
and by
yeah, this doesn't
directing the
smell
relevant
right.
office to
And
maintain
I
confidential,
think we need to get to the bottom of this and
destigmatized
ensure
channels
that all
for
the files have
service
to be
members who step
released.
forward with data.
I yield back, I thank the gentlelady.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And
Declassification
I'm
and
chair of the
transparency
Democratic
where
Women's
possible.
Caucus, and
Task
we
force
are always
declassification
concerned about the
mission
fact that in this
directly relevant
country,
here.
women and children and girls,
Where operational
and I think that
security
it is an
permits releasing
outrage,
metadata preserved,
as you
censor
pointed out,
excerpts, or at least
Ranking Member
technical
Garcia,
summaries
that
would
she is
improve
now
public
been
trust
treated
and
favorably by the
accelerate
Trump administration
scientific scrutiny.
after saying some things
That
they
includes,
liked.
when feasible, the
And what we
times
haven't
geo-reference
heard from
IR
you, Chair
frames and
Comer,
radar
is a
parameters
commitment not
needed
to
for
say,
independent
well, it's going to be in the
To
subpoenas,
be clear,
but to
I
have
am
a
not here
hearing on
to make
why.
claims beyond my
Will
lane.
you commit to having a
I'm here
hearing
to provide a
to
first-hand
determine
account of what I
why?
saw,
Okay. And so
what our systems recorded,
we'll see what happens next week.
and
For
why
now, Madam Chair,
why
I'm
it
glad that
matters
we're
for safety, for intelligence,
going to pass
and
this
public
resolution.
confidence.
I think it ensures that the committee continues to work forward and push forward, hopefully in a very bipartisan manner. I care about the victims. I don't care about,
and provide a safe pathway.
I don't care who the perpetrator is. I don't care if they ride an elephant or a donkey. I hope they get stepped on by whichever one.
Task force for holding this hearing.
They're part of. I mean, ultimately.
And I want to point out something earlier that was said by Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
I appreciate your
she brought up
attention
the
and stand
issue
ready to
that
answer your questions.
Democrats
I'm George
forced
Knapp, Chief
this
Investigative Reporter
out
at KLES-TV in
of
Las
the
Vegas.
Oversight Committee.
I began my pursuit of this weird mystery
if the
way
gentleman
back in
would yield,
1987, and for 38
Mr.
years,
Comer,
I've always
would
approached
you
this as a
explain
news
that?
story.
Because
It's not
we
a
do
matter
have a
of faith or
majority
belief
on the
in me.
Oversight
It's
Committee.
and it's
How
important.
could the minority
I'm proud to
force
be here alongside these
the
witnesses
chairman of the
today.
subcommittee?
Subpoenas and providing information to the Oversight Committee. Republican Oversight Committee has been putting forward information. We now have 34,000 more records out for the mission to. The reality that the people charged with prosecuting crimes have to be able to look at information that isn't necessarily going to be made public and shouldn't be. Correct?
Correct.
Like, we don't just say, oh, here's the mob boss files. Here, America, go forward and find all the mobsters. We don't do that with drug kingpins or cartels.
And now welcome our second panel, Chairman Comer and Ranking Member Garcia from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Comer, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Dr. Fox and Mr. McGovern. Today, the Oversight Committee met with survivors of the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Their stories. When I was in the minority, a Democrat chairman subpoenaed any Democrat officials in the administration. So we've demonstrated we don't care about political party. We don't care about what your last name is. We don't care how powerful you are. We want to know the truth, and we're doing everything we can. And I hope that the Democrats will work with us in this endeavor and not politicize it.
Documents that were squeezed out of the U.S. government after the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, became the law of the land.
There have been times
and those documents paint a much different picture than what the public, the press, and Congress have been told over many years.
I've been here 3 months, and I was on the Oversight Committee,
military and intelligence personnel behind closed doors admit that, quote, these things are real, they're not fictitious.
And the chairman of the committee said, I've asked you for 3 years to give us information. And the person just sat there and wouldn't say a
public,
word,
of course, as I said, has been told
and
something
wouldn't
much
respond
different.
in any
Raj Krishnamurti, I believe, asked questions about what we should ask Acosta. So everybody, both sides are going to get equal time to interview Acosta on all of that. And again, the administration has complied with our request, and
that's
you know, I think we're getting those documents, and as we speak, they should be being uploaded to a website right now.
Detailed what their testimony has been in the written statement. They include Senator Harry Reid, Senator Howard Cannon, also of Nevada, a guy named Al O'Donnell, who was the first general manager of EG&G in Nevada, which managed the Nevada test site, which blew up hundreds of nuclear weapons. There's a guy named Dr. James Lacazzi, who was a career scientist with the Defense Intelligence Agency, who was the guy who initiated a program called
Yes, ma'am, 100%.
Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, which is, as far as we know, the largest acknowledged UFO program ever funded by the U.S. government. Put together an amazing pile of information that members of this committee and the world,
what Attorney General Bondi told the president as it relates to his name being in the files, and has been widely reported. And I think the American public deserve they have a right to know.
And I think that Americans are worried about trusting Republicans on this because now Chairman Comer is saying we're doing all these things. Have they done anything at all? And you said I'm a Trump man.
Contractor Robert Bigelow of Las Vegas made a bold attempt to acquire.
I support the president.
You support the president, and this is why it would be important to have in writing the bipartisan nature, because we want there to be bipartisanship so that it is not a
I wanted to, but you all aren't making a good case up here. But I'm hopeful that Mr. Garcia is going to see past the behavior of the Democrats on the Rules Committee.
Madam Chair,
and negotiated with
Chairman
senior
Comer,
executives
signed by the president.
Lockheed Martin.
We could
hammered out a deal where Bigelow's
we could
company,
then all
Bass,
vote on it tomorrow
would
as
receive
well.
a quantity of
Thank you,
unusual
General.
material that had been stashed away and protected
I
at a
yield back to
facility
the
in California.
And for being
That
transparent.
material was not made.
A partisan vote in the House of Representatives, that only helps.
That was going to be sort of the central
I appreciate that
impetus of
very
what I was
much.
going to talk to you about
Mr.
today. Back
McGovern.
in the early 90s,
Thank you very
I
much.
got into
First,
Russia, met with a
think
number
I
of
want
their
to ask
defense
unanimous
officials,
consent to insert into the
Ministry of
record
Defense
the
and others who confirmed for me that
resolution,
Russia
because
had been doing the
you
same
keep
thing
on
that
saying
the
that
United
it
States had been
doesn't
doing,
protect the
that
victims,
is
but it's
secretly studying
in yellow here,
UFOs
there's
while
some pretty
publicly
explicit
saying
language
something completely
about protecting the
different.
identity of the
Documents and
victim, so I don't want
interviews
there
that
to
I
be any
obtained and have
confusion.
now shared with this task force
And,
show
I
that
got to
the
be honest with you,
USSR launched what is almost
we've
certainly
been trying
the
to bring
largest UFO UAP investigation
legislation
in
to
the
the floor. We're
world.
trying
The
to
first phase
amend
of that
bills,
was an order
to
was
try
sent out to the entire
to get this
USSR
administration
military
to do what Trump said he was going to do during the campaign, that is release all the files.
in the sky,
I mean, we had a recess early that people didn't want to take a vote on it.
testimony from the witnesses.
And I think, let's,
look for
I
physical evidence,
appreciate
and all of that
the
information went
niceties
into one program
of both
at
of
the
you
Ministry
appearing
of
before this
Defense.
committee.
Thousands and thousands of
so
these
you're-
reports
And look,
came in.
we have
A lot of
done
them were
everything
first routed
bipartisan
to
in this
KGB,
investigation.
but then back
This is
to
an
another
opportunity. And I
program
think most of the
that came after
Democrats
this
on the
collection
Oversight Committee
called
want to be
Thread 3.
bipartisan in this,
Thread 3
Mr.
was an analysis
McGovern.
program.
So you're not going to answer my question, but look, we're meeting here under an emergency procedure to consider this resolution, which, if I'm reading it right, simply tells your committee to continue doing what you're doing. Do you need this resolution to continue doing what you're doing, Mr. Garcia? I mean,
And then if sufficient people sign the discharge petition, then it will come out. And it's my understanding, there is a significant difference in the resolution that we have here and the Massey resolution, and that is,
I have submitted those documents.
this resolution demands disclosure, whereas the Massey resolution does not. So I think we can do both, and let that happen. We want to show.
Maxwell is a terrible individual. And I guess the question is, maybe you can enlighten us, what have you done to investigate why Ms. Maxwell was moved to a minimum security facility? I mean, she's a convicted child predator, sent to prison. She testifies before some people, the administration. She didn't testify. She answers questions that are put forward by you, and it sounded like there was no cross-examination. I'm just curious why, after she said what she said, was she moved? So it's not about Ms. Maxwell. It's about somebody made the decision to move her, which I don't think was expected. Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be really clear. First of all, Democrats on the committee, we did not support moving Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony after the Supreme Court heard her appeal. In fact, that was a decision that the majority made that we did not.
Bill, and I hope that we will do that. And I hope my friends on the Rules Committee will allow us to offer it, because I'll bring it up as an amendment. I yield back.
Mr. Borland's opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I've also, we began our August recess early because none of you wanted to take a vote and hold this administration accountable, and you ran out of town. So again, and want to do something bipartisan? Maybe we all can join on a bipartisan appeal to this administration to find out why Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a cushy facility after she exonerated Donald Trump.
And pleased to have been able to sign the discharge petition before we came up for this hearing, so thank you.
Because of my direct knowledge of the reality of certain legislation.
Yeah, and I don't even know what the hell happened to your resolution that you brought up before we kind of abruptly left early for our August recess. But yeah, this doesn't smell right. And I think we need to get to the bottom of this, and that means that all the files have to be released. I yield back. I thank the gentlelady.
Thank you, Ranking Member. And, I am chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, and we are always concerned about the fact that in this country, women, and by women like Maxwell, and I think that it is an outrage, as you pointed out, Ranking Member Garcia, that she is now been treated favorably by the Trump administration after saying some things they liked. And what we haven't heard from you, Chair Comer, is a commitment not to say, well, it's going to be in the subpoenas, but to have a hearing on why Will you commit to having a hearing until Democrats force the vote, and then you had 2 Republicans vote against it nevertheless? Is that correct?
Including the subcommittee.
Including the subcommittee chairman. So leaders in the committee voted against the subpoenas. Now, they're taking, and so this is why Americans might be worried about whether they're going to be forthcoming. Now, Chairman Comer, this resolution would give you, and only you, the power to decide what information in these documents is redacted or with.
And the body that is responsible for leading the Republican Party has a steering committee. And on that steering committee of which I serve, we unanimously elected Mr. Comer to lead the oversight committee. And then he was unanimously ratified by our conference. So to me, we as a body have spoken as it relates to who we want to lead investigations and investigative work. The oversight committee, as the chairman has no doubt noted throughout this entire hearing, has already yielded, 34,000 documents.
Going with the advice for the counsel of the victims today, which we had already planned on this, but we're definitely moving in that direction, is to go after the bank records and the suspicious activity reports, much like we did in the Biden family influence peddling investigation. Identify accounts and see what usually the banks catch. Ralph and Langworthy and Byron and everybody that's been involved in banking, they know the banks are
and reminded of the monstrous actions that they took against over 1,000 women and girls. Or any other resolutions that come forward that also holds Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and anyone else accountable. And I'll conclude just by saying that it is our hope that this investigation takes on and leads us to the truth, and we do not care how powerful you are, what political party you're in, how much wealth you have, or how connected you are. If you cause harm to these women and these girls, then we're coming after you, and justice should be served.
And for being transparent.
And as you just mentioned, there have been times when you have requested information. I can remember when I'd been here 3 months and I was on the oversight committee on a subcommittee, and we had a bureaucrat come in, and I've asked you for 3 years to give us information, and the person just sat there and wouldn't say, and disclose them to the people. Yes. You've made a commitment, and our resolution makes a commitment to disclose everything that can possibly be disclosed short of violating the privacy rights of others.
Yes, ma'am, 100%.
And by having the full House vote and speak in support of this investigation, it will be helpful to.
And look, we have done everything bipartisan in this investigation. This is an opportunity. And I think most of the Democrats on the Oversight Committee want to be bipartisan in this, Mr. McGovern.
So you're not going to answer my question, but look, we're meeting here under an emergency procedure to consider this resolution, which, if I'm reading it right, simply tells your committee to continue doing what you're doing. Do you need this resolution to continue doing what you're doing, Mr. Garcia? I mean,
we don't.
And political theater from the other side, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
We want to know. I want to know. If you look at the roster of the committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Bass, they want to know. I mean, they ask tough questions. And look, when Acosta is interviewed, there'll be some tough questions for him. He has a lot of questions that need to be answered with respect to things. So and I've always had a theory that sometimes documents don't survive from one administration to the other. To get that information, and I think this resolution's a step in the right direction. I think I don't think the other things needed.
I thank the lady for yielding
and really. Work on the bipartisan oversight committee and making sure that these things are dealt with. I think it's a disservice to all of the victims to not work and to pretend that this is somehow bad, but focus on it and make sure, I'm asking the Democrats, make sure that it's what needs to be done, the disclosure's done and the investigation is done, because this isn't something that should be.
And they are done so by men like Epstein, and by women like Maxwell. And I think that it is an outrage, as you pointed out,
That's why historically,
Ranking Member Garcia,
a strong bipartisan
that
consensus in
she
Congress
has now
to support
been
and
treated
protect
favorably
whistleblowers.
by the Trump
Doing so
administration
protects the country,
after
ensures our
saying some
government
things
is
they
more
liked.
responsive and
And
accountable
what we
to the
haven't
people.
heard from you, Chair Comer,
National
is a
security
commitment not to
whistleblowing in
say, well,
particular
it's going to be in the
is a tradition going
subpoenas,
back to
but
the
to
founding of
have
our
a
country.
hearing. And so
Over
this is
time,
why
national
Americans might be
security
worried
whistleblowers
about
and their
whether they're going to be
disclosures have
forthcoming.
impacted
Now,
some of the
Chairman
most
Comer, this
fundamental
resolution
issues
would
and
give
questions
you it,
about how
and
we wish
only
to be
you,
governed and
the
how our
power to
government can
decide
better
what
serve its
information
people.
in these
From the role
documents
the U.S.
is
plays around the
redacted
world
or
to
withheld. Is
holding
that correct?
powerful actors accountable, government ethics and transparency,
Well,
human rights and civil liberties,
we're trying to do this in a bipartisan manner. Our staffs are communicating. I think,
freedom of the press,
I hope Mr. Garcia would agree. I think our staffs, and members of the committee haven't been making the accusations that members of the Rules Committee have been making, that, this isn't bipartisan. We want this to be a bipartisan investigation. We want to get the truth, and hopefully we'll do that. And you're trying to, I feel like, create a false narrative here to say that the Trump administration isn't working. They have been turning over the documents. And, I mean, I feel like we're on a pretty good roll here.
That's why we want to make it the law of the land. We want to make sure that all Republicans vote on the Massey-Connor resolution so that they can say, we want to make sure it becomes available to everybody without it going through any process of redaction. I think that's the key.
Ms. Ledger.
Have your investigation, but it's good to have other things to do.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez, do you want to vote tonight?
Massey-Connor resolution as an amendment to the, to make it in order under the rule, and we could then all vote on it tomorrow as well.
To put themselves on the
Agreed.
line to do
I
what's
yield
right.
back to the chair.
And Ranking Member Garcia from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Comer, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Dr. Fox and Mr. McGovern. Today, the Oversight Committee met with survivors of the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Their stories are heartbreaking. What they have suffered and endured, and agreed to a transcribed interview with Alex Acosta. This is the most thorough investigation into Epstein and Maxwell to date, and we are getting results. We have already deposed former Attorney General Bill Barr. The Department of Justice provided nearly 34,000 pages of documents and will produce more, which are being made public as we speak. When we conclude this,
As you just mentioned, there have been times you have requested information. I can remember I've been here 3 months and I was on the Oversight Committee, on the subcommittee, and we had a bureaucrat come in, and the chairman of the committee said, I've asked you for 3 years to give us information. And the person just sat there and wouldn't say a word and wouldn't respond in any way. And what I heard from the victims was that they feel for the first time that they're being heard.
They feel that they're being heard, but they made it very clear they don't have a lot of trust in anyone affiliated with the government because they believe that their government has let them down. And the timeline of that would date over both Republican and Democrat administrations in the past.
Explain what you observed in terms of size, behavior, and why you're confident it was not conventional
And I guess the question is, maybe you can enlighten us, what have you done to investigate why Ms. Maxwell was moved to a minimum security facility? I mean, she's a convicted child predator, sent to prison. She testifies before some people in the administration. She didn't testify. She answers questions that are put forward by somebody in this administration.
And shameful that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a facility where she is now more comfortable and has more access to folks both on the outside and her ability to move freely, when she has victimized over hundreds and hundreds of women. And I'll add one more thing to that. We've written to the DOJ, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, demanding answers, yet no response from the Attorney General. We have no idea why she was moved and who actually, at whose direction.
You know, I mean, this is so outrageous that a big part of the investigation of your oversight committee should be on that as well. And I mean, I hope that you pursue that. But again, I mean, I think it is imperative that we pass the Massey kind of bill, because I think it does have the force of law, and because I don't trust this in the spirit of full transparency, in the spirit of demanding that they do what they said they were going to do. I think I think we need to do more than what we're doing. Mr. Comer?
Yeah, I was just told by counsel the documents pertaining to the move would fall under the Department of Justice subpoena. So I think that's a fair question that I'm confident if we don't ask it, Mr. Garcia will whenever we're.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this whole has been outrageous and it's disgusting, messy kind of bill, and I hope that we will do that. And I hope my friends on the Rules Committee will allow us to offer it, because I'll bring it up as an amendment. I yield back.
I immediately feel static electricity all over
Thank you,
my
Mr. Spock. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And so those are his words. And by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell just got transferred like a month ago. So I wasn't chairman then of the committee.
No, of 2019 to 2023.
I would have. Yeah, I mean, if people had brought to my attention that there was something there, I would have demanded that they be released.
The victims, no.
Well, I mean, if the victims came to us,
that didn't hold water.
Yeah, but the victims want the files.
And I think the same should be said for the other side of the aisle in support of this resolution, which is bipartisan.
Right. We can do both.
We can do both.
So if we can do both, I look forward to everybody on this committee doing both, voting for this and voting and signing on to either an amendment or the discharge petition. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Loyer-Fernandez. We were warned that they will close the vote after 20 minutes. I don't want anybody to lose the chance to vote. We do have members.
And I do think we need to pass the Massey counter resolution.
But I just, fair enough, I just want to acknowledge that, as I understand it, and would welcome you correcting me later on, that this is the first time, as far as any of us know, that a committee has directed another standing committee to act in this manner, which I think is very important, and I think it shows the seriousness of this resolution. So I don't view it as anything other than productive. Madam Chair.
Respond to that also.
And the discharge petition would bring to the floor a bill that would become law, and a law has more force than a resolution. And so all we're saying is, let us pass the law and put some teeth in it, because again, the President of the United States has changed his tune. He now is saying that this is a hoax, and the Republicans who go along with it are stupid. That's his quote.
And the Massey Connor resolution. Mr. Chairman, does the Massey Connor resolution request all documents from the Epstein estate related to Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell with a subpoena that has the force of law?
No, and we subpoenaed the estate for all the documents. That's not mentioned in the discharge petition.
Does this current resolution include requests that all documents related to the Epstein estate be released under subpoena?
Any other resolutions that come forward that also holds Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and anyone else accountable. And I'll conclude just by saying that it is our hope that this investigation takes on and leads us to the truth. And we do not care how powerful you are, what political party you're in, how much wealth you have, or how connected you are. If you cause harm to these women and these girls, then we're coming after you, and justice should be served.
My first thoughts.
And with that,
And we've already deposed former Attorney General Bill Barr. We've already subpoenaed the estate, the Epstein estate, for all the documents.
And
We've
you
already
said
subpoenaed.
September 8th, the material would come from them?
I'm sorry?
You said the Epstein estate is going to start producing
September
material?
8th. September 8th, they're going to produce the documents from the estate. I believe September the 16th or 19th one, Alex Acosta's coming in for a deposition, and I know that during our discussion.
It's neither one of those crossed my mind.
But it's really sort of 3 and 7, but it really equates to 3, right? And we have great support. I mean, I can't tell you, I can't guarantee, but when you have a majority of essentially 3, where you can't lose anything more than 3 votes,
to try to
and you get it passed, it's pretty amazing. And I think it's going to haunt the Democrats because most of the bill is common sense. It's tax cuts.
How do you think you were treated when you reported this information or talked about?
Problem. With a tank of diesel, you can go from New York.
It's well out there. It's well reported.
To Los Angeles, if you want to go to Los Angeles right now.
I've had no pushback at all.
But New York to Los Angeles, and you can go back a little bit.
Reach out to me or
with the electric truck, you'll stop approximately 6 times.
So I was treated fair, and I appreciate the Navy itself with assisting me.
And the trucker saw me, and I said, "Did you just explain?" And he did say to me, I actually asked him because it was really strange.
Right? Because when we watch it, obviously,
very,
we've never seen anything like that. It defies.
He makes electric cars, and we're saying you're not going to be able to make electric cars, or you're not going to be forced to make
lying about
all of those cars. You can make them, but it'll be by the market, judged by the market. And that's what he said. He said, as long as I'm on the same plane as everybody else, we're going to do good. We make a better product. I said, that's very cool. It's very cool. That was my answer.
There is something out there.
After that, and we are going to have virtually no one mandate we have. We're going to natural gas, nuclear. Nuclear, we just had a big,
put that aside, right? They didn't say it was
broken. A big signing with nuclear.
We look at that and we see something. So it's either a weapons program being reverse engineered.
I would say probably more than any other form of energy that's come about. It's been amazing what's been done. It's very safe, very good, and very inexpensive.
You agree with that assessment?
But we're not going to let windmills get built because we're not going to
friends.
And we have a golden stock. We have a golden share.
I mean, so what do you think about
I control? The president controls. Now I'm a little concerned. Whoever the president might be,
we've been talking
but
about
that gives you total control, which is 51% ownership by Americans. And we have a company, a great company, Nippon. They're coming in from Japan. They're going to spend $17 billion. And somebody said, well, what about, what happens if it doesn't work out? I said, they spent $17 billion. And he's a fantastic person with great knowledge of the subject matter. Can you say a few words, John? I see you in the audience. Come on, thanks.
Someone would see a light. They would pay attention to the light. And then the object responds, it performs.
Hi, I'm John Hess, CEO of Hess Corporation, a proud producer of oil and gas in North Dakota and the Gulf of America. And so you all know, it's an honor to be before you today, and thank you for that. Mr. President, during your campaign, you made a commitment to the American people to repeal unworkable and costly mandates for cars and trucks and let the consumer choose what type of vehicle they drive. Today, with the bipartisan support of Congress, you're making good on that promise. I'd like to recognize Speaker Johnson, other members of Congress,
and we will be finished, and you're going to go off and you're going to build the most 20% less money. And I want to thank you, man. You have done some job. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody. We covered that story.
You guys want to come up?
I read in a major newspaper just a couple of weeks ago, they planted this story. An Air Force colonel went out into the desert.
And then he stopped handing them. They just went down and picked them up. It was so professional.
And that's how the whole
story
about
that's a professional organization. This is not like people at random.
And I didn't get to the crash retrieval.
This guy's breaking up because they couldn't use the bridge. So who would think of this?
There's just so much.
Did a lot of damage.
Thank you so much for your time.
A lot of sidewalks broken, but I never saw that before. That's one I haven't seen. I thought I saw it all.
I now recognize Mr.
And they have it
from
on
Tennessee
tape.
for 5 minutes.
And with that,
Thank you, Chair
people
Lady,
get killed.
and
You know, they
thank
go
you,
to the bridges and they
Ranking
drop
Member
an agreement. As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in because I think that would blow it. Might help it, actually.
Remember that.
also could blow it.
It's a pleasure being
But
here.
we've
I
had
want to
very good
remind
discussions
people, too,
with
this thing
Iran.
is an ongoing deal.
Whether
We're
or not
gonna
we get there, I can't
this
tell you,
overnight.
but
We've been fighting
it'll
this
happen
battle,
soon.
some of y'all for
I say
30
this,
years.
Peter, very strongly. They can't have,
Maybe
whether it's
longer.
going
I
in or
hope
not
we,
going in, they can't have a nuclear
keep
weapon.
focused on
I'd prefer the more friendly path.
We get a little.
What the Israelis told.
The government has something.
But gasoline's
They
down.
need to turn
We
it over
drill-
to
yeah,
us.
it's drill,
We pay
baby,
their
drill.
dadgum
That's
salary.
that's
You
why
pay
it's
our
going
salary,
down.
and you ought to
But
get
we
more
all
out of
that-
us than you
but
do.
think of it.
And that's
I
what
said to
disgusts
him-
me about this
he
whole
was in my
thing. I
office a
think they're
couple of
just trying
days
to run
ago.
the clock out on us.
I said,
really,
if you, and they don't
they'll
go
poke us
far.
a little, and they'll make jokes
Another
to
little
us and
problem.
try to pull us
With a
off
tank
the-
of diesel,
off
you
the
can go
target,
from
but
New
I think
York
we know where we're at.
to Los
And that's why
Angeles
they're
if you want to
firing
go
at
to
us, 'cause we are
Los
the
Angeles
target.
right now.
My first
But
question
New York
is,
to
Mr.
Los
Knapp,
Angeles, and you can go back a little
I
bit.
recently introduced the UAP
With the
Whistleblower Protection
electric
Act
truck,
to help
you'll
provide
stop
whistleblower
approximately
protection
6
to federal
times.
personnel
And
for
this could have been done
disclosing
long
the
before
use of
Trump.
federal
This could have been
taxpayer
done by
funds to
any one of the
investigate
presidents. I did it
UFOs.
with
I
China.
still
The
don't
reason
wanna
you don't
say
have Chinese
UAPs.
cars here is because I
How
imposed
can
it my
Congress
last
further increase
term.
whistleblower protection?
I actually asked the question. I said, do we have any Chinese cars
I think you
in
got to
Hawaii?
unleash the dogs and
'Cause
go
you
track down the money and where it
imposed
goes,
a
because a lot of
25
this
or
stuff has been
27
moved out
and
of
a half
government.
percent
As you know,
tariff.
went to
They're not
private
coming here, but they are going
contractors
to Europe
who
all over
stashed
the
it away.
place.
They've had it for
But
so
I love
long
China.
that
We just
there's nobody
made a
left
deal.
inside
And,
government, or very
choice.
few who know
You can say choice.
where it
We have
is.
choice
And
for
they do that to
education,
keep us from
and you
FOIA,
have choice for
correct?
cars now.
It's to
And
keep it
common
from
sense
FOIA,
is right.
and
You're right.
I think that
Common
the
sense is
contractors
right.
who've had this stuff for a very long time set their own standards about who is allowed to know what. And it's a very small
now I
group
can
that ever
give you
cracks
that.
that. I think Representative Luna has been looking at the use of classifications to hide things. I'm not sure that even this committee getting security clearances.
And I haven't had a
it should allow you
it's
to see
peace
this
through
stuff.
strength.
Would
I
allow
believe
you
in
to
peace
follow
through
where it
strength.
really
With the
goes.
greatest military in
I
the
worry
world.
about the people that are
I
looking at
rebuilt
it,
the
don't even know
military,
what
as you
they're
remember,
looking
for
at.
4 years. I
it's gone
rebuilt the
through so
military.
many.
And then we gave a
since-
chunk of it away,
since
but it was still
Roswell, for
peanuts. It was a
instance.
lot,
Man,
but
you
it was
think
peanuts
there's nobody
compared to what
alive
we
that was
rebuilt.
around any of
Give
that
it to
stuff.
Afghanistan.
I don't think
One
they've
of
made
the
much progress
most
from the people
embarrassing
that I've talked
moments
to. I don't think
in the
they've made
history of
much
our
progress
country.
in learning
The
that
whole
technology. Might have made
withdrawal, the
some.
way they
You
withdrew.
wonder, the
It was
implication is
very
tic-tac, oh
embarrassing,
yeah,
but
that's ours.
we rebuilt the military.
What flew over
with-
Washington, D.C. in 52,
And I said,
is that ours
we
too?
won
When are you
World
gonna
War
break that
II and
out?
World
You guys
War I.
authorized tens of
Right?
billions,
We won
hundreds
them.
of billions of
And
dollars
yet we're the only
on
country
weapon
that doesn't
systems.
celebrate.
They can't do
Everybody's
half of what
celebrating
we've seen
except us.
UFOs
And I said
do.
we should
So
celebrate too.
when do they break this out? If it's really a classified project, could change the
Several
world.
No
I don't
Kings
think they've made much
protests planned
progress
across
on
the
that.
country
They
on
think they're lying to
Saturday
us
as well.
and to you
What are your thoughts on
and the
those?
rest of
What
the
are they
world.
going? No
And there's
king?
No Kings.
Yes,
I don't
sir,
feel like
agree
a
with
king.
you.
I have to go through hell to
How
get
did you
stuff
manage to
approved.
obtain the classified
A king
Russian
would say,
UAP
I'm not
documents,
going to get
and how did you get them back in the United
And the
States?
fake news is saying, oh,
well, I
if
met
you
this
fired
Russian
him, it would be
physicist
so
who was in the
bad.
United States.
It would be
And I want to
so bad.
clarify
I don't
that.
know why
I
it would
can't
be
even
so
take
bad, but I'm not going to fire him.
a thing of honey
I just
home
want him to,
on
you
my
know, we call him
airplane
Too Late.
when I fly
right?
back to
Too Late is
Tennessee.
his nick, like Too
I did
Tall
something pretty
Jones.
dumb,
He's Too
and I'm
Tall,
bitter about it,
T-O-O.
but go ahead.
I
And I
did
just
something
say
kind of
this
dumb.
because
I met with these officials
we
who,
wanna get rid of
during that time
inflation,
period, glasnost, perestroika,
and we have.
the Russians were trying to open
But
up
we're
to
gonna
the
be paying
world.
more for
I saw
debt.
it as a window of opportunity, and it
And
was. And we
all
were
he
able
has to
to
do is
talk
lower
these
it.
folks into
I
providing
get
us
nervous when I
information
talk.
that otherwise you would never
He's
see.
doing a
Some of
great
that
job.
I found out that they only stamped the top pages of these
Nuclear,
documents that were
I
classified.
say, okay,
I
you
just
can
removed
take
them.
2 weeks
I
for that
removed those
approval.
pages and I
It used to
carried them.
take 20
If they
years,
caught me, I'd
then
be
they
in a
wouldn't
gulag
approve
still.
it.
Yeah.
Now I
What
say,
They say,
Lee,
what happened to George Knapp?
nuclear,
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you 2 weeks for approval.
What happened to the Russians
A
that came forward to you in
coal-fired plant,
1993?
you only get a couple of days, and oil and gas will give you a week, okay? Something like that. And it won't go fast, and lots of other. And I did ask him a question, because I have a lot of background. My uncle is a big shot at MIT, the smartest guy. He never had a smarter guy.
Wrote back and said
And
there was a huge
yes, I had a little of that. My first question was, what would happen if the boat sank? Do you get electrocuted? Remember I said that? And I used to be decimated by these people back here, right? I used to be decimated. They'd say, what kind of a crazy question is that?
The physicist friend of mine said, look, if this had happened 5 years earlier, we would be in prison.
He makes
If it had
electric
happened 10
cars,
years
and we're
earlier, we
saying
would
you're
have
not
been
going to be able
shot.
to make electric
Luckily, at
cars,
that
or you're not
point,
going to be
Putin was
forced to
not in
make
power, but
all of
none
those cars. You can make them, but it'll be by the market, judged by the market.
Would ever talk to me again.
And that's what he said. He said, as long as I'm on the same plane as everybody else, we're going to do good, we make a better product.
And eventually,
I said, that's very cool.
the story was
That's very cool.
spun
That was
where
my answer.
the Ministry of Defense
After that, he
officials
got a little bit
who gave us this
strange, but
information were described as ufologists who said there was nothing really significant to these files. They didn't really find anything a big deal. And I can tell you, you'll see those files that I shared with you. They did find stuff. There was an incident in October of 1952 at an ICBM base where UFOs observed over the space.
Takes them because they're not allowed to bury the propellers, the props, right?
These UFOs
can't bury
perform
the props
incredible
tonight, but they say that you can't burn a certain type of fiber, and if it goes in the ground, we're all going to die. President, it might be,
the launch
but
control
that gives you
codes
total
for the
control.
ICBMs
51%
lit up.
ownership by
Something entered the
Americans.
correct codes.
And we have a
Missiles were
company, a
fired up
great
and ready to
company,
launch,
Nippon.
and they could
They're
not shut
coming
it
in
down.
from
The Russian officers
Japan.
were
They're going to
panicking.
spend $17
UFOs
billion.
they
And someone said,
disappeared.
well, what about,
The launch control
what
system
happens if it
goes
doesn't
back to
work out?
normal.
I said, they spent
Colonel
$17
Sokolov and his
billion.
team came in, took the thing
You
apart,
can't put it
could
on
not
a
figure out what it
trailer
was. It
and
wasn't
drive
a
it to
power
Japan.
surge or
This is steel.
EMPs.
You know, some
or some of the
businesses
baloney
you can move. You
excuses
move your
that our
office, and
country
that's
has
where the
given
business
for
is.
similar event missiles.
They're spending. I
They
just
thought it
can't
was a
tell you
message from wherever the
how
UFOs were
incredible
from,
this
and
action is, because
that's a chilling
nobody
thing. I mean,
thought. This was
we
one
were
that I
a
wasn't
couple of
so.
seconds away from World War III starting.
I would
and
have
the
rather
UFOs
had it
were
than almost
responsible.
anything, but I was told
Chief
by
Wiggins,
everybody.
based on your
except
training
that guy
and
right there, that you
operational
couldn't,
experience,
you couldn't get
the
it.
behavior that you witnessed,
Bill Kent runs a chain of
trans-medium
family-owned
object
convenience
vanishing
stores that
without a
opened
sound,
in West
be
Texas in
explained by any known
1957,
technology
known
that we
as
possess
Kent Quick.
or other governments
And
possess?
Bill, if you could come up and say a few words about
And has any government agency
affordability. It's also
made your
about
shipmates
making our
regarding
country,
the
auto industry
and,
more
radar
competitive, Mr. President, and you said that
confirmed
very
UAP counter,
eloquently.
aboard
As you know,
USS
Mr.
Jackson?
President, one size fits all policies like
What-
those
what was that
adopted
encounter like
in
when you
California
brought
do
that up?
not
If
work.
you wanna briefly summarize
America,
that, when you brought that
in
to
every
their
state,
attention, and
every
then you
American
were
should be
not
able
provided any
to
follow-up,
choose what they want to drive, not the government.
Who was told?
We as a
and
country
what-
would
how do you feel when
be,
there was no
and
contact?
that caused, and that also kept the war going with Putin,
As far
because
as the
at
actual incident
$100
happening
a
at
barrel,
reporting
that was
level.
a
Yes, Chief.
big money-making
It was
experience. But now it's
within
down to
the
where it's
event
not so
happening,
good for
my
them
duties
anymore.
are to report
No,
to
it's
the
very
tactical
important to get
action
that
officer
solved. That's a
while we're standing by.
bloodbath. That's a terrible bloodbath that's
Tactical
going
action
on.
officer was
Yeah,
there.
please go ahead.
I've not had any discussion outside of that day. There's been no requests from me.
Man, they say in the oil and gas
within inside of
industry,
the
I'll let you know in
military.
about 2 years if that's
But-
true.
Speaking of that action incident itself, once the report was made.
Well,
to the
Doug
tactical action
Burgum, you know, I
officer,
wanted Doug Burgum to head up
that's
energy
when
because
I
he
made
was
the
so
decision,
successful in North Dakota.
to
He's
ask
governor.
the
And he said,
individual
sir, there's one
watchtower that
person
was
who's much
controlling
better than me.
Sapphire,
They said,
to
who? They said, Chris
be
Wright.
able
I
to
said, who the
slew
hell is
into the
Chris Wright?
location, and that's what you
I
see
had
in the
no
video
idea. Now
itself,
everyone knows Chris Wright. He's
when
going to be
the
more famous than me. But $1 billion a year.
Watchstander is slewing in and kind
What
of
is he
showing
doing?
us
Why
what
doesn't
we're
he
looking
lower
at.
these rates?
But outside of that, that's
And
as far as
with
the
that,
reporting
we'll get on to the California
that I know
standard,
of.
which is a
Thank you, Chief.
disaster, okay?
Just for the sake of
So
time,
Chris Wright, you're
Mr.
going to get the numbers
Nusatelli,
down.
has
Thank you very
RO,
much.
the Air Force, or
Lee
the FBI
Zeldin,
ever
one of the
followed
most
up with you
important men in
personally
this
about
room.
the
He's the
Red
man.
Square event?
I get nervous when I talk
Did
to
have
him.
follow-up.
He's doing a great job.
With the Air Force, the Aero office updated me.
Nuclear, I say,
At
okay.
least 2 times.
Okay.
They let me know that
And
they were unable to get any records.
he is a tremendous guy, tremendously talented
destroyed by the Air
doctor.
Force.
When I have a
The Air
medical
Force is destroying all
situation
the
for
police
the country,
records
for
every 3
myself, I
years
haven't
on a
used them, but
schedule.
I might have to.
You were
Maybe
informed
I'll do
that
that.
this-
It's serious
that these
enough, I think
documents
I'd probably
were
do that.
destroyed.
Well, I
But
have a Freedom of
he's
Information
tremendously
Act from
talented
the Air
gentleman
Force
who
that
happens
states
to
clearly that they
be a
destroy
senator
all
and
police
one that's
records
very
on a 3-year
respected.
schedule.
So they-
Chairwoman
they're sitting on
Shelley Moore
documentation
Capito, and
destroyed and
congratulations. I
refused,
just
to,
endorsed,
to
and
question
Bernie
any of
Moreno,
the
who won a race that was
investigators,
not
if there-
winnable.
anything
They all
related to
said
this
it's not
investigation.
winnable. He won in
Yeah,
Ohio. They
basically,
said
they
you
destroyed
can't win
all
that
records,
race. It's a
all the
waste of
police
time. You're just
They
wasting your
couldn't
time,
even
right, Bernie?
call
It wasn't
the
a
Air
waste
Force
of
and
time,
ask
was
if
it?
there
Huh?
was
And he won by
accident,
like 5 points,
in
too.
that time
Won by a
frame.
lot.
That's a
Along with
big problem.
Representatives
Uh,
Kevin
losing data
Kiley,
in real time.
Vince Vaughn, Long, Jay
Our federal
Obernolte,
government has a history
Doug
of destroying
LaMaffa,
records.
Daryl Issa, where's Daryl?
Look, I'm
And
not
country
jumped to
wide,
the
you'd have to
conclusion that I
spend
believe that there are
$4 trillion
aliens coming from another planet
to build the
but
firing
I'm open
plants,
to
to
that.
build, to be able
And I think
to,
that
they
it's
go to
our
firing, they go over a
responsibility,
lot of things.
especially
Charging
when we're
plants,
seeing
firing
that we
plants.
have a government that is
$4
blocking,
trillion. You'd have
actively
to
blocking
spend.
information from us. Just
the
last
Midwest,
night, I tried to
they
get
built
an amendment
9 of
onto
them,
the National
and
Defense
they
Authorization
don't go
Act
far.
that fit in the
Another little
germaneness of that
problem.
bill
With
to
a
have
tank of
UAP
diesel, you can
disclosure.
go from New
And
York
conveniently, it was
to Los
named
Angeles if you wanna go to
non-germane, mostly
Los Angeles
deemed
right
by
now.
staff, not even an elected
But New
official.
York to Los Angeles,
This is the
and you
kind of
can
stuff that
go
we
back a
repeatedly
little
see.
bit.
Last year,
With
we
the
were blocked
electric
by
truck,
someone
you'll stop
in House
approximately 6
administration
times.
from
And I
being able to
guess I have
receive
a little of that.
full
My first
briefing
question was,
from
what would
Arrow.
happen if the boat sank?
So,
Do you get electrocuted?
Not an
Remember I
elected
said that?
official, but someone in
And
staff
I used to be
blocked us.
decimated by
And
these people
I've had
back here.
Enough is
right?
enough.
I used to be
I want
decimated.
to cue up a
They'd say,
video that I've
what
been
kind of
given.
a crazy question is that?
And as
I'm
before it
actually
starts, I'm going to
serious. What
describe. This
happens
was
if you're in an
taken
electric
October
boat and
30th
the boat is going
of
down? You're
2024.
in trouble, says
This
he.
video is of an
And I used to say, I
MQ-9 drone
remember, oh, I
tracking
get
an
decimated.
orb
The
or
audience loved it,
this
but the
object
press
off
would
the coast of Yemen.
laugh at it.
You'll
I said,
see
so if I-
that another MQ-9
I said, don't worry about it. If I win, you won't have
launched
to
a
worry
Hellfire
about it.
missile. That you cannot
But
see that
today
drone.
we're saving California,
and so,
and we're saving our
you'll- and
entire
I'm not gonna explain
country
it to
from a
you. You'll
disaster.
see
Your cars
exactly
are going to
what
be
it does.
thousands of dollars less money. And even the ones that, if you buy electric, we're not going to make you do certain things that are just a waste of money and just time-consuming waste of money. They make you do things that are no good for anybody, make the car worse, and make it much more expensive. One big, beautiful bill will also further slash the funding for the Green New Scam. As you know, it's the greatest scam in history, saving American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. The windmills are killing our country, by the way.
This is when it zoomed
The fields
out.
are littered with
You
them.
can still
junk.
see it travel.
They're littered with them. And they get older, and they get rusty, and they get bad, and they get... This is other countries also. It's the greatest scam
So,
in history. It's the most expensive energy
Mr.
you can
Knapp,
buy. And he went back to
do you have
Minnesota.
any-
Hasn't
have
been
you
back
heard
there in
about,
20 years.
events
And he
like
said,
this
it's
occurring?
unbelievable what
And
happened. He said,
what
I'm
information
driving
might you have?
down a
I have heard
highway,
about events like this.
certain
I have
road,
heard
most
about this
beautiful
event.
fields.
Jeremy
I
Corbell and I
remember them
talked
so
about it in
well.
one of our episodes a while back.
And I was
We
so
did not
looking
have the
forward to
video,
seeing
though.
them again, and
There
I looked
are
at them, they had
servers
windmills all over
where
them, these
there's a
horrible,
whole
horrible
bank of these kind
structures.
of videos
He's a very smart
that
guy. this
Congress has
guy.
not been allowed to see, that the
He
public
said
hasn't
these
been allowed
ugly
to see.
these
Occasionally,
ugly,
some of that stuff
horrible
gets out in the
things.
wild, and it comes our way.
And she allowed.
It should be going to
And
you.
we made a deal that's good for
the public should be
both
seeing this,
countries.
right?
The deal we made
And why
with
you're not
China is
allowed
good
to,
for
I don't
both
know. But
countries.
that's
It's going to
a
be a
Hellfire
lot of
missile
money made, and
smacking
it's
into
going
that
to ultimately
UFO and
open
just
up
bounce
China,
right off.
which is the
And
ultimate
they kept
thing.
going.
And I'm going to be
They
working
kept
with
going, and it
President
looks like
Xi.
the debris
We
was
won't talk
taken with
about
it.
it.
Yeah, what the
And
hell
that's
is
going to be
that?
good for China. It's going to be good for us.
again,
But we're going to be
I'm not
opening
going to
up China.
speculate
That's
what it
bigger
is,
than
but the question
than
is,
what we signed. And I think
why are we being blocked
had we
from,
not signed it,
from
that
this
wouldn't be
information
happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
And you had
fairly
you
soon.
reported James Lakatsky came to you,
And I might go up with that tariff in
with
the not too
government
distant
possession
future.
of
The
NHI
higher you go,
craft
the more likely
and
it
how
is
they
they build a
ultimately
plant
gained
here.
entry. Can you testify
Ford has just
to the
announced it's
veracity
going
of
to
that
invest
claim?
$500 million.
Dr. Lukatsky is an honorable man who
Some of the
served
things
most of his
involved in what
career
we
with
just
the
did. General
DIA,
Motors
a
is
very
going to spend
trusted,
$4 billion.
high-level
They
rocket
just announced
scientist
that
and
yesterday.
intelligence analyst who
Stellantis
inspired
announced that
the
it's going to
OSAP
reopen
program,
its
as I said
Belvedere
earlier.
assembly plant. That's good.
In full
I know
disclosure,
the
I've
plan very
co-written
well.
2
Had a
books
lot of
with him.
problems.
He dropped this on myself and our other
And
co-author
Bill, if you could
out of
come
the
up
blue.
and say a few
and
words
it took
about
14 months for us to get
what the
DOPSR
signing
approval
means to you,
for him to
please.
release 2 sentences on that. He said this craft, we had managed to get inside of it. It had no wings, no rotor,
You're probably
no tail.
wondering
It had
why
no
I've called
fuel,
you all here
no
today,
fuel
right?
tanks. They didn't know how it flew or how it was
What a great
operated.
day.
It clearly
From my
looked like it
perspective,
was
I'm in the
aerodynamic,
convenience store
but,
and
he would
Charlie
not go
marketing
further.
business.
He's a
And
by-the-book guy,
what
and
this
until
does
he gets
is
clearance to say
it
more
gives
about
us,
that,
because with
I don't
mandates,
think we're going to hear
we
much
were
more,
forced
but
to have to look
it's not
at
ours.
putting in
It wasn't ours.
infrastructure
We didn't know who
that
made it and
frankly
how
is
it was built
extremely
and how it
expensive
operated.
and
We've got
doesn't
at
give
least
you
one,
any return.
and I don't know. I think that's
So
enough confirmation
this allows
that
us, is
we
going to
do
free
have
me up and our
robust
companies up to
material.
invest in what
Mr. Knapp, I've
people
watched many of
want
your
in the
videos
cars
on
they
Joe
want.
Rogan and other places.
It's a great
one
day.
of the big
So,
questions,
Mr. President,
I think for many of
Congress,
us,
thank
is
you,
why do you believe
Steve.
that the federal government
Everybody,
refuses to be
thank you so much.
transparent
Thank
about this issue?
In the country.
I think there's probably multiple reasons. At the start, when these things first started invading our skies in large numbers,
oil producers,
we were scared.
and
It
he's
was
a
right after
fantastic
World War II,
person
and we didn't know
with
what they
great
were,
knowledge
and
of
they didn't want to
the
panic the
subject
public, and
matter.
that was probably a good call.
Can you say a few
Over
words, John?
time,
I see you in the
I think
audience. Come on, thanks.
the Lang sort of became institutionalized, you know? Flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on
Hi,
radar.
I'm John Hess,
Jets
and
are chased after
CEO of
these
Hess
objects, and then
Corporation,
we
a
get an
proud producer
explanation.
of oil
It was a
and gas
temperature
here
inversion.
today.
And those
And
kind
a
of lies
special
have been
thank
told
you
for a long
to
time.
Senator
What was
Capito
told to
for
me
her
by
leadership.
an investigator from Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato, who was sent after this story by Robert Byrd and Harry Reid,
This
came out to
announcement
Nevada,
today
tried to get
is
into
about
Area 51,
consumer
did get
choice
in there,
and
looked around, talked to
affordability
people,
for American
trying to get to
families.
the bottom of it.
It's
He
also
believed
about
that this
making
program,
our country,
reverse engineering, et cetera,
auto
was
industry
inside,
more
had been
competitive,
moved
Mr.
inside these
President. You said that
corporations.
very eloquently.
And he said, when this
As
comes
you know,
out,
Mr.
people are gonna
President,
go to
one
prison.
size fits all
And he meant
policies
people
like
who
those.
were
Wrecking
basically
industries
misusing
need.
legitimate national security funds, tens of
Promises
billions of
made.
dollars in order to keep this
Promises
cover-up
kept.
going. I also believe there's a
On
legitimate
behalf
reason
of
for
the
the cover-up in that there is undeniable connection with national security involved in this technology. If we are looking to master that technology
behalf of the
against the
8.5
Russians and the
million
Chinese,
Americans
which is what I have been
who
told
work
by
throughout
Senator
the
Reid and
trucking
many
industry,
others, then it is
I thank you.
race that's critical to our survival. There could be a form of disclosure, I think. Yes, it's
And I
real,
wanna
it's from
thank you,
somewhere
man. You
else.
have done some job.
Without
Thank you, Mike.
revealing all the
Thank you.
details that would allow someone else to have an advantage in the race for this technology.
Thank you.
My first question is to Mr. Knapp. Mr. Knapp, how do we know that
And we
the files
stopped
that
it,
you
and
obtained
last night was
from
very
the
good.
former Soviet
Nobody
government
showed
are
up.
not BS
You know why they
and
didn't
just
show
given
up?
to you as a
Because we were
disinformation
there.
campaign against the U.S. government?
If it was just the
Got
police,
those
because the police
questions.
are
So I
great.
shared some
I
of
know
them with the
those
Senate
police are great,
Intelligence
but they're
Committee
told
when I
not to
first
do
got back
anything.
because that was
They're not allowed
requested
to
by the
act. Thank
Russians
you.
who shared some of that information with me. Secondly, I gave all of that material to the DIA through BASS, the OSAP program, sorry for the acronyms.
Can you name names?
Well, I don't want to say eminent, but it looks like it's something
BASS
that
or
Or who
OSAP.
did you give
could
them to
very well
directly?
happen.
I gave them to Robert Bigelow
And
to Jim
very
Lukatsky.
proud of that. Nobody
And
died.
they
Nobody,
hired a whole team to go through them
the
and
nuclear weapons, they
retranslate
each have
them
very
and
severe,
analyze it, and
very,
they created
very substantial
a
numbers
structure
of nuclear
how the
weapons.
UFO programs in
And
the
I think we should
USSR
get
and
some
Russia
credit
were
for
put
that. You know,
together.
the whole
They said they
Republican
were
Party
real.
should, because that's their
The other
mindset.
person who said they were
Please.
real is David Grush.
And then finally, Mr. Borland.
Yes, ma'am. What?
When you engaged with Arrow in 2023, you noted that their public statements did not match the reality that you and others
Getting hit
had
by
witnessed.
missiles again.
And your
How'd
assessment,
you like to
what
live in
were
a
the
building and
key
you think a missile has a good
limitations
chance of
Arrow?
hitting your building during the evening?
You
It's
know, I would
horrible.
put it to you this way.
Must be
The
horrible to
statement
live like that.
Arrow has made
But,
is scientific evidence of extraterrestrials.
I mean, we'll get it, but
Scientific
it's,
evidence requires a scientific
I'm
control.
disappointed that it's not
Extraterrestrial is an
done.
entity on another planet.
We did great with
The only
India
way
and
to
Pakistan. We
scientifically
did very
prove
good with
extraterrestrial
Israel. I
is we have
thought,
to
look,
go to that
October
planet,
7th was a
acquire
disaster.
technology,
People
bring it back, and
forget,
compare
you
it
know,
to
they
what
like
we
to
have
forget.
here.
So you're saying
That's
they
a
won't
horrible
let
thing,
anything
but
out
and I said,
because
we got to tell them to
or they
get
won't-
out.
They won't come forward
Because something could
unless they
happen
confirm
soon.
that it
And
unless they
I don't
go
want to be the
planet
one
and
that didn't
confirm
give
where
any
its
warning
origin
and
is.
missiles are
would be
flying into their
scientific evidence,
buildings.
yes. And by
It's
that
possible.
statement, Arrow
So I had
found
to
no
do it.
scientific evidence of extraterrestrials.
You know, I had the choice. Do I do
basically,
it or
I don't wanna
not?
call it a
Doing it
psyop,
has
but
its
a
downside, but it also has
misrepresentation
its
because people
upside.
have
Like you're going to
things.
save a lot of
But
lives
making that statement
if it should
is not
happen.
technically
Hopefully
a
that
lie,
doesn't
it's a
happen. Now I guess we have
misrepresentation
7,
of the
so
full truth.
it's like
I'm gonna go to you,
easier.
Mr.
But it's really
Knapp
sort of
first.
3.
You've interviewed
It's 7,
numerous
but it
UAP
really equates
whistleblowers
to
over
3,
the years.
right? And
Question
we
is,
have
how
great
do you
support.
verify
I
their
mean,
claims
I
before
can't tell
deciding
you,
they're credible enough to
I can't guarantee, but when you have a majority
Combination
of
of factors.
essentially
First, you check their credentials.
3, where you
Did they
can't
really serve
lose
where they
anything
said
more
they
than 3
did?
votes,
Did they work where they said they did?
and you get
Are
a
there any
pass, it's
other
pretty amazing.
witnesses? Is there
And I
visual,
think it's going to
proof,
haunt the
film, footage, things
Democrats
of that
because
sort? You ask the
most
people
of the
around
bill
them
is
that know them,
common
that used
sense.
to work with them.
It's tax
If they're
cuts.
credible people, that's
Intended
one
getting
way.
one.
You know, I think
of it,
about
not one
Arrow, the
Democrat
organization
vote in
that
the
this
House.
body
Mike, not
created
one.
to deal
Maybe
with
somebody
witnesses
will
and
come along.
whistleblowers.
I don't know how they
hope
can
I'm
run
not
for
taking
office.
too much of your time here, but they
So many
invited
different things.
people
We're
to come
going
forward,
to
service
very
members
important.
who
Medicare
knew
and
saw
Medicaid
things and
are
had
going to be
experiences.
strengthened.
And I can tell you that
not
the
hurt.
people that I have
You know,
talked
they're
to who went
using
through
fake
that are
narrative.
deeply
Oh, we're gonna-
disappointed. There was a guy
No,
named Bob
they're going to be
Jacobs, who was a
strengthened. We're going to
lieutenant
strengthen them.
attached
They're
to
going to destroy them
Vandenberg in
because under their
1964,
policies,
his unit
Medicare
would,
and
would
Medicaid go
record
away.
missile tests.
Then
They
it-
recorded
and
all of them.
countrywide,
On
you'd have
one
to
of this
spend
particular nuclear test, a
$4
UFO
trillion
comes out of nowhere,
to build
zaps
the
what looks like a
firing
laser
plants,
beam
to build,
at
to
what
be
would
able
have been a
to, they
nuclear
go to fire, they go
dummy,
a
a
lot of
nuclear
things,
weapon,
charging
and
plants,
disabled
firing
them.
plants.
And he is called into
$4
the
trillion.
commander's
You'd have
office.
to spend
Two guys in suits
in the Midwest.
clip that film
They
footage out
built
that shows the UFO,
9 of them,
and he's ordered to never talk about it.
you should be given
He
the
comes
option, buy
forward
the
to
electric
Arrow,
car,
he
buy a
heeds the
gasoline
call,
powered
thinking
car,
he's
buy a
doing his duty
hybrid.
as an American to tell
Probably
that
not
story,
hydrogen,
and they
because
completely
hydrogen has
dismissed
a
him. They
tendency
made up a story
that when it blows
they
up your guns,
tracked
though, it's
down the
over.
original footage, and there was nothing like
They
that
find
in
you
it. Well,
75
there was
yards
no
down the
original
road,
footage.
you
It had
know.
been taken away
Where
the
is
day
he?
the
Well, I
footage
think
was
that's him,
recorded.
but
He's deeply disappointed.
I'm
People
not
like
sure.
Bob Salas, who
So,
was
you
working
know,
at a
they
nuclear
said, we think we can solve the
base.
problem. I said, that's not going to
UFOs
happen.
flying over
No,
the
it
base,
sounds like
and
it's
these
quite
missile
severe.
silos were
If
taken
it doesn't
down.
work,
He went to
announced
Arrow,
yesterday
too, and
they're
was
going to spend
completely
about $6
disregarded.
billion
It almost looks
on
like Arrow operated
because
as a
of tariffs,
counterintelligence
and
operation
maybe because
to
of
get
my
people to
election
come in,
on
tell
November
their
5th,
stories,
but
and then discredit
because
all
of tariffs, I think,
I
more
can't
than
imagine
anything,
that
they're all
any
coming back.
whistleblower
They're
or
coming
witness
back
will
from
ever
other
go to
countries
Arrow
that
again
took them
because
25, 30 years ago. They're all coming back.
Who's now
We
long
have now
gone,
almost $15
but
trillion.
still seems to act as the
They had almost
spokesperson
nothing
for that
last year and the
organization.
year before.
And I would
They had
say,
very little.
Madam Chair,
Nobody
maybe
wanted
at
to be
some point
back
we need
here.
to
Nobody wanted to come to our country
dig deep into
anymore.
Arrow, and I would.
Because we
Oh,
were
I'd be
like,
happy to send
and I
maybe,
don't know, I can't imagine. It's so obvious, it's so good. Did we get any Democrat votes?
Another question for
Did we
you,
get one?
Mr. Knapp.
Two?
What is, in your view, having investigated this issue for so
35.
many years, what
I
is the
think that's
long
great.
game with
I
respect
think
to
that's good. You get
disclosure of this
35
information to the
Democrats.
public? Because
I think that's
the
great.
advent of
That, as far as I'm concerned,
essentially a video camera and
One in
a
the Senate.
high megapixel phone in
on
everybody's
something
pocket at
so
some
good.
point,
But who is
this
the one?
information is going to be
And they don't work in
impossible
cold.
to withhold from the public.
I said, I didn't know
What do you
that.
think is the long game here?
And they don't work in
Well,
extreme
the secret's
heat
out.
either.
I mean,
Other
how many
than that, they're
videos
wonderful,
have
but-
there been already? You know,
No, but if
videos that
you're
are
in a
leaked
cold
from within the
climate, you know,
military
how do you
and
do
intelligence
that?
agencies and
But they're
contractors
electric
and sensor
cars, and I
platforms.
noticed
It's out
that,
there.
and then
But
I
they
didn't pay
have
much
the high
attention
ground. The
because we
people that
won
don't
by
want us
about
to take it
65
seriously
points.
dismiss it,
So I was more
discredit
interested
the
in that.
witnesses,
But I do
come up
remember
with a
that
cover
scene. I
story.
said, what
I mean,
the hell is going on
It's been
over
out there a
here?
long time. The public
This
senses
historic
that it's
action will
real,
also help us
and the
reduce
people in
inflation and bring
authority
down the
dismiss
price.
them.
And I
it's a
used to
game
be
that's been
decimated
going on
by
a
these
long
people
time,
back here.
and I don't think they're
right?
ever going to
I used to be decimated. They'd say,
I think that there's an attitude among the
kind of a
people
crazy
that have been
question is
involved
that?
in this for a long time
So
that
I'm
the public
actually
doesn't
serious.
deserve
What
to know,
happens if you're
and
in an
that the
electric
public
boat and the
probably
boat
can't
is going
handle it,
down?
but
You're
they
in
can.
trouble, Susie.
Real quick,
And
I'd
I
like
used to
ask
say,
if we need to
remember, oh, I
replay
get
that video
decimated.
that
The
Chris
audience
had
loved it,
played
but the
earlier.
press
I
would
want to ask every
laugh
witness
at
here,
it.
specifically
I said,
ones
so if
that
I have my choice of going
sensor training or
down,
have been able to
we're
recognize
jumping
some of
5 or
this
6
movement
yards away
before.
from
So
the
if you guys
boat,
could
but
please roll
there's
that
a
real
shark. Now we know why Elon doesn't like me so much, which he does, actually. He does. And he never had a problem. You know, it's very interesting. This is not something new. This has been there from day one, Speaker, right? We're going to abolish the EV mandate. And Elon still endorsed me because, honestly, he never, ever spoke to me about that. And I used to say, I'm amazed that he's endorsing me because that can't be good for him.
Okay, well,
I'm
this is still
abolishing
rolling.
the EV
Mr.
mandate.
A proud producer of oil and gas
Are you aware of
in North
anything
Dakota
in the
and
government,
the Gulf of America.
United States government arsenal
And
that can split a health
so you all
fund
know
like this? And do whatever blob thing it did and then keep going? Nothing?
I was born in New Jersey, grew up in New
Nothing
York.
to my knowledge, ma'am.
Okay,
And
how
my
about you,
father
Mr. Boyle?
started our company by
Answer
driving
that,
a
Mr. Smith.
secondhand oil truck. So, Mr. President, it's
Okay,
an honor to be before you today.
Does
and
this
thank you for that.
video scare you guys?
Mr. President, during your campaign,
no?
you made a commitment to the American and
Yes.
every family across our country. Thank you for your
I had a
courageous
different
leadership
reaction.
and your
I was
commitment
really happy
to
that it got
consumer
out.
choice
Thanks for
and
providing
energy
Curiosity kills
affordability.
the cat.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
All right, that is the end of my questioning.
Chief, I was on
Very
ship for a little
respected
bit.
guy.
I was a gunner's mate. on
The
USS
California EV
Gettysburg for a
mandates
couple
would
years.
also have devastated
My
our
question to you is, when
nation's
you
incredible
saw-
truck drivers and the
had your
trucking
encounter and
industry.
you
And
saw
I
it on the
gave you a
screen,
little in glory
you were
of
in the
the
CIC, is that
American auto
That's
and
correct. On an
trucking
LCS
industry.
ship,
We'll protect our
the
truck
CIC
drivers,
is on
auto
the
workers,
bridge, so
small
it's called
business people,
ICC1,
and
but yes,
manufacturers all over our country. And actually,
did a bunch of the other
all over the
folks
world,
in
and
the
that's okay
CIC
too.
come and check out what you
They'll
were
be
looking
doing
at?
a product that
Yes,
works,
we
a
all
product
did.
that's much more efficient,
Tactical action officer.
that's better,
Myself.
much better.
The RCO.
less expensive.
Two others.
And
that
we'll
was
put
that were on
affordable
watch.
energy and
We were all
affordable
in the
car
same
ownership
space, and
back
we were all
on the
looking at
center
the
of,
sapphire
and you know what
screen at the same
happens?
time.
They end up
Because
hiring
in
the
the
people,
other-
the
in the
criminals
other
that have
couple
come in, the
instances with
murderers
the
from
witnesses,
prisons
you
and
guys
everything
just
else.
saw it by yourself,
So
is that correct?
we're going to have an order
Mr.
on that
Borland,
pretty
you saw
soon,
by
I think.
yourself?
We can't do
Yes,
that
sir.
to our farmers,
Mr.
and
Visitelli,
leisure
you
too,
saw
hotels.
by yourself?
We're
No, there were
going to
multiple
have to use a lot of
witnesses in
common
every
sense
case.
on that.
Okay. How long did that encounter take place, Chief?
So the encounter itself, from the time I recognized on my radar to the time after the video ends,
Indian people, and he did
was
fight.
probably about
Russia fought.
5
Sort of
to 7
interesting,
minutes.
isn't it? He fought with us in
What
World War
speed
II, and
was,
everybody
the
hates him.
object moving?
And Germany and
When
Japan,
I
they're
first
fine, you know.
witnessed
Someday
off the
somebody
Fort
will
Bridge
explain
wing,
that, but I like Germany and Japan too.
object moving
But
out of the
Putin is a
water,
little
what I
confused
thought
by
was
that, you
originally
know.
just
He
a
said,
light
we
on the
lost
water,
51
something
million
on the
people and we were your
horizon,
ally.
surfacing
And
going
now
into
everybody
the
hates
air.
Russia.
I then
And they
knew
love
it
Germany
was
and
an air
Japan. I
contact,
said,
but
let's explain that sometime, okay?
As an air
But
controller myself,
it's a strategy.
I started thinking,
And I said,
and
you know,
going
we
through kind of
won
like my
World War
checklist in
II
my
and
mind,
World
could
War
it be a
I.
helo, but it's not
Right?
blinking
We won them.
lights. So
And yet
I
we're the
then
only country that doesn't
realized this
celebrate.
is something I've
Everybody's
never seen
celebrating
before. So the
except us.
speed itself just
And I
going
said,
from
we should celebrate
the
too.
horizon to about maybe 3,000-4,000.
Several No
feet in the air
Kings
was very
protests
slow,
planned across the
slowly
country on
rising.
Saturday as
And
well.
then
What are your thoughts on those?
What do they
sped
call, no
up.
king?
No
I'm not an
Kings.
I don't
expert
feel
at,
like a king.
you
I have to go
knowing
through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not gonna get it, Brian. A lot of plants are moving in. Thank you very much for that question.
I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other three objects until I went back to
Oh,
my
he was
radar
killing the
and
other one.
also
I don't think he knew
utilized
it.
Sapphire to see that. in fact,
I think he's a guy who, he's just got a faulty thought process. You look at that train, the train is the most, I've seen people, stupid people with crossed overruns for years I've watched. Where something, we had the water come down from the Pacific Northwest. I can show you pictures now with the half pipes, the big half pipes coming all the way down California.
Was it at, Chief?
Water, so much water. They don't have any droughts. They don't have any, they have so much water. They sent it all out to the Pacific Ocean for 20 years.
7 to 8 nautical
So
miles,
ridiculous.
Of a light.
And we got them to take it now.
I yield back.
But what they do and what they're doing, this is a big problem. And what they really want to do is keep, and I spoke to them, and
it was a glowing
I talked about trade. I said, but you're not trading with us if you're going to go to
That
war.
part
If
I
you're going to
couldn't
start throwing
tell
nuclear weapons
because it
around.
was nighttime.
And I said it to both of them, and they were both
approximately.
unbelievable, actually. They understood it exactly. They stopped.
Very hard to tell the
I
difference
stopped that
between
war
something on the
with phone
horizon
calls
something
and
surfacing
trade.
from the water.
And India's here right now
my
negotiating a trade
personal
deal, and
thoughts
Pakistan's
after
coming, I think,
seeing
next week.
What I saw is that
And
it did in fact come
I'm
from
very
the
proud of
water,
that. Nobody
but I don't
died.
have
Nobody,
visual evidence
and the owner of the
showing
farm
exactly,
loves them and everything else, and
that
then
it did in fact
you're
come
supposed
from
to
the
throw
water.
them out, and you know what
I had-
happens?
again,
They
I
end up
had
hiring
to
the people, the
go through
criminals
my
that have come in,
process
the murderers
of
from prisons
elimination
and everything
trying to
else.
figure out,
So
was
we're
this a
going to
ship
have
on the horizon
an order
just
on that pretty soon, I
showing
think.
its
We can't do
lights at
that to our
night,
farmers, and
but to
leisure
see it
too,
surface,
hotels.
then it made me question,
We're going
okay,
to
where
have
did
to
this
use a
come
lot of
from?
common
If it's
sense on that.
flying, and it's not a drone or anything like that. Where was its origin? Where did it start?
Mr. Knapp, in your testimony and in this document,
countrywide, you'd have to spend
you detail
$4
an
trillion
event that happened in Russia
to build
where
the
their nuclear missiles
firing
were
plants, to be
activated,
able to, they
and we
call it
were
a firing, they call it a
close
lot
to
of
a
things,
World War
charging
III
plants,
at that
firing
time,
plants.
which is startling.
$4 trillion.
It's also
You'd
good
have
to
to
know
spend
that as
in the
we
Midwest.
have investigated the JFK,
They built
files
9
as
of
well,
them, and
that we're learning
they don't
that,
go
that there
far.
was a document that was
You know
sent
the little problem?
between Russia.
With a tank
there was
of
an
diesel,
agreement
you can
between
go
Russia
from
and the
New
United
York
States that
to
if
Los
they were to see
Angeles,
some
if you want to go to
unidentified
Los
objects
Angeles
over
right now.
sensitive sites, that they would
But
report
New York
it
to
to
Los
each other.
Angeles, and you
Are
can
familiar
go
with that
back
document?
a little bit. With the electric truck,
Yes,
you'll
I'm
stop
also,
approximately
familiar
6
with the
times. And
rhetoric,
again, you
public
can get any
rhetoric
car you
between
want. You can
President
get elected.
Reagan
A lot of
and
people love the
Gorbachev
electric.
at the time, too, that
like
they
Tesla. So do
traded
I, in all fairness.
statements about
I like
wouldn't it be
Tesla.
something if we were threatened
And
by something from way
I like
outside, how
others
we
too,
might
but I
work
also like
together.
combustion
I know
engines.
for sure
and
that
you know, there
they
are
had
reasons
conversations
for
about it, and I know we
a
did
lot
reach
of
an
things.
agreement
When I was in Iowa, we had
to
an
try to lessen the
unbelievable
possibility that us
victory,
detecting
if you
a
remember.
UFO or group of
Remember? That
UFOs
was nice.
would not
You
be
won by
mistaken
like
for
so
a bunch
much,
of Russian
nobody
missiles. There were
even talked
exchanges
about
of that sort
anything
that went back
else.
and
But
forth.
that was a great
Yeah, and I
victory,
can
but it was
imagine this is, to me, the validity of this document is underscored by the fact that Russia would not want this to be known. They absolutely would not want to know, the public to know, or the United States to know, that there was a vulnerability.
Yeah, they're going to
in their
do
missile
better than
systems.
ever
Would you
before.
agree?
They're going to sell
Absolutely.
cars in
And,
America
you
at
know, and
levels that
we
they've
had many
never
similar
even
incidents at
thought
our
of
nuclear
before.
weapons facilities
And they're
here
going to
that
make
all
more
been
money
sort of
than they
swept
ever
under the
made
rug,
before.
but
It's going to be
it's
great.
pretty
They're going to be
scary,
selling
right?
a better
When you
car
take down
too. It's going to be a
10
better product.
silos during tense times. And
I
you
know,
don't have a
I
better
know that
explanation for it
person.
than
I
it was
kept us out of
a
wars.
special test
We
of
defeated
security
ISIS completely, 100%.
mechanisms, or using
And I haven't had
EMPs, which is a
it's peace through
preposterous
strength. I
explanation.
believe in peace through
At this
strength. We're
point,
the greatest
I think
military
it's
in the
clear
world.
from the
I rebuilt the
hearing
military, as you
that
remember,
there's
for 4
advanced
years. I rebuilt the
technologies that are
military.
taking place,
And then we gave a chunk of it away, but it was still
airspace.
peanuts. It was a lot,
And
but
the
it was
question
peanuts
is, and
compared
I
to what
posed
we
in one of the
rebuilt.
previous hearings,
Gave
is
it
it
to
ours, is it
Afghanistan.
theirs, or is
One
it
of the
otherworldly?
most embarrassing moments
There may not be a silver
in the history of
bullet
our
at the
country
moment,
with the whole
but when you
withdrawal.
look
And they're
back
handing
through
him,
the hearing
and then he stopped
and the
handing them. They
evidence that's
just
been
went down
presented,
and picked picked him up. It was
You're
so
going to point the
professional.
American people.
I said, that's a
to one piece of
professional
evidence
organization. This
to
is
start
not
their
like
journey
people at
on
random.
this topic.
This
What would
guy's
you
breaking
suggest,
up
sir?
because they couldn't use the bricks. So who would think of this even? did a lot of damage. A lot of curbs are broken, a lot of sidewalks broken, but I never saw that before. That's one I haven't seen. I thought I saw it all.
Start with this
And they
hearing
have it on tape.
in the first hearing.
And with that, people get killed. You know, they go to the bridges and they
But is
drop
there a
the
specific-
concrete off. And I
exactly.
said,
But
you
is
know,
there
we
specific
won World
evidence or
War II
footage
and
or
World War
document
I.
that you think
Right?
lends
We won them.
extreme
And yet we're
credibility
the only
to
country
what
that
we're
doesn't
discussing
celebrate.
today?
Everybody's celebrating
this
except
new
us.
video we're seeing
And I
today
said we should celebrate too.
exceptional evidence that we're dealing with.
At the kinetic.
Several No Kings protests
have to
planned
say
across
that,
the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they go? No king?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. And it's just so much better, huh? So much better. That's so great. Very proud of you.
There's something else out there.
We're joined today
Well, I
by
mean, you bring an interesting point. You know,
the
law
great Speaker of the House. I think he's going to go down as a great Speaker of the House. I may be wrong. I may be wrong. Who the hell knows? I think he is.
That would be my advice to the American.
And he's doing something, the only
This
thing I
is a
would say is
journey
more important
that
than
is
this
just
one, and
beginning.
I'll tell you what, it's almost close. And the fake news is saying, oh,
But you
if
have
you fired
decades
him, it
of
would be so
data,
bad.
Some of it not real.
It would be
Much of
so
it
bad.
is.
I don't know why it would
Thanks
be
to
so
Chairwoman
bad, but I'm not
Luna,
going to fire
We're
him.
now
I
presenting
just
this
want
to the
him to,
American
you know, we
people,
call him
and I
too
think
late.
this latest
Right? Too late is
video
his
from
nick,
Mr.
like Too
Burleson
Tall Jones.
is
He's Too
something that should
Tall,
get
T-O-L.
everyone pause.
And I
When you
just say
see-
this
when you see the
because
three orbs that drop,
we want to
is
get
that
rid of
in a
inflation,
defensive posture, or is
and
that
we
in an
have.
offensive posture?
But we're
What
going to be paying more
capabilities
for
do those
debt.
orders have that we, quite frankly,
And
may not have?
all he has to do is lower it. Europe's doing in women's
As I
sports,
mentioned at the beginning of my
transgender for
remarks,
everybody,
what hooked me on the story
let's
was
go
the paper trail.
transgender.
These documents that
What a
shouldn't
group of
exist. We've
people
been
you had
told for
over there.
decades,
They
over
must
and
have hated
over,
our
There's
country.
nothing to it. It's not a threat.
Under the
You
previous
can go about your
administration, the
business.
federal
And
government
then when
gave
FOIA
left-wing
becomes the law of the
radicals in
land,
California
thousands of pages
dictatorial
to
powers
the contrary
to control
leak
the
out.
future of
There's
the
a
entire car
memo
industry
by
all over
General
the
Nathan
country,
Twain
all over
in
the world,
1947,
actually.
when the country was being
Because they have to
overflown
build a
by
car. They can't build
dozens of UFOs,
19
hundreds
different
of
cars.
UFOs.
Corpus
He said,
and
look, this is not
an-
visionary or fictitious.
literally
It's
grind
real.
civilization
These things
to
are
a halt.
craft.
We would have
They're
gone
not
so
ours.
far
They
back.
outperform anything we've got.
It's hard to believe,
I mean,
actually.
if you followed the
Hard to
paper
believe when
trail
you don't have
documents
enough
that they
electricity
wrote
to
before the
give a
military
person a
got
little air
wise
conditioning in the
realized
summer,
that
now they
FOIA
want
really
you to take
exists and change their
electricity
tune
and
and not put things in
fire up
writing.
all these
It
cars.
spells it out pretty clearly.
But we're not going to let that
refer
happen.
back to Russia. One
Meanwhile,
incident I did
all
not
of
mention
the
that
auto
Representative
jobs would be
Burleson is-
shipped to China
there
because
was
they're
Colonel
very
Sokolov in that
strong on
Ministry of Defense
electric.
program
And
said there were 40
in
incidents
Congress
where
have
Russian
delivered,
warplanes were
and I don't
sent
know,
to
I can't
intercept
imagine.
UFOs. And they
It's
were
so
ordered to fire
obvious.
on them.
It's so
and for
good.
the most part,
Did
the
we get
UFOs would
any
zip away.
Democrat votes?
Three of the pilots,
Did
though,
we get
did
one?
fire at these things.
Two?
Those three planes stalled out, crashed. Two of those pilots died.
35.
And after that,
I
the
think
Russians
that's great.
changed the standing order. If you,
You know, I
see a
think that's
UFO,
great.
leave
You
them
got
alone.
35
No country in the
Democrats.
world wants to say and admit
I think that's
that these
great.
objects are
That,
flying
as far
around
as
in our
I'm concerned,
airspace, and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean,
One
who
in the
wants to say
Senate.
that?
And
The
again,
US
you can
certainly
get any
doesn't.
car
The
you want.
Russians
You can get
didn't either.
electric.
I've got to be almost out of time,
Electric.
but Mr. Berlin,
like Tesla.
you, sir.
So do I, in all fairness.
Yeah, to be
I
honest
like
with you, I think
Tesla.
Bob Lazar,
And
and not for the reasons
I like
that
others
most
too,
would
but I also like
talk
combustion
about, mainly
engines.
because
And there are
Bob
reasons
Lazar was
for
immediately discredited.
a
They
lot
said he
of
never
things.
worked
When I was
for
in
They said he
Iowa,
never
we
did
had
what he
an
did. Bob
unbelievable
Lazar showed up
victory,
with
if
a bunch
you
of friends
remember.
and a video camera and was
It was
filming
nice.
these
He
test
won by
flights in the
like
middle
so
of the
much,
desert.
nobody
So clearly he knew
even talked
something.
about anything else. But that was a great victory. But the leaders
Dylan,
of those countries and the
knowing
very
you
smart
testified
people,
to
they said,
Arrow,
you know,
are they obfuscating
you've made in a
when
short
they
period
claim
of
to have
time America
discovered
the
no
hottest
evidence
nation
of
in the world. It's the hottest
extraterrestrial
nation. You're the only one
activity
we
or
talk about
technology, and
now.
are they lying to the
And
American
6 months
public?
ago, it was a laughing stock. You
As I
said
said
that to me,
before,
those words.
it's a
It was a
manipulation
laughing
of the
stock,
public
and it was
perception.
an
The
absolute laughing
statement,
stock.
scientific
We've got the
evidence of
hottest nation right now in the
extraterrestrials
whole
is a true
world,
statement.
and
It
the
is
numbers
not
are
the
reflecting
truth
it too.
about what is happening
So
and
I
what
just
we
think
have.
it's great. And what I'll do is I'll sign sign this, then we can.
Maybe I'd like to
And
comment
they're
on that
handing
further.
him, and then he stopped
Mr.
handing
Knapp,
him. They just
you're
went down and
edgy.
picked him up.
It's
It was so
splitting hairs.
professional.
No proof that they're
He said, that's a
extraterrestrials.
professional
What would that proof look
organization.
like?
This is not like people at random.
What would it be?
This guy's breaking up because they couldn't use the
different
weapons.
forms of
So who would think
intelligence.
of this?
The dominant
A lot of
is
damage,
that
a lot of
they come
curves
from
are
outer
broken, a lot of
space somewhere
sidewalks
else, and they
broken, but I
have
never
some
saw
way
that
they can
before. That's
cross
one I
those
haven't seen. I thought I
boundaries
saw at all.
we can't even
And they
imagine
have it
doing.
on tape.
Not necessarily, that's
And
not
with that,
necessarily the answer.
people
So
get killed. You know, they
asking
go to
for
the
proof of
bridges and they drop.
extraterrestrials
Now,
might
these are
not be
bad
the answer
people.
at all. It's splitting hairs.
If we
You
didn't
know,
go,
we don't
Los
know.
Angeles right
I
now
don't
would
know
be
anyone who knows the answer
on
to this.
fire. It
Call
would
them
be
aliens just as a placekeeper kind of a
disaster.
word, but no one.
And we
all these
stopped it. And
programs
last
have
night
studied
was
this
very
stuff for
good.
years. People with
Nobody
much bigger
showed up.
brains than
You know why
mine
they didn't show
knows
up?
the
Because
answer
we were
for
there.
sure.
Yeah, I've talked to Navy
If it was
folks.
just the police, because
some
the
of
police are
deep sea
great.
areas,
I know those
think
police
there
are
might be
great, but
something
they're told
there
not to
that
do
they're here.
anything.
And I don't
They're
know
not
when
allowed
they got
to.
here.
Thank you.
Another point that needs to be made is every time, we say we're going to back engineer
And I
or
said,
whatever you want
we
to call
won
it,
World War II and
these
World
craft.
War I.
I always say, like,
Right?
it'd be like
We
if
won
you
'em.
took a
And yet
I ride
we're the only country
motorcycles,
that doesn't
but you took, like, an
celebrate.
Indian
Everybody's
or a
celebrating
Harley
except
to
us.
the people that came
And
over
I
here
said
on
we
the
should
Mayflower.
celebrate too.
They'd see a bright, shiny object. They might polish it.
Several
they
No
might-
Kings protests
they might
planned
get it
across the
started.
country
I
on
doubt they
Saturday as
could.
well.
They
What are your
couldn't.
thoughts on those?
What do they go? No Kings?
No
They couldn't
Kings.
put
I don't
fuel-
feel
they
like a
wouldn't
king.
be
I have to
able
go through
take
hell
blood
to
and
get
put
stuff
fuel.
approved.
I just
A
think
king
that
would say,
that's,
I'm not
we're
gonna
just- we're
get
scratching at something
Countrywide,
that
you'd have
we
to
don't have
spend
any knowledge of.
$4
And that's
trillion
why it's just taken so
to build
dadgum
the
long. But they do
firing
know
plants to build
first
to
one
be
that
able to.
cracks
They call
that
it
code.
firing. They call them a lot of things. Charging
It's
plants,
over.
firing plants.
It's
$4 trillion.
energy, it's
You have to
power, it's
spend.
everything. And I worry
In
too
the
that in the
Midwest,
wrong hands that they do
They
that.
built 9 of
They
them.
keep it from the rest of us because
9
they're so
individuals,
invested
like a
in
pump. It's just like a
whatever
pump.
energy
Except
sources
instead
we
of
have
gas,
here.
electricity
Their
comes out.
billionaire buddies are going to profit.
They spend, and now
And
I'm
they
really
can't-
doing well
and
with
they can't
them. I
retool
did phenomenally
because
with
they know
them.
once it's out on the
Republican
internet,
never
it's
got
over.
any numbers like I got in the
So I
Teamsters
think there's a
too.
lot of things
Sean
going after
O'Brien,
it, and I
head of
think
the
that's why
Teamsters.
that
These guys,
move to
they like
discredit
Trump
folks
because
is so
I produce
rapid,
jobs. They know
too.
that.
I think, they
Everybody
just-
knew
they
that
point to
the
them
auto
and
workers
they
knew
put
better
the
than
dogs
anybody
on
how
them,
good the
and
tariffs
it
were.
disgusts me.
There's a
And the
price to
head
be paid for that
of
too.
the
The
auto
Russians and
workers, I don't
Chinese
know
are
him
trying to
at
figure
all.
this out as well, but
he
they
didn't
don't
like
have
me
the
at
same kind
all.
of stigma.
Now
They
he's
tell
going
their
around
best
saying,
scientists and
"It's
engineers, get in
unbelievable."
there and work on it.
He was very
And
nice
they've
to
been
me.
doing it for a very
And
long
building
time. Might
one
have a
auto.
head start on us. Here,
It will be
we don't
much
have our
cheaper.
best scientists and engineers
It's a
working
much less
on it because
expensive.
they've been told it's nonsense.
They were
The
showing
stigma is
me,
very
one
real
of the
for
most
people like that.
respected people was showing me that to save
Mr.
a little,
Nucetelli,
like a half a glass of fuel,
when you heard the
cost them
testimony
thousands of
Mr.
dollars
Knapp
with new computers
talking
and
about,
stop it, the engine has to stop and then
these
turn it
missiles
on
were
and blah,
shut
blah, blah.
down or turned on
And
in
I said,
Russia.
does it work as well? No, it's terrible.
Does that
It's terrible.
remind you?
And that's to save a little bit
when
of
you
fuel,
hear
this
these
much fuel,
stories, it's
and you're
got
going to
to
have what
remind
you
of
want.
the event that happened.
And again, you can get
on
any
your
car
base.
you want. You can get electric. A lot of people
Absolutely.
love
There
the
are
electric.
many,
They
many,
like Tesla. So do
accounts
I, in
of
all fairness.
incursions of this
I
type
like Tesla.
taking place. I believe
And
in the 60s,
I like
we had a
others
similar
too,
incursion
but I
in
also
New
like
England.
combustion engines. And
And,
there are
the same
reasons
thing
for
happened. There were these
a lot of
budgets
things.
coming
When I
over
was
the base
in
and go
Iowa,
out
we had
there
an
to the
unbelievable
security police,
victory, if you
and they were
remember.
scrambling
Remember?
fighters,
That was nice.
and
We
then the
won by
objects would
like
just
so
fly
much,
off,
nobody
and that went on for
even
weeks.
talked about it. And
So
he
the
did say to
historical
me, I
records
actually asked him
now
because it was
there's
really strange how
installations
I'm with
are
him. He's
visited
a very,
by this
you know,
man.
friend of mine, and
they come
he
in
makes
and do
electric
whatever they're
cars,
doing.
and we're saying you're not going to be
And
able to
then they
make
leave.
electric cars, or
We
you're not
don't
going
know
to be
how to
forced to
respond.
make
We don't know how to
all of
do
those
the
cars. You can
installation.
make them, but it'll be by the market, judged
That's
by the
why we're here.
market.
When you first
And that's
heard
what he said. He
that
said,
we were
as
having a
long as
report
I'm on the
these
same plane
actions
as
that
everybody
were
else, we're
going
going
on
to
for miles
do
and
good
hours.
and make a better
Did you-
product.
did you
I
find
said,
out?
that's
Did
very
you believe
cool.
them?
That's very cool. That
Did
was
you
my
yourself
answer.
believe it
Yeah,
would be
this
true
is
until
still,
you saw
you know,
it?
some businesses you can move. You move your office, and that's where the business is. With this business, they're spending 17, think of that, 17 billion. They're going to have them all over the country. I want to introduce several of the great Americans representing the millions of people whose livelihoods we're saving with today's action. I just can't tell you how incredible this action is, because nobody thought, this was one that I wasn't so, I would have rather had it than almost anything, but I was told. And Mike, I think you're doing some investigations in that in
importance of
Congress, but we're going to find out
was
who
highly
they are
important
because they're really
they said it's the
in
most
there.
important in 25 years.
And they're handing them, and then he stopped handing them. They
research
just
that you were
went
conducting.
down and picked them up. It was so professional. I said, "That's a professional organization. This is not like people at random."
500
This
people.
guy's
It was
breaking
that
up because they couldn't use the bricks.
But had this thing showed
So
up,
who
it
would think
wouldn't
of this
been
even?
anything
Did a lot of
meant
damage, a lot of curbs are broken, a
Real
lot of
quickly, can you
sidewalks
just
broken, but I never saw
size
that
and
before.
whether
That's
or
one
not
I
you
haven't
heard
seen. I thought I
anything?
saw it all.
How big?
And they have it on tape.
The two square
And with
objects
that,
were at
people get
least
killed. You know, they go to
as
the
large as a
bridges
football field.
and that caused, and
The
that also
second
kept the
encounter,
war
they think
going
it
with
was
Putin
much
because,
larger than a
well,
football
that was a
buildings.
big money-making
The object I saw
experience.
was about 30
But
feet
now
long.
it's down to
It's
where
good
it's
for me,
not
you're
so
not the only person that
good
saw
for
this.
them anymore.
I think I was
No,
also
it's very
told,
important to get that
there was
cell. That's a
also,
bloodbath. That's a
this
terrible
minimal
bloodbath that's
slaughter in
going
the
on.
area.
Yeah, please,
Can
go
you
ahead.
confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original fact.
area, and I said,
My name is Jeffrey
we got to tell them to
Michitelli.
get out.
I'm a former
because
military
something could
police
happen
officer with
soon.
16 years of active
And
duty
I don't want to
service
be
in
the
the
one
US
that
Air
didn't give
Force.
any warning and
I'm
missiles
here
are
today
flying
because
into
the American
their
people have
buildings.
both the right and the
It's possible.
responsibility
So I
to
had
know
to
the
do
truth
it.
about unidentified aerial phenomena.
You know, I had the choice. Do I do it
That
or
truth
not?
remains
Doing it
hidden,
has its downside, but it
classified
also
and
has its
silenced by
upside. Like you're
fear,
going to save a lot of lives
retaliation,
if
stigma,
it should
and
happen.
confusion.
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
Today, we are here to help break that
Thank you.
silence. Between 2003
In Germany and
2005,
Japan, they're fine.
5
You know,
UAP incidents
someday somebody
occurred
will
at Vandenberg
explain
Air
that. But
Force
I like
Base,
Germany and Japan too.
home to the National
But
Missile
Putin
Defense
is a little
Project,
confused by that.
top
You know,
national
he said we
security
lost
priority.
51 million people, and
At
we
the
were
time,
your.
we were conducting
And all we're
launches
doing
deemed by the
is
National
using them
Reconnaissance Office
as a
the
defense
most
against
important
what
in
took
25
place for
years.
many years.
These were
China would
historic
charge us
launches.
tariffs. It was incredible, but we weren't
These
allowed to
facilities
charge.
were vital, and they were
so
repeatedly
we're allowed to do whatever we want.
visited
We
by
just had
UAP.
presidents that didn't want to do it for whatever reason.
Each incident was witnessed
And
by
it was nothing.
multiple
But of the
personnel,
8 wars, I was saying
documented,
7 of the 8
investigated,
wars,
and reported
I
up
would
the
say
chain of
tariffs
command.
are
We sent
directly
information up,
responsible
but we
for
got no
me
guidance down
ending
on how to
6 of
handle
them.
these events.
5 or 6. And of course, FBI
personally
Director
witnessed one of these events
Cash
and
Patel, they have
investigated
worked so
others
hard
as
on
they
this
occurred.
and other things.
6 other
Since the start of the
service members have
administration, the
provided me with
FBI
the
has arrested
information
over
that I will share with
23,000
you
violent
today.
criminals, more than double the number arrested
The incursions began on
in the final
October
year
14th,
of the Biden
2003.
disaster. The
When
FBI
Boeing
has also
contract
destroyed
reported a massive glowing
or
red square
severely disrupted
silently
more than
hovering over 2 missile
170
defense
organized
sites.
criminal
After
enterprises
several
and
minutes,
gangs,
it drifted further east onto the
1,600
base
of
and
the most
vanished over the
violent
hills.
gangs and
This
confiscated.
event,
But I want
now
to
known
thank
as the Vandenberg
Stephen
Red
Miller, who's
Square,
right back
was
in the audience
referenced by
right there.
Representative Luna
I'd love to
at
have
the
him.
first
I
hearing
love watching
on this
him on
topic.
television. I'd love to have him
Official
come up
Air
and
Force records
explain
of
his
this
true
event
feelings.
are in possession by
Maybe
Aero
not his
and the
truest
FBI.
feelings. That might be going a little bit too far.
Later that
But Stephen,
night,
thank you for
while
doing
I
an
was on
unbelievable
duty,
job. And the
security
people of this
guards at a
country love
critical
you,
launch
I'll tell
site
you. And they
reported
love
a
what you
bright,
say about crime
fast-moving
and
object
stopping
over the
crime.
ocean.
So now
I
I'd like to
responded to
ask
the incident. Chaos ensued
Director
over the
Patel
radio as the object
to
approached
say a few words.
rapidly.
And
I heard my
that
friends
really was
screaming,
just
"It's coming
preparatory
right at
work
us,
for
it's coming
what we're
right
going
for
to do
us,
with the
and
surge.
now it's right
We're going to have a
here."
surge of
Moments later, I
strong,
heard them say they
good
had
people,
shot off and was
patriots, and they're going to go in,
When
they
I arrived
straighten it
on
all
scene,
out. So
I talked to 5 shaken
a lot of these
witnesses who
cities we're
described a
already
massive
working on, but we don't do it with a big
triangular craft
a big
larger than
flavor.
a football
But
field.
in a little
It
while,
hovered
you're going to see some
silently for
numbers that
about
you're not going to
45
believe. And
seconds
I think
over
you'll
their
probably
entry
start
control
with
point
Memphis because
before
I'm hearing the
shooting away
numbers
at
are
impossible speed.
much quicker than we even thought possible.
About a week later,
And not
another
including
patrol
the
reported
FBI,
a
all
light
of the other
over the
agencies.
ocean,
ATF
behaving
alone
erratically.
since January
Believing
20th
it
has
might be an
removed over
unannounced aircraft, they declared an
25,000
emergency.
illegal
An
guns
armed
off our
response
streets
force
just since
responded.
President Trump's been in
Before
office.
Mr. President,
the forces could arrive,
could
the
there be any
object
further
descended
conversation
and
to
either
have
landed or hovered on our
national
flight
concealed
line
carry applied
and
to
took off
actual
again at
DC?
impossible speed?
Like if you had a driver's license in Texas and you had a permit,
The
of course you could
witnesses-
drive.
Well, they're talking, as you know, they've been
event
talking
were
about that for a
threatened
long time. It's
and intimidated afterward.
and they've
They
entered
were
their,
told to keep
they've
quiet and
allowed
think about what they were
thousands
reporting.
and thousands of
After that,
prisoners,
things
mental
did get
institution, people from
Until
mental
about
institutions,
2005,
insane asylums,
when another patrol
emptied out
reported
into
a
the United
massive
States. We're bringing them
triangular
back.
craft
But that's a
larger than
really bad, and they did it at a level that
silently
probably not, many
floating over
countries
the
have done it, but not
installation.
like Venezuela.
Watched
They
it
were
for a few minutes,
down and dirty. And the other
traveled
thing with
west,
drugs, we have a lot of
disappeared
drugs
into
coming
the
in from
night.
Venezuela. And a lot of the
Then I had
Venezuelan
my
drugs
own
come in
encounter.
through the sea, so
Again
you
in
get to see them.
2005.
Briefings they've
I
gotten
was
about
off duty,
those
sitting in
attacks,
my backyard
they're not
with 2 other
necessarily getting
police
information about
officers,
who was
and
on
we
them
noticed what
and
first
what
appeared to
exactly
be a
was on those
satellite
ships.
in
Can you
orbit.
ensure that
But they are given
satellite-
information that they
Light
were
was
loaded up
strange, it
with
was
drugs,
pulsing,
and that's the
and
thing
then
that
it started
matters.
to maneuver.
When they're loaded up with drugs,
Dropped in
they're
elevation,
fair game. And
into the
every every one of those
vanish
ships
from
were,
view
they're not
and
ships,
reappear in a different
they're boats,
location in
they're
the sky,
speedboats. They're
and
extremely
eventually
fast,
they reappeared 200 feet
record-setting
over
type
my house.
speedboats that cost a lot of money, and they have a lot of money because they're drug sellers.
Sphere of light.
But they
My
know
friends
what.
and I watched it for a moment, and then it gently accelerated, traveled up, and disappeared into the storm.
What do you think the committee will find out, Mr. Smith?
I think it
These
was the
events
worst
profoundly changed my
weaponization
life
of a
and
political
the lives of my
opponent in the
friends.
history of the world, let alone
We
this
stand at a
country.
pivotal moment in history.
And I hope that
The question is
everybody's,
no longer
you know,
whether
they're
these
involved
events
in
are
it.
real,
I'm not.
but whether
I'm
we
the
have
one that had to
courage
suffer
to
through
face
it and
them.
ultimately win.
True leadership
But
requires vision,
what they did was
a
criminal.
willingness to confront the unknown
Deranged
with
Jack Smith, in my
transparency and
opinion, is a
resolve.
criminal.
So I asked
And I noticed
Congress
the threats. And
to
as
help
far as the
we, the
shutdown's
people,
concerned,
enact
this is a
vision.
Democrat
There are three
Schumer
goals.
shutdown.
Fund
And he's
independent
trying to do it
research
to get
and
relevance
treat
back
UAP
into the
study
party
with
because
the
he's a
same
loser. I've known
seriousness
him all
as
his
we
life.
would
He's
any
always
other
been sort of a
scientific
loser,
field.
but an intelligent one.
2,
But I think he's losing IQ
and
points with time.
overclassification.
I think that happens. I hope
Transparency
it
is the
hasn't happened with
foundation of
me.
truth.
I know if it did,
Without it,
you guys will let
witnesses
me know
like
about it
us
very
are
quickly.
dismissed.
All right.
Free, protect the witnesses. Many stay silent out of fear for their careers,
And we just ordered
reputations,
about
and the
20
safety
brand
of their
new
families.
B-2 bombers.
Protect
It's unbelievable as a weapon.
and you will
I know
embolden
Putin, when I
others
was
to join
riding
this
with him in
cause.
Alaska, we passed a lot of
These
them.
phenomenon challenge our deepest
And he said that really did
assumptions
the
about
trick.
reality,
I said, yeah, it did.
consciousness,
It's
and our
amazing.
place in the
The flying
universe.
wing.
Exploring them
No
can
reason for the
unlock
U.S. military to get
transformative
involved in
breakthroughs
guns.
in
No, I don't
technology,
see that. No, I don't think
biology,
we're going to
and
handle it
human
very well. We'll be
understanding.
helping
Let
Israel.
this be the
But we have
moment
other countries
when
that are
America
now. You know, we
chooses
signed many
courage
countries
over
signed,
fear,
and many of those
transparency
countries
over
relatively,
secrecy,
and
progress over
we made a lot of good
stagnation.
friends too.
Let's show the world that our
Tariffs
nation
are
leads not only through strength,
so important
but
to
through
our
fearless pursuit
our
of the
national
truth.
security.
Thank you.
If we don't have tariffs and all
My
of
name
that
is Alexander
scum,
Williams. I'm an active duty
real scum,
U.S. Navy
what they
operations
did to
specialist, senior chief
the
petty
political
officer.
opponent of a guy that has
Father of three,
a
and
seriously
dedicated American
low IQ.
testifying
Now, in
today
his case,
in my personal
it
capacity.
was low
The
based
views I
on
share are my own,
his
and I do
career,
not represent
but
the
it got
official
real low.
positions of the Department
Okay?
of the Navy
It was
or any
descending
subordinate
rapidly.
organization.
But what they did
On the evening
to
of
go
February
after his
15th,
political opponent
2023,
is
at approximately
legendary. Worse than any
19:15
third
PST,
world country. And this grant,
part of my routine
right there,
responsibilities
Andrew
for surface
Jackson.
and air picture management.
They say Andrew Jackson was
What I
treated
observed and what our
terribly.
crew recorded
They give him number
was not
one and number
consistent
two, but
with
Clinton and others
conventional
make
aircraft
up a hoax
or